Picture finally uncovering a legendary artifact that promises to completely transform your pathetic life, only to be completely betrayed and murdered for it by the express command of your very own father. Ian spent his entire career as a disposable rank D punching bag simply because he picked the absolute worst combat class. The moment he finally catches a break and secures a god-tier treasure deep inside a dangerous dungeon, the supposed ally immediately murders his entire team and leaves him to bleed out in the dirt like trash. But dying isn't quite as final as it sounds for him, because a mysterious game system activates just as he takes his final breath. It sends him 11 years into the past, offering him a do-over on a grand scale. Now armed with foreknowledge of the future and a completely overpowered cheat skill, he plans to completely rewrite history and transform himself into the most terrifying wizard the world has ever seen. So let's jump back to the beginning to see exactly how a useless fighter transformed into a god of magic. We're starting with a bang. A lone adventurer standing nose to nose with a giant, fire-breathing lizard, which is basically the ultimate fantasy goal for any hero. The narrator kicks off by explaining how these raiders are the top dogs, the ones who chase after creepy shadow monsters and dig up ancient loot, a classic go big or go home career path. Naturally, they look incredibly cool doing all this, serving as the world's resident superheroes and celebrities for protecting everyone from certain doom. We quickly snap back to reality, where our protagonist Ihan is lounging in a room piled high with garbage, watching those exact same heroes on a grainy television screen. A truly huge difference in lifestyles. Ihan's eyes start glowing in eerie, intense red as he contemplates the true nature of being a raider, which definitely looks more like a villain origin story than an inspirational moment. The screen cuts to black, filled with ominous red scratches, while the narrator asks him a loaded question, confirming that we're about to witness something absolutely terrible. The narration takes a dark turn, suggesting that a raider's heartbeat is actually a frantic drum solo of pure panic. A sudden, violent explosion of brilliant white and scorching orange light rips through the encroaching shadows. Just before everything goes to pieces, we see Ihan standing perfectly still inside a raging inferno, a scene that looks less like a triumphant hero moment and more like a very expensive cremation. The flames creep closer to his face, but he makes zero effort to run, simply standing there and accepting the fiery kisses on his skin. The intense orange glow from the fire reflects in his eyes as he stares directly into the heat, which is certainly a wonderfully miserable way to begin a heroic tale. Hold on. We abruptly transition to a comfy cafe where a woman works by, completely oblivious to the fiery, dramatic death scene we just experienced. A frantic guy with brown hair starts shouting and calling Ihan a lunatic, confirming that we have officially returned to the present timeline. Ihan, clearly furious, demands to know if the guy really just volunteered him to be a glorified human chew toy, which is certainly a valid reason to get upset. The guy, in woman, acts completely calm and just reminds Ihan that he was the one begging for quick cash, which is a truly savage comeback. Ihan looks completely defeated, realizing that getting an invitation to a difficult dungeon raid in the first place probably should have set off some alarm bells. We learn that woman acts as a job broker for freelance raiders like Ihan, essentially specializing in finding all the dangerous and miserable assignments that everyone else passes on. Ihan recalls how thrilled he was just to get a call about work, poor soul completely unaware that he was working straight into a high-risk mousetrap. The situation immediately shifted the moment he learned the specifics of the mission request. His job description requires him to stand on the front lines against an army of undead horrors with only a shield for protection, which is basically the exact definition of being human bait. Ihan lets out a big sigh, completely baffled as to why he's the only one struggling so hard when low-ranked rookies seem to be landing much better work. Woman looks at him with a look of pure, unadulterated pity, confirming that he understands exactly how rough things are for him. Bon. Ihan immediately snaps back, demanding to know if Woman is looking down on him because he's a combat specialist, or a martial arts nut as the kids call it these days. Woman doesn't even bother to deny it, simply adjusting his glasses and confirming that, yes, that's precisely the core issue here. The cold, hard truth is that magicians are absolutely running the show these days, making melee fighters about as trendy as a flip phone. Warriors move slowly, require extensive medical benefits due to constant injuries, and have fallen completely out of favor with clients in this brutal job market. Ihan understands this reality all too well, the bitter pill he has to swallow every single day of his life. While magicians are safely blasting monsters from a distance, the warriors are down in the mud getting absolutely shredded, making it a profoundly unfair trade-off. Ihan looks off into the distance, internally admitting that the glory days of warriors ended 10 years ago, leaving them with roughly the same relevance as a VCR. He engages in a vigorous internal monologue where he essentially punches himself, lamenting the fact he didn't pick up magic when he had the golden opportunity. Let's rewind 11 years to when Ihan was just an awkward middle schooler attempting his all-important Awaken test. He actually scored high enough to secure a spot at Millet's Academy, which everyone knows is the absolute top school for churning out future raiders. If you check the chart, his magic aptitude clocked in at a jaw-dropping 97%, which is basically an I'm a deity level statistic. To put that in perspective, the current reigning champion magician, Cona, only managed a meager 92%, solidifying Ihan's position as a literally once-in-a-generation prodigy. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, his combat aptitude was a truly depressing 34%, proving he was genetically engineered for spells, not for wielding sharp objects. So naturally, he decides to completely disregard those numbers and pick up a sword regardless. Come on, kid, what kind of logic were you using? Looking back on the situation, Ihan confesses there was no noble, heroic reason for his decision. He was merely a casualty of poor timing. Back in those dark ages, magicians were treated with less respect than a dirty sock, as their reputation was at a severe all-time low. People called them human buffing machines, mostly because they couldn't take down a low-level monster unless a warrior was literally babysitting them. Oh, how drastically the tables have turned. These days, combat users are considered garbage, while magicians are worshipped like literal gods. Ihan stares blankly out the window, agonizing over whether his life would be significantly easier if he had just swallowed his pride and chosen the vastly superior magic path. A cold hand pulls him from the dark order of his regret, reminding him that a raider's development stops at age 20. There are no refunds, no rerolls, and no resetting those stats now. Woman keeps pushing him, cheerfully mentioning that he only offered this opportunity because he knows Ihan is completely destitute. Torque about rubbing salt in the wound. Ihan tightens his fist against the table, reflecting on his epic fall from a coveted prodigy to nothing more than a run-of-the-mill, low-ranking D-rank warrior. His life has taken a massive, sudden turn for the worse, and he doesn't need anyone else to point out the painful fact. But he finally realizes he truly has no other option, understanding that in this cruel world, you can't exactly be choosy if you actually want to afford food. Woman instantly lights up, clearly relieved that Ihan has taken the bait, cheerfully telling him that he has definitely made the right choice. Mine. Woman says he'll text over the location details and warns Ihan not to be late for the 8 a.m. start time, leaving Ihan to question why Woman himself plans to be there. Ihan tries to keep his composure, telling Woman not to worry about him and to simply concentrate on his own tasks. Woman gives a suspicious, knowing little smirk, promising to see him tomorrow, and something tells me this guy is definitely concealing a major plot point. The following day, we find ourselves at the dungeon's entrance, which turns out to be a massive blue vortex swirling ominously in the middle of a forest. Ihan is fully equipped and prepared for battle, but he's already unleashing a torrent of mental curses at Woman. It's 8:52 a.m., and Woman is still nowhere to be seen, leaving Ihan checking his phone and annoyed at having been completely ditched. He gazes into the distance, the sharp features etched in shadow, clearly having reached a point where he's accustomed to this kind of letdown. He figures Woman would probably be better off partnered with someone who actually possesses genuine skill, demonstrating some major self-hatred. Other raiders clad in heavy armor mill about, prompting Ihan to reflect on the significant chasm separating him, a lowly D-rank warrior, from Woman, an A-rank magician. He truly cannot fathom why an A-rank individual would waste their valuable time at such a low-tier agency when they could join any prestigious guild they desired. His eyes narrow as he sinks further into his bitter musings, wondering exactly what kind of chaotic choices he would make if he possessed Woman's power level. The dark, menacing silhouette, tinted bright red, materializes in his thoughts, radiating nothing but pure, undiluted malice. The words U.S.D. zealous bastard hover in crimson letters. This guy's internal demons seem to be working overtime today. Suddenly, his trance is broken by a voice loudly calling his name, causing him to look up, completely startled. It's a large, cheerful fellow in silver armor waving enthusiastically at him and shouting about how fate has brought them back together. This is Mythic, an older warrior, who lets out a nervous laugh about the scarcity of available jobs these days, despite the fact that these excursions are literally life-threatening. Ihan forces a small, strained smile in response, agreeing that this particular line of work seems to be the only option left for warriors. Mythic launches into a heated rant about how today's younger generation shows absolutely no affection for the sword, preferring instead to shoot fireballs from a safe distance. Ihan's inner thoughts are far less sentimental, essentially saying love. My butt, I'm literally about to starve to death out here. Mythic claps him on the shoulder, suggesting they should get some soju after the raid. He's clearly trying to boost everyone's spirits. Ihan looks down at the ground, finally giving in and admitting that a drink sounds appealing right now. But then Mythic makes a face, claiming he's short on funds, so Ihan points out that he also covered the bill on the previous outing. Ihan just stares at him with a completely unreadable, deadpan expression, knowing exactly where this conversation is heading next. Mythic attempts to hold strong and act tough, but quickly looks away with a visible drop of guilty sweat on his face. He immediately caves, yelling that fine, he'll cover the payment again for this one final time. Mythic really is a total pushover. He continues grumbling to himself as Ihan watches him, unable to suppress a small, knowing smirk. Ihan laughs internally, thinking about how easily Mythic falls for manipulation, proving that he's certainly not a pure-hearted hero type. All of a sudden, someone shouts for everyone to assemble at the dungeon entrance. It's time to commence the operation. The raid leader, a serious-looking man in a suit and shades, announces that they will be entering the portal in exactly 30 minutes. The raiders begin to prepare themselves, creating a heavy atmosphere as everyone performs one last check of their gear. Mythic and Ihan exchange a significant look and let out a heavy sigh, acknowledging it's time to get ready. Apparently, they work off together. Despite all the petty arguments, they are still allies in this dangerous situation. Ihan steals one final glance at his phone, looking unusually somber and serious for a moment. The narrator chimes back in, clarifying that dungeon explorers face a pair of primary anxieties whenever they step into one of these monster holes. The initial concern is the sudden appearance of wealth, which sounds lovely until you realize it's a trap. Ihan looks tiny next to the glowing gateway in the woods. A quick memory shows past adventurers stumbling upon a massive treasure chest, proving that a mountain of gold makes people lose their minds. The problem arises when they drop their defenses, distracted by visions of riches they haven't actually collected yet. That's exactly when the dungeon decides to check if they're paying attention, transforming that perceived windfall into an actual horror show instantly. Returning to the current timeline, Mythic shouts at Ihan, demanding to know what exactly he's up to. He leans in, questioning whether Ihan has his face buried in his phone yet again, probably scrolling through social media. Mythic begins to needle him, wondering aloud if he's gazing lovingly at his partner or perhaps a picture or classic, his favorite celebrity. Ihan slams the screen shut immediately, muttering that nothing is happening, though his crimson face suggests otherwise. Just for a second, we catch a glimpse of the real Ihan, looking completely miserable and exposed. It turns out he was actually viewing a photo of his mother and himself, whispering a promise to return home securely, which is his true purpose for doing this job. He stands poised right in front of the massive blue vortex, which looks both stunningly beautiful and deeply unsettling, like an interdimensional portal. The interior of the dungeon resembles a huge cathedral, cast in an eerie green light, creating an intensely spooky atmosphere. All at once, a massive wave of creatures floods the space, someone shouts for the frontliners to deploy the shields immediately, and everything descends into pandemonium. The leader of the group is completely losing his voice while bellowing for everyone to hold the formation steady. He shoves himself right up against Yihan, ordering them to keep their ranks intact, even if they end up dying for it. What an absolute delight. Yihan appears thoroughly dejected, silently grumbling about what a truly terrible job this is, which frankly, makes him pretty relatable. Meanwhile, in the rear, the magicians are calmly singing their incantations, resembling a high school choir practice while the frontline fighters get slaughtered. Suddenly, a huge wall of flames explodes outwards from where the spellcasters are standing. The fire reduces everything in its path to ash. The disparity in power levels between the two groups is truly mind-boggling. A massive skull made entirely of fire materializes right in the middle of the explosion, signaling some seriously advanced spellcasting. When the smoke finally dissipates, the warriors are still standing exactly where they started, appearing completely redundant. Yihan stares intently at the inferno, his orange eyes mirroring the fiery devastation. He identifies the powerful magicians as belonging to the meteor group, a rapidly rising star collective. He turns his gaze elsewhere, concluding that since they are so overwhelmingly powerful, he probably won't have to concern himself with imminent death this afternoon. While this provides some relief, it also serves as a sharp, painful reminder of how completely unnecessary he actually is. The team pauses for a moment in a hallway where the sheer size of the chamber is overwhelming, featuring broken columns and that same unsettling green light. Myunho guzzles a bottle of water down quickly, exhaling a deep, satisfied breath. He questions whether they've reached the final bus chamber, noting that they are almost done with this particular excursion. Myunho laments his advanced age, expressing regret that he hadn't invested more time in gaining experience points during his youth. A truly relatable sentiment. Yihan playfully jabbed at him, remarking on his energy and reminding him that Yihan's level was higher anyway. Myunho swiftly changed the topic, asking if Yihan had managed to grab any decent loot drops from the recently defeated monsters. Yihan responded that he wasn't exactly sure, then activated his floating holographic interface to inspect his inventory. He tapped the glowing blue screen, scanning for anything valuable enough to keep. Suddenly, his eyes widened considerably, and he let out a confused noise because something seemed fundamentally broken. The screen began to flicker with distorted colors and static interference, making him wonder what exactly was happening. The bizarre, glitching data box materialized in his field of vision, definitely not part of the standard operating system. Yihan suddenly grabbed his head in agony, letting out a pain groan as if a world-splitting migraine had just struck him. Sweat beaded on his face, his breathing grew ragged, indicating that whatever hit him had been intensely overwhelming. The notification chime sounded, and he glanced at a new pop-up message from the Aesir system itself. The alert stated the entire system was offline and his connection would be severed, a completely unprecedented occurrence. Yihan was stunned rigid. A system crash was something that literally should never happen to anyone. He stared at the warning, his mind racing to comprehend what would happen to all his acquired abilities if the system failed completely. Another box immediately appeared, claiming a reboot attempt had failed for unspecified reasons, which was fantastic news, truly. He stared blankly, oddly perplexed and trying to understand the cryptic message. Suddenly, strange green glowing orbs began to drift around the room, hovering in midair. Yihan looked up in shock, realizing that not a single person around him seemed to notice them at all. He stood frozen in place, simply watching the luminous spheres as they floated past him. A high-priority warning flashed, indicating an unknown presence in Eiffel that was infiltrating the Aesir system, which sounded completely insane. The word failed flashed, rendered in broken, distorted text, suggesting the system was losing the fight against the intrusion. Yihan felt disoriented, remembering hearing a faint, mysterious voice inside his head just a few moments earlier. He murmured to himself, wondering if that voice had perhaps told him to follow the strange light. Myunho turned to look at him, baffled by Yihan's strange behavior, and asked him what on earth he was talking about. Yihan tried to explain, saying he believed he heard someone instructing him to go after the glowing orbs. The focus tightened on Yihan's intense eyes, completely fixated on something invisible to the rest of the group. The entire passage was now filled with these vibrant green spheres, making it look like a bizarre scene from a fantasy movie. The orbs floated past the other raiders, who remained completely oblivious, reinforcing that Yihan was the only one who could see them. He let out a sharp gasp of disbelief, completely mesmerized by the strange phenomenon surrounding him. He gazed intently at a particularly bright sphere, questioning if this was a precise beacon he had been commanded to pursue. Myunho looked at him with genuine concern and asked if he was feeling ill, clearly worried about his partner's sanity. Yihan shakes off his daze, claiming he is fine, even if his consciousness is howling. Did everyone else miss that spectacle? He surveys the area, but the rest of the crew are just lounging or sharpening their gear. The lad is absolutely solo on this mission. The shimmering orbs start drifting toward a pitch-black, hidden passage at the back. The hero's expression turns grim. He usually plays it safe, but this anomaly is way too juicy to disregard. He determines to scout the path, thinking it might be a golden ticket or his final curtain call. The main guy gets up and drifts off, ignoring Myunho's frantic hollering while swearing he will be right back. He vanishes into the gloom, his frame outlined by neon radiance, venturing into the great unknown. The man ponders internally, what kind of craziness is occurring right now? That is the mystery we are tackling. The opening part concludes here, so wait for the follow-up. The warrior pursues those radiant spheres into the darkness, mimicking a morsel sliding down the gullet of a prehistoric monster. He discovers a glowing mark on the stone and taps it, perhaps a blunder, but he is already fully committed. The interface suddenly glitches out, mentioning the ACE's software is currently broken, right when things get spicy. The graphics quit. The fighter jabs at thin oxygen with a frustrated vibe, grumbling about the malfunction and how his whole existence is one giant bug. He gestures toward the broken floating displays, which look like a ruined save from some ancient game console. Fresh alerts appear stating some tools are broken. He is attempting a safe mode boot, which is terrifying in a dungeon. The warrior feels incredibly salty, shouting about the local case while taking out his anger on the stony surroundings. Looking back at nearly 2 decades of being special, the fighter notes the program never failed until this bizarre moment. The warrior blames that eerie vocalization for the software glitch, peering about with neon-colored vision to find any lurking ghosts. This computer breakdown resembles a virtual terror, where words dissolve and twitch, revealing the extent of the shadowy hack. Ignoring the errors, our hero continues forward, pursuing the biggest radiant sphere toward a dazzling brilliance down the corridor. The hero feels certain some entity desired his presence by following these glimmers, praying for a reward instead of a fancy barrel. The warrior understands the Ace of Software is experiencing a giant transformation. Exiting the dark passage, that lion-colored globe begins morphing into a far more impressive view. The narrator shares some history. The Aesir tech takes names from Norse legends like Odin, which is heavy for a game. This tool represented our species' final survival chance during the apocalypse, which relieves the pressure for everyone. Thinking back 2 decades, existence remained peaceful, featuring a luxury vessel drifting across tranquil sapphire waters. Afterward, the 2011 catastrophe struck, causing the seas to churn while civilization essentially disintegrated into chaos. Directly amidst the watery depths, an enormous timber sprouted toward altitudes which naturally cannot exist. The weed blanketed the heavens within a short span, resembling a world where the wilderness reclaims its territory aggressively. Society found itself in instant disagreement. Parf decided this was the apocalypse, while the rest insisted it was a glorious gift, because humans will argue about literally everything, especially large magic plants. The camera pans to a massive, cathedral-like hall, revealing the actual designation of this planet-changing flora. Surprise, it's Yggdrasil, the legendary world tree, which apparently just decided to pop into existence during modern times, completely casual. However, by the 9th day, when the gigantic tree had finished growing completely, that so-called blessed sanctuary turned out to be nothing but a complete fabrication. Creatures started pouring out from every crack in reality. A massive terrifying dread took control of the skies, and cities below began to burn, marking the true start of the nightmare. Lycanthropes and countless other abominations annihilated 50% of humanity, and the remaining survivors fared little better, as starvation and disease claimed another half of them. This specific wolf creature appeared completely savage, letting out a terrifying howl as it stood among the rubble of a metropolis, truly the stuff of horror movies. The entirety of humanity was submerged in hopelessness, simply anticipating the end of everything. Then a shadowy figure emerges in a fiery doorway, providing the dramatic hero entrance everyone had been desperate to see. His boots take a confident step forward onto the blackened earth, showing that someone possessed the courage to challenge the chaos. The wolf pack began growling, convinced they had found yet another simple snack, but they could not have been more mistaken. The blonde man appears, radiating a golden glow, giving off the definite appearance of a divine being, truly initiating hope for all of humanity. The beast rushed forward in a large horde, confident that overwhelming numbers would be enough to defeat him. That decision was poor. He effortlessly incinerates them with a colossal wave of energy, remaining completely composed. Observe his smug expression. He literally just points a finger and wipes those creatures from reality, earning him the title of the First Awakened. He is absolutely decimating the wolf pack as if they were constructed from tissue paper, indicating that the power level here is absolutely insane. He became the first human capable of utilizing divine authority, looking completely awesome while remaining completely tranquil as magic surged around him. A new category of champion emerged called raiders, specialized fighters who committed their existence to eradicating monsters and exploring dangerous dungeons. Now focusing on Yeon, he recognizes that the Aesir system represents humanity's most potent resource. He feels apprehension because if something as huge as the Aesir system starts glitching out, the resulting outcome cannot possibly be beneficial. He navigates a dim cavern illuminated by unsettling green torches, creating an atmosphere that strongly suggests a powerful boss fight is imminent. Ian halts, his boots grinding against the dirt ground, as he identifies a colossal structure in the near distance. He contemplates if he is looking at a gargantuan entrance, a massive stone gateway covered in elaborate engravings and solar symbols. Ian is left absolutely stunned, gasping dramatically, as if he had just stumbled upon the winning numbers for a huge jackpot. He begins to smile, frankly looking a little unsettling, already calculating the massive profits he expects to make. This is a treasure gate, essentially the holy grail for anyone who calls themselves a raider. Just look at those guardian statues shaped like wolves. The narrator clarifies that these hidden chambers are extraordinarily rare, almost never manifesting, even within the most difficult high-tier dungeons. Inside, a person would locate massive heaps of gold, legendary weapons, and containers overflowing with valuables, truly fulfilling every raider's fantasy. These places typically hold unique treasures or rare components you absolutely cannot find anywhere else. Ian begins pushing open the enormous stone doors, calculating in his head that these artifacts sell for at least a couple $100,000. The single orange eye glows with avarice as he fantasizes about finding an A-class or higher item in here. He believes he can quit this awful life instantly, desperate for an exit from the meat shield profession. He is literally praying to whatever god might be listening that this contains A-class gear or higher, totally drenched in nervous anticipation. As the doors finally open, the powerful white light floods the area, exactly like opening the refrigerator at 3 in the morning. He enters a huge chamber where pillars ascend into a starry sky, realizing this isn't simply a room but an entirely different dimension. He works along a lengthy, white pathway toward a glowing alto, noting this looks far too extravagant for a D-rank creator. He is completely astonished, finally realizing the urban legends he saw on television were actually real, acknowledging this place is incredibly magical. The object sits on a pedestal, glowing softly in pink and white, resembling a golden chalice or perhaps an ancient relic. Ihan is absolutely convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that this is a prize. Looking so hopeful he's practically a working cartoon character. He takes the last steps, his eyes fixated on the object, only one touch away from potentially changing his life forever. He reaches out a gloved hand, his fingers only inches away from the glowing prize, thinking, let's do this. The light explodes when he touches it, and the system pings, confirming partial recovery has finally worked. Now that's what I call perfect timing. A new window pops up, stating he has obtained a piece of equipment, and asks if he wants to appraise it. The tension in the air is palpable. Ian starts grinning now, looking utterly smug, feeling things are unfolding precisely as planned. The narrator comments that the system's restoration occurred at the ideal time, almost as if the whole thing were prearranged. Wait, look at this. It's Odin's lust eye, and the rating is, are you serious? That's the highest tier possible in existence. Ihan feels like the most fortunate person in the world, musing about how good things tend to come all at once. The description explains it's the eye sacrificed by Odin, the king of the gods. Ihan struggles to process the information appearing before him. He stares wide-eyed at the floating blue status window, his mouth almost certainly hanging open beneath his hair. But wait, there's even more. He also acquired an EX rank active skill named Universal Derivation, which is completely broken at this point. The skill enables him to understand and literally break magic formulas, a complete game changer for someone who used to only care about martial arts. It allows him to use strong magic instantly without incanting, and duplicate other skills onto blank cards, essentially making him a cheat code. He understands items like this command tens of millions of dollars. He's not just rich, he's set for multiple generations. Magical items are even more valuable, meaning he could basically set his own price and the major guilds would pay without a second thought. He begins laughing like a maniac, thinking about how this is a mythic ranked item. And it happens to be the only one of its kind in the entire world. He's literally holding history and a vast fortune in his funds. He dreams of true freedom at last, free from being a meat shield, free from being looked down upon, and most importantly, free from being penniless. He's convinced this miserable raider lifestyle is finally behind him. The man looks like he's about to start high-fiving everyone in a celebratory strut. He gazes at the mystical eye, contemplating if he should just try before you buy it on a test run before flipping it. Seriously, don't be that guy. He rationalizes that seeing a mythic item again is highly improbable, so giving it a little spin won't hurt, right? It's just research. The giant, flashing notification appears right when he tries to click it. Odin's lost eye will become soul-bound upon equipping, causing Ihan to instantly freak out and yell at the screen to abort. He's hyperventilating on the floor, completely shaken by the near miss. He sighs profoundly, realizing he almost threw away a priceless mythic treasure, barely dodging that bullet. He firmly concludes that equipping it is a terrible idea. The clever play here is obviously selling it to the highest bidder on the shady black market for millions. He figures that since he's long past the age of 20, his leveling potential has dried up, making a mythic item completely wasted on his static stats. He presumes it wouldn't even be that helpful for a humble deer ankle like himself. He needs to work on his self-esteem, apparently. He ponders a system failure, classifying it as an unexpected twist and a deeply bizarre abnormality in the flow of things. Nevertheless, he decides he's pretty accustomed to these kinds of inconvenient curveballs. Raiders like them have been struggling for ages. He observes that in a world full of treacherous dungeons, sudden and bizarre situations are actually pretty standard occupational hazards for raiders. And typically, these high-stakes scenarios almost always split into two distinct categories. Either incredible good fortune or absolute, irreversible tragedy. He surveys the magnificent treasure room, sensing a subtle wrongness about it all. Back in the main group, Myonho looks around nervously for Ihan, wondering why he's taking so long to return. He lets out a triumphant cheer as he finally spots him making his way back from the darker recesses of the area. The raid leader, on the other hand, looks like a frustrated parent and loudly demands Ihan's presence. He tells Ihan to stop dragging his feet and hustle up because the main expedition is about to kick off soon. Ihan feigns humility, offering an apology for his delay. The leader issues a stern warning about independent actions in the future. They start working in sync. The leader continues to glower, looking like he's still cooking up a lengthy sermon in his mind. Myonho keeps glancing at Ihan with a puzzled expression. He's certain that something fundamental has changed in his friend. Myonho gives Ihan a friendly slap on the shoulder, advising him not to feel too discouraged by the leader's harsh words. Ihan flashes an incredibly bright, sincere smile in response. He insists that he's completely fine, obviously thrilled about finding that hidden treasure. Ihan even offers to pick up the tab for drinks later, a suggestion that completely throws Myonho for a loop. He adds that he can't keep leeching off Myonho forever. Myonho watches him wander off with the rest of the team, looking absolutely stunned as if he'd just seen a poltergeist. He questions if Ihan somehow finally decided to mature at the ancient age of 27. Myonho is completely flabbergasted by the sudden attitude adjustment. But the very instant Ihan steps out of Myonho's view, his face instantly hardens into a serious and calculating expression. He lets out a deep sigh of relief, believing he successfully fooled everyone for now. He realizes he absolutely must keep the mythic item completely secret. He understands that a dungeon functions as a completely lawless zone. If anyone discovered his find, they would kill him without hesitation to take it. He correctly assumes that letting anyone know he found something valuable here would essentially be signing his own death warrant. He's playing this cleverly. He concludes that waiting until after the specific raid to offload the item isn't a bad plan. Patience is definitely a virtue, especially when millions are involved. Currently, his top priority involves dodging side eyes from coworkers, so he slides back into formation like a sneaky ninja. Observe that glowing citrus peepo. He's working overtime to ensure his facial expression remains as stiff as cardboard. The big boss shouts that because the vanguard arrived, they shall commence the dungeon pillaging festivities once again, hopefully. Out of nowhere, giant crimson fissures begin ripping across the floor with a noise like a giant cracking his knuckles. A massive boom shakes the space directly before the commando, which definitely was not mentioned in the morning briefing today. Ian glances behind him with source-shaped pupils, watching his chunks of ceiling decide to embrace the laws of gravity. Mercenaries howl in fright while additional blasts tread the corridor, sending a poor fellow through the air like a ragdoll. A random dad bellows asking about the commotion, just as a giant slab of masonry takes flight like a bird. Ihan scans the area with complete bewilderment, suspecting this particular disaster lacks the usual signature of a beastly ambush. Honestly. Abruptly, a dense violet haze begins saturating the chamber, radiating a mood that says I will ruin your lungs. Fighters drop everywhere while grasping their necks, making this entire situation feel like a terrible dream Ben Harbly run. A lady warrior hacks up crimson fluids, struggling for air and questioning reality, which is honestly quite unpleasant to witness. Ian shields his lips after identifying the spicy air as lethal vapor, proving he is surprisingly fast at spotting mortal peril. He understands that inhaling this funky perfume leads to an early grave, so he concludes that exiting the premises is mandatory. Yoho dashes up, looking absolutely petrified while shouting his buddy's name. He informs Ian that a hasty departure is required because the fuck seems unfriendly. Thanks for the update, Captain Ubbeers. Ian squinted through the mess, keeping his covered mitts on his snout, attempting to solve this puzzle while everything explodes. Ian bellows for everyone to flee, but the clock has sadly run out for them. Without warning, a sharp steel toy pokes through a fighter's torso, painting the walls red, suggesting a secret assassin likes hide and seek. The camera zooms into Ian's petrified peepers, as he gathers that this mess is a calculated slaughter rather than bad luck. Unfortunately, Myonho gets a pointy stick delivered to his ribs, staring at the wound without a shock while making a wheezing noise. Ian shrieks his friend's Manga, yet Myonho is already folding like a cheap lawn chair while leaking red juice. Truly tragic. Additional mercenaries get sliced and diced within the excellent colored haze, turning the floor into a literal butcher shop of horrors. Ian stays frozen with a palm on his mug, witnessing his solitary companion in this cruel existence expire right before his eyes. He peers upward with a mug contorted in dread, finally accepting that his current situation is far worse than a bad heyday. The phrase "I must flee" emerges in a coarse and thorny crimson letters across a dark backdrop. Drizzle with source. Ian bolts like he's being chased by debt collectors, his chest thumping while he struggles for every bit of oxygen available. Blasts shake the car door as he flees, creating a truly useless ruckus. He slid down a treacherous incline, frantically trying to create a significant amount of distance between himself and the approaching assassins. The poisonous mist was spreading like a bad rumor, obscuring everything in sight, essentially turning the area into a guaranteed fatal hazard. Ian crouched behind a pile of debris, puffing for air like he just finished a triflin, while his eyes darted around in a state of high alert. He couldn't shake the disturbing images of the people who were killed, with the face of Myonho specifically burned into his memory. He was sweating profusely, realizing as he considered the killers that this wasn't the work of some mindless monster, but something far more deliberate. He concluded this was unquestionably the result of professional dungeon contract killers, recognizing it as a carefully planned and executed hit job. He figured the goal was probably to completely wipe out the meteor guild, making the entrance a definite suicide run since they likely had guards posted there. Panic flared up as he grabbed his head and screamed in his mind, wondering why in the world this catastrophe was happening to him. He gave himself a stern talking to, commanding himself to get a grip, realizing it was definitely not the time to be distracted by philosophical worries. He looked at the mythic item clutched in his hand, thinking it would be truly pathetic to just die after finally obtaining it, and this thought hardened his resolve. A sudden noise echoed through the gloom, making it clear that someone was approaching fast. The dark shape began to materialize through the mist right behind him, which was obviously not a good sign for his continued existence. Suddenly, a huge surge of golden and orange energy erupted, taking the clear form of a giant magical spear. The attack was enormous, swirling with both roaring flames and crackling lightning, indicating whoever launched it was definitely not messing around. Ian got caught right in the explosion, letting out a sharp grunt of pain as the sheer force sent him flying backward like a rifle. He looked up through the thick dust and smoke, coughing heavily as a distinct figure slowly advanced through the chaos toward him. The figure, wearing a simple gray hoodie, spoke with a familiar voice, saying he knew Ian would survive, and addressing him casually as Hyan. Ian's eyes went wide as he instantly recognized the person, whispering the name young woman in disbelief. Woman pulled back his hood, revealing a dark, twisted grin that made him look completely different from the pleasant guy Ian had seen in the cafe. He then repeated his earlier statement, confirming he told Ian so, all while sporting a creepy, smiling face that showed he was enjoying the spectacle. Woman was encircled by crackling, yellow lightning magic, as he reminded Ian that he had promised to pay him a visit today. Woman stepped out of the shadows, with lightning crackling around him as if he were a video game boss, asking if he hadn't made his intentions perfectly clear earlier. He leaned in close, giving off a menacing vibe with his hoodie-wearing villain look, clearly having anticipated this reunion all day long. Ian just stood there, drenched in sweat and utterly speechless, unable to believe that the guy he was having coffee with was behind this entire massacre. He finally found his voice and managed to ask if this whole catastrophe was truly women's doing, despite already knowing the obvious answer. Woman didn't even flinch, casually ticking off his list of crimes like he was checking grocery items, mentioning the poison fuck and attacking the meteor guild without a care. Then he delivered that nasty little smirk and confirmed, yes, that's correct, as if nothing in the world could bother him. A close-up shot captured Ian's eyes, practically glowing with extreme shock, as his entire perception of reality was turned completely upside down. He was trying desperately hard to maintain his composure, mentally instructing himself to stay calm despite the chaos surrounding him. Then he asked the most critical question of all, simply, why? The dude dismisses the whole mess like a rainy day forecast, treating a paid assassination like a boring grocery list, absolutely heartless. Proximity increases as he clarifies that the meteor guild has a massive fan club of haters. Apparently popularity contests weren't the thing. Ian is buffering like slow internet while the jerk claims they were too stuck up, though being a snub usually doesn't merit a funeral. We get the lowdown on dungeon hitmen, basically creeps who turn hidden zones into their personal slaughterhouses, which is quite a spooky hobby. Snippets of the Ender massacre flash by, showing folks meeting their maker while the oblivious public enjoys the lattes outside. An image shows a corpse soaking in its own juice, proving this wasn't a wild beast snacking but a professional murder in the shadows. Ian's brain is basically a siren wailing profanities upon spotting more disguised dunes lurking nearby. He is officially in a massive pickle. The guy is glowing with azure mana like a neon sign, making Ian realize that picking a fight is a one-way ticket to the cemetery. The villain fixes his spectacles with that specific, arrogant expression, indicating he is a top-tier rank caster, ranking within the elite 2% of the entire nation. Supreme level status. Meanwhile, Ian is a lowly D-rank peasant, basic and weak, essentially serving as a tasty appetizer for the magician's spells. Staring at the floor, he understands he's just a background extra, so playing a silent mime might actually keep his lungs working. He is leaking buckets of nervous juice since the interface remains offline, meaning there is zero chance for a graceful exit right now. Flashbacks of soldiers struggling to stay alive zoom past, serving as a nasty memento of his harsh, kill-be-killed reality. Myung-ho, that nice fighter guy, pops into his head, and it real burns that he failed to keep his buddy from expiring. He glares at the magician posing like an immortal deity, knowing deep down that a D-rank weakling has zero tactical options here. The voiceover begins describing the initial growth of Yggdrasil, preparing the audience for some massive plot development or historical lore drop. The prick offers to act like today was a hallucination, playing the mercy card because the universe enjoys bullying the tiny guys. He begins fueling up a heavy payload of Marna, questioning if Yihyun was aware, and this definitely smells like impending doom. The gigantic spark of electricity rips through the frame, resulting in complete and utter demolition of the surroundings. Yihyun gets toasted by the explosion, looking like a smashed raspberry, hardly recognizable as the dude from 10 minutes ago. It hits him that being a millisecond late would have resulted in his permanent retirement from the land of the living. Enormous crimson letters on a dark backdrop state that his death was statistical certainty in that moment. The current situation is basically a game of high-stakes mortality. Rumen continues his annoying grin, informing Yihyun that the meter dild was merely one item on his hit list today. He aims his digit like a lethal firearm while Static dances around, clearly having the time of his life being a villain. A colossal column of amber electricity crashes onto the scene, making this fellow a working, torquing power plant of doom. Yihyun is parkering for his life, narrowly avoiding those electric zaps while struggling to keep his clock ticking for another moment. He looks utterly exhausted, just screaming profanities inside his own skull. Honestly, who hasn't been there, pal? Women is already powering up for the next attack, while Yihyun frantically tries to calculate exactly why he's the target of this high-level harassment. He endures yet another blow, completely unable to grasp the situation. He's just a D-rank hunter, so why all this extravagant effort on his behalf? Women just stands there nonchalantly as the surrounding atmosphere crackles with energy, looking utterly unamused, which somehow makes him even more terrifying. As another magical circle materializes, Yihyun starts to seriously consider whether he accidentally annoyed the wrong deity during a previous incarnation. His mind races, pondering if someone genuinely holds a grudge severe enough to wish him dead, while the world around him turns into a glitching red mess. Blood streams from Yihyun's head wound, but he pushes past the pain and forces his brain to function, desperate to find a logical link between events. His single visible eye peers through a mask made of his own blood, rapidly scouring his memory banks for even the slightest piece of evidence. Internally, he screams a question about who would orchestrate such violence, the rage-filled text reflecting his deep dive into past trauma. His entire field of vision swims with chaotic red glitches as he hovers precariously on the precipice between a major breakthrough and a complete mental collapse. A sudden memory surfaces where a shadowy figure labels him a completely useless failure. Yikes, that's some top-tier, foundational level emotional damage right there. The cruel voice declares it's a mystery how a brat like him could ever have been born, confirming for Yihyun that it's the voice of his father, a truly deplorable human being. The dreadful realization slams into Yihyun with the force of a speeding vehicle, as he finally manages to connect all the scattered puzzle pieces. He glances upward, Sarkar etched clearly on his face, finally grasping exactly what the man in the hoodie truly symbolizes to him. Women remain standing there with an unreadable, completely neutral expression as Yihyun asks the ultimate question, if his father started this mess. An overhead shot captures both figures standing upon the cracked and barren wasteland, perfectly framing the intensity of this current standoff. Women's hand slowly rises to cover his mouth. Wait, is that laughter? Yes, he's definitely completely losing his composure. He turns his back, his entire frame convulsing with uncontrolled laughter, clearly finding the entire situation extraordinarily amusing. He lets loose a peal of manic laughter, thoroughly savoring the look of utter devastation on Yihyun's face. This individual is genuinely unhinged. He howls uncontrollably now, prepping his own ribs in mirth, while Yihyun simply stands by, observing the facade finally crumble away. Women wipes away a muck tear, still grinning wildly. He labels Yihyun smart in that classic, deeply condescending manner that all villains seem to share. He claims that's exactly why he finds Yihyun so appealing, as actual bolts of lightning visibly arc around his body. Besh, what a wonderfully reassuring friend he turned out to be. Yihyun glances downward, this feature's hidden in shadow, as Women insistently repeats his declaration of affection. The level of obsession here is seriously unsettling. A faded memory appears, joining young Yihyun alongside his mother. This is a precise memory he is fighting so hard to either protect or avenge. Yihyun raises his gaze, fixing Women with a completely cold, lifeless stare. He has just one question left to ask, having completely given up on being the victim. A haunting image flashes across the screen, revealing a covered body lying on a slab in a morgue. Well, things just escalated from bad to incredibly dark. The flashback shifts to 5 years prior, in the middle of winter, joining under Yihyun completely destroyed and sobbing uncontrollably. He questions whether his father had also commissioned a hit during that time period, directly linking the death of his mother to his own dad. Women's eyes gleam brightly behind his spectacles. He's clearly impressed that Yihyun managed to guess correctly, proving once again what a genuine monster he truly is. He calls Yihyun amazing through peals of laughter, demonstrating zero concern for all the lives he has utterly destroyed. To him, this entire thing is merely a fun game. Yihyun grins back through the blood, having officially snapped, with low-level anxiety completely eradicated. The antagonist begins working away, rambling about how Yihyun just wouldn't get far to killing his own spouse, and then eliminating his son, proving he's a true poet of destruction. The lightning starts gathering around him once more. An enormous lightning bolt slams down right where Yihyun is standing, creating a total whiteout effect. The villain holds out a hand, smiling warmly like he isn't about to finish a murder, asking Yihyun if this isn't baffling. He prepares to finish the job, declaring in an icy tone, well, that's just how it goes, before bidding the young man farewell. Yihyun stares at the ground, his hair hiding his face, appearing utterly beaten, but hold on just a minute. We catch a glimpse of the corner of his mouth, revealing a smirk, meaning the antagonist just made a colossal error. The glowing crimson eye illuminates through the fractured blue interface of a system screen, signaling a major event. The legendary artifact, Odin's Lust Eye, begins to activate, causing the surrounding air to hum with electric energy. The villain hears something strange and pauses, turning around to face Yihan with a distinct look of uncertainty creeping in. Without warning, the entire cavern fills with an intense, brilliant yellow radiance, forcing the antagonist to shield his eyes. The tight shot on the antagonist shows his glasses reflecting the light, and he finally looks genuinely apprehensive. Yihan stands within a towering column of brilliant golden energy, peering as though he were undergoing a dramatic rebirth. The villain's jaw drops to the floor in disbelief as he wonders about the strange magic, realizing he is now thoroughly outmatched. The very earth beneath Yihan's feet begins to crack and break apart from the immense, unbelievable pressure. Yihan remains perfectly still and serene while the magical energy swirls around his body like a raging hurricane. The villain begins sweating profusely as the monarch continues to intensify, confirming that he is in serious danger. Yihan now possesses a commanding aura, making the antagonist realize he must finish this confrontation immediately or risk defeat. The antagonist prepares his ultimate technique, pleading for Yihan to die this time, declaring that the little game is over, as desperation kicks in. The gigantic, twisting spiral of lightning shoots directly toward Yihan, appearing powerful enough to flatten the entire area. Yihan stands completely still, observing the incoming attack as if it were nothing more than a gentle breeze. The lightning bolt closes to within inches of his face, meaning the moment of truth has arrived. The tight focus reveals a luminous, glowing golden eye, indicating that the lost artifact is now fully operational. The lightning strikes home, yet it immediately freezes and seems to vanish as if being consumed by an unseen vacuum. The look on the villain's face says everything, a picture of complete and utter shock that his strongest technique simply fizzled out. Yihan raises his head, one eye shining brightly like a miniature sun, giving him a truly frightening appearance. A system notification appears, confirming that Odin's Lost Eye has been equipped. The ownership transfer is complete. Yihan casually wipes blood from his lips while eyeing the glowing orb, realizing he can no longer liquidate this particular asset. Farewell, future riches. Another system update appears, revealing a blank card ready for use. Well, this whole situation just got even more interesting. That guy is screeching like a banshee, claiming the impossible, though the golden eye clearly has other plans. His mystical powers have vanished into thin air, leaving him about as shielded as a screen door on a submarine. Yihan advances, booming his name with a cheery disposition of a tax auditor arriving to collect your soul. The system chime chirps to announce that the blank card successfully triggered the intended ability. Yihan blares with enough venom to kill a dragon, promising a slow demise that I honestly find quite plausible. A notification confirms he married the lightning chain, so he is basically slapping his opponent with his own hand. Jagged yellow bolts erupt from his palms, proving once again that Karma is a vengeful roommate who never cleans. The poor sap is getting toasted by his own electric jazz, resembling a fried breakfast cereal mascot. He trembles while questioning how a measly D rank handles such power, but hey, the universe loves a good prank. Yihan remains perfectly still amidst the swirling tempest, posing like an edgy deity from a heavy metal cover. Desperate to save face, the guy bluffs about whether one lousy spell can really finish this, but spoiler alert, it does. Yihan rushes ahead wielding a colossal blade of pure light, proving that true bosses skip the torque and go for gold. A blinding shockwave of golden radiance dominates the view, likely leaving everyone's eardrums feeling quite rattled. The guy goes soaring backward while spitting out fluids, confirming that the underdog has officially flipped the script. Yet another shockwave follows, as Yihan proves he has the stamina of a caffeinated toddler on a sugar rush. The cinematic angle reveals the unfortunate fellow getting slammed into the dirt like a poorly secured tent. Yihan watches the haze clear with the calm demeanor of someone who just finished a very boring crossword puzzle. Crouched and gasping for breath, the loser looks like he just scored a glimpse of his own miserable afterlife. He attempts one last pathetic flick of magic, but he is clearly operating on fumes and broken dreams. The overhead view displays a magical bubble, which serves as a highly exclusive venue for mutual destruction. The system alerts indicate the universal derivation is live, signaling that it is time to wrap up the circus. Yihan launches a humongous golden projectile that is practically vibrating with an absurd amount of magical juice. It slices through his fragile defenses effortlessly as a heated blade cutting into a slab of cold butter. Panic ripples through the guy as he realizes his digital life expectancy has just hit absolute zero. Yihan summons a swirling magical whirlpool that drags the loser straight into the epicenter of the impending doom. He focuses his gaze with the icy intensity of a surgeon, clearly ready to call it a day on this fight. Trapped in a swirling mess of sapphire and gold, the guy manages only a pitiful whimper of total surrender. A glowing orb drifts toward his chest, and he finally accepts that dodging is no longer an available hobby. The colossal blast erupts, turning the entire theater of war into a chaotic display of searing light and heat. Clouds of thick soot and embers linger, making the corridor look like a structural failure in a firecracker factory. Only text and Yihan stumbles from the smoke, resembling someone who just finished a very messy paintball game. The character named woman is lying broken on the floor. Her glasses are shattered into pieces, and she's barely hanging on to consciousness. The opponent looks up at Yihan, spitting out blood. It appears the situation has drastically changed for the worse. He pleads desperately with Yihan to spare his life. A little late for remorse, pal. Yihan's eyes shine with an ominous brilliance. He appears completely devoid of compassion for his foe. The camera zooms in on woman's shattered lenses and a growing crimson puddle. She's definitely out of commission now. Yihan drops to the ground, utterly spent. He questions if the battle has finally concluded, struggling to keep his eyelids from closing. A broad view captures both figures lying still on the floor. The corridor has fallen into absolute stillness. The close-up reveals Yihan's face. Blood seeps from his lips, and his complexion is ghastly white. The understands he possesses zero remaining magical energy or physical endurance. He truly exceeded his personal boundaries. He stares at his blood-soaked hands, lamenting that he finally acquired a legendary artifact only to face imminent demise. The Kozak joke is on him. A message on a black background displays his revelation that his recent string of misfortunes was a deliberate trap. The whole thing was rigged. As he rests flat on his back, he reflects on all the close calls he had as an adventurer. Now that death has truly arrived, he feels himself drifting in a strangely serene void. His eyesight begins to dim. He mutters about the intense coldness as his very existence slowly evaporates. The darkness creeps closer around him. He whispers again how freezing he feels. It's a truly tragic conclusion to his journey. Suddenly, a system notification materializes out of the void. It claims a new operating software has been installed and prompts him to activate it. Say what now? Ian strains to read the display through his failing sight. He's completely bewildered by the sudden intrusion. The message clarifies that executing the software will reverse time back to his most preferred moment. A do-over, basically. Ian's pupils dilate significantly. He questions whether going back in time might actually rescue him, grasping at a sliver of possibility. He realizes a new element has entered the equation. He prepares himself to roll the dice on this unknown factor. He acknowledges that he has no idea where this path leads, but he verbally accepts the offer. He manages a bloody grin as he confirms the activation. He's opting for a completely different direction in life. A close-up shot focuses on his determined, blood-stained expression. He definitely hasn't thrown in the towel just yet. The Norny system is now operational. The entire display sputters and flickers with intense energy. A stunning, luminous deity manifests in a brilliant burst of illumination. He resembles a divine spectacle from paradise. A goddess with fiery red hair and a blindfold comes into view. A second goddess with blonde hair, similarly blindfolded, appears quite ethereal. A third goddess, possessing white hair, joins the group. They are the Nornir, the Kazakh thread spinners. The blonde goddess extends her hand towards him, presenting an opportunity for a complete restart. Ihan reaches out in return, clasping her hand firmly. His destiny is literally changing right before our eyes. The system decided to interrupt, declaring him a god-hater and handing out 2 legendary passive skills. Talk about a serious promotion. Apparently, the Anisir deities were keeping an eye on him now. Just a little bit of cosmic surveillance, no big deal at all. Ihan launched himself off the mattress like he'd just seen a ghost, inhaling sharply, his expression utterly bewildered. He surveyed the familiar surroundings, realizing with a start that he seemed significantly younger, practically back to his awkward high school days. His brain struggled to cope with the mental leap from horrifically dying in a dark dungeon to chilling in his childhood bedroom. He fixated on the familiar clutter of his desk, eyes wide with confusion, trying to comprehend the bizarre change of scenery. A photograph featuring himself and his mother caught his gaze, amplifying the sense of disorientation swirling through him. He held his hands out, studying them closely, noting the absence of any battle scars or grim stains. They looked completely unblemished. He lifted his arms toward the bright morning light streaming through the window, a tangible sense of reality washing over him. Tiny, glittering wisps of magic began to swirl between his digits, providing undeniable proof that this unbelievable event was genuinely occurring. The system chimed in with confirmation, declaring that time had successfully rolled back to precisely the moment he'd wanted. A sudden close-up revealed his vibrant, burning orange eyes, signaling that his return to the action was officially underway. He couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that this was all just a very vivid dream, still grappling with the impossible truth. His memories flashed back to the horrific tragedy he endured, remembering the morgue and the bloody deaths as if they were yesterday's reality. A ghostly image of his adult self flickered into view, solidifying the realization that he truly had escaped annihilation. He continued arguing with himself internally, desperately attempting to rationalize the situation as nothing more than a powerful hallucination. Then Ian's face contorted with visible heartbreak. He glanced back at the picture of his mom, understanding perfectly why this specific moment in time meant everything to him. He lifted his gaze and there she was, standing in the doorway, undeniably alive and present in the flesh. He convinced himself this must be a prolonged dream, the ultimate fantasy finally coming true after so long. Her gentle smile radiated such affection that it nearly broke his emotional dam, making him feel completely overwhelmed. Ihan's eyes quickly filled with tears, reaching the point where he simply could not contain his emotions any longer. He launched himself across the short distance between them, enveloping her in the most meaningful hug of his existence. He buried his face in her shoulder, releasing a torrent of sobs that carried away years of accumulated anguish and sorrow. He decided this was definitely a dream he wouldn't mind staying in forever, marking his new beginning in style. What a cliffhanger for the end of the chapter, right? Make sure to hit that notification bell. Confirmed by the system, the precise date was November 15th, 2020. Ihan had successfully executed the ultimate time loop, landing exactly where he wanted to be. Ian gasped and grabbed his chest as a vicious jolt of agony flayed through him, groaning loudly because, as it turns out, time travel has a few unpleasant downsides. The alerts continued to flood in, revealing that his non-combat restrictions were lifted and his body had recovered to a respectable 20% capacity. He struggled for breath, attempting to reconcile the fact that he was no longer a heap of dust in a dungeon, which was quite a lot for one morning. He kept staring at his hands in disbelief, questioning whether he was truly awake or still experiencing a delusion. Frankly, I'd be just as confused. He glanced around and quickly recognized his old childhood bedroom. To make things weirder, the system immediately generated a quest named Rest is the Mother of Success, which was a pretty chill tutorial quest, honestly. The sub-quest details appeared, explaining he needed to recover his health to 80% to receive a blank card reward. He mused whether this even counted as a proper challenge, but grinding quests on day one were just part of the new life, apparently. Ihan fixed his gaze on the floating blue screen, his expression becoming intensely serious. He had already mentally transitioned into full-on gamer mode, completely focused on the system. A truly massive sigh escaped him, a genuine exhale of relief. The mental and physical weight of an entire lifetime simply evaporated from his shoulders. He made a firm mental note that he was going to start fresh this time around. This, he thought, was where the real adventure truly began. Finally, he suddenly recalled the grim finale of his previous life, where he lay bloody and broken in the dirt. It was a stark reminder of exactly what would happen if he messed up this second chance. The close-up image of his dying face from the past timeline reinforced the memory. He understood precisely how he had survived that horrific, near-death experience. The credit went to the new operating system he activated in the final moment. Regression, he realized, was one heck of a cheat code for life. With that, the timeline was drastically altered, and history was written. He found himself back in the past, branded a glorious second chance at everything. He stared at his hands, recalling the moment Idrisil appeared and shattered reality. Having witnessed some truly strange events, he was adapting significantly quicker than any typical middle schooler would. Determination was clearly etched on his features. In this specific new reality, he knew thinking quickly and efficiently was the only strategy for survival. He quickly checked the timeline, confirming he was exactly 11 years in the past, back in his third year of middle school. Peak awkward phase, yes, but absolutely perfect for hitting the reset button. The system chimed in, announcing it had officially rebranded as a new system. It sounded very high fantasy, making Yoon immediately question the significance of the new name. He swung his feet over the side of the bed, his toes tapping gently on the bedroom floor. The sensation was strikingly real, perhaps a bit too vivid for a dream. He stood up in the cluttered room, taking stock of his past existence. He realized it was essentially a museum dedicated to his own questionable choices and previous mistakes. Truthfully speaking, he thought, the whole regression experience still felt like a bizarre dream. He half expected to be shaken awake by someone at any moment. Reaching up to the shelf, he grabbed the calendar. He needed to examine exactly what his younger self, Yoon, had intended to do next. He picked up the tablet and let a small, confidence work across his face. He was absolutely about to disrupt a major canon event from the timeline. He read the calendar entry, application for Miller's Academy. The S. Become a comeback class, no matter what. He stayed at the note, realizing that specific postscript was the exact decision that had completely derailed his first life. He slowly extended his hand toward a pen. The tension in the atmosphere was palpable, as if fate itself held its breath. He aggressively scrawled over the combat class part, making a loud scratching noise. He was officially saying goodbye to the meat shield lifestyle forever. He knew perfectly well this was a singular opportunity to get everything right. This valuable chance was absolutely something he could not waste. He smiled like someone who just discovered a hidden cheat code, vowing to himself that he would not possibly repeat that mistake twice. The new objective was officially locked in. He would absolutely become a magician this time around. The single change was an absolute game changer for his entire future. Skipping the usual breakfast options, he began stuffing his face with greens instead. He needed to keep his energy levels up for all the serious magic training to come. He pours Michu, his gaze unfocused and distant. He was almost certainly contemplating fireballs or similar magical effects, rather than his boring breakfast rice. His mother observed him from across the table, having heard him sniffle quietly. She immediately adopted a look of genuine concern for her son. His mother inquired if something was currently troubling him. She could clearly sense her son was behaving in a completely different manner than usual. He remembered the massive hug from the previous chapter. That intense moment had clearly been a lot for her to process all at once. Mom, accustomed to her son being quieter than a library on a Tuesday, was absolutely flabbergasted when he started bawling his eyes out like he'd just seen a spider with a tiny hat. Mom set her hand down, calling his name and asking if he'd misplaced his favorite toy or if trouble was truly brewing. Yoon tried to act nonchalant, claiming nothing was amiss, but his tear-filled gaze proved as convincing as a politician's promise. He displayed a brilliant, utterly unconvincing smile, asserting he just had a little nightmare, which was a vast understatement considering it spanned years. He gripped his chopsticks with an iron resolve, and Mom, repeating the word nightmare, clearly wasn't falling for his story. Inside his thoughts, he revisited the horrifying sight of his own deceased self lying in a morgue, a memory that undoubtedly earns a nightmare title. His eyes blazed with sudden intensity, a sullen, steely promise that the cold, hard morgue slab would never be his permanent address again. He met his mother's gaze, informing her he had something crucial to reveal, an announcement that clearly felt like a monumental, life-altering occasion. Mom gave him a knowing look, affirming she'd already sensed his impending confession, because, of course, mothers always seemed to possess that uncanny intuition. She began fretting, wondering if he was apprehensive about applying to Malay's prestigious academy, understanding full well the grueling challenges involved. Yoon merely listened, appearing exceptionally calm and composed, possessing a level of maturity that genuinely seemed far too advanced for a mere middle schooler. Mom closed her eyes, silently reflecting on the utterly cutthroat, duck-eat-duck reality that defined the entire Raider world. She confessed his potential apprehension would not come as a surprise to her. A Raider's existence is undeniably perilous and ferociously challenging. Ruthless. She mused that if he truly lacked enthusiasm for the academy, a regular, mundane school would suffice, as her sole desire was for his genuine contentment, even if it meant no epic battles. Without warning, Yoon dropped the bomb, announcing his intention to alter his academy application to instead pursue the enchanting magician class. Mom paused, utterly flabbergasted for a split second, then her face instantly brightened into a smile as she announced, "Oh, yes, that's quite acceptable." Yoon seemed utterly perplexed by her rapid shift in demeanor, but Mom's mind was racing back to his previous unwavering insistence on joining the warrior class, a memory as stubborn as a mule. She understood him to be a deeply considerate child, convinced he wouldn't simply alter his grand plans on a frivolous impulse, like deciding to wear smash socks. She stared absently out the window, her features softened by the ambient light, allowing her mind to carefully process this truly significant and unexpected transformation. She extended her hand and tenderly cupped his cheek, a wonderfully affectionate maternal gesture that radiated pure warmth. She inquired if this was a spur-of-the-moment revelation, to which Yoon smoothly replied in the negative, explaining he'd actually been pondering it for quite some time, a truly masterful recovery. She affirmed his absolute freedom to pursue any path his heart desired, provided it stemmed from genuine passion and wasn't merely a misguided quest for quick cash or a fancy new gadget. She assured him of her unwavering maternal support, a declaration that clearly threatened to turn Yoon into a human waterfall once more, and honestly, who could fault the kid? He discreetly dabbed at his eyes with his sleeve, as his mother chuckled, gently reminding him that now was simply not the designated moment for another tearful performance. However, just then, a foreboding, chattery figure materialized in the background, none other than his dad, Min-chun, instantly tanking the emotional vibe from blissful joy to absolute despair in mere milliseconds. Ding, a virtual fanfare sounded, announcing the quest's successful completion, granting him his coveted blank card reward, which subsequently elevated his spirits more than a free pizza. His inner musing suddenly adopted a sinister tone. Vengeance against his elite A-rank raider father became his sole, dark obsession. He absolutely must get way more powerful, his eye literally radiating pure spite, like a tiny sun fueled by grudges. It's time for the ultimate workout montage, Ian doing handstand push-ups right in his bedroom, looking impossibly ripped for someone who still hasn't graduated from middle school. That form is impeccable, he isn't messing around at all. Every repetition is a step closer to making his old man regret everything. He grabs a towel, wiping himself down while admiring his impressive gains, already fully exploiting the advantages offered by this Nornir system. He figures things are definitely shaping up nicely for his plans, knowing that confidence is absolutely vital when you're plotting a hostile takeover. His biggest advantage, however, is knowing exactly what happens next. He literally has all the cheat codes and future spoilers in his head. He glances at his bookshelves, recalling all the secret artifacts and forgotten ruins he can corner later, certain he's destined to become the ultimate raid leader. But he quickly realizes there's a serious flaw in his current skill set, a major problem with magic because he's basically starting from absolutely nothing. He flops back into his gaming chair, letting out a heavy groan of exasperation, realizing just how tough the road ahead is going to be. He wonders if he really has no other choices available to him, looking a bit overwhelmed by the sheer amount of effort required. He pulls up his system profile screen, and a bright flash of blue light instantly illuminates the entire room. Time for a quick stats review. Level 7, Strength 4, Dexterity 2, Magic 10, Endurance 5, giving him 21 precious stat points available to spend right now. He checks his skills next, noticing that passives like Absolute Eye of God and One Washed by the Guts somehow managed to stay with him, which feels like a truly massive victory. He's confused why only the passive skills remained intact after the regression, figuring the system must be keeping some important secrets hidden beneath the hood. As it turns out, the skill One Watched by the Gods allowed him to retain everything through the regression process, proving itself to be truly ridiculous, game-breaking ability. Seriously, this skill increases all his stats by 1 every time he levels up, which is completely overpowered and basically breaks the game's balance. He reviews his remaining skills, noting that Absolute Eye lets him see through illusions while Lightning Chain serves as his primary, go attack. He glances over his shoulder, feeling the distinct gaze of the gods upon him. No big deal, just the creator of the entire universe watching him grind levels. He admits he's still a bit unclear exactly what Absolute Eye does in practice, but Lightning Chain is definitely a keeper in his arsenal. Returning to the stat screen, he realizes he has some major strategic decisions to make with those 21 available points. He figures strength is mostly useless for a magician build, but he definitely needs to put points into dexterity so he can actually dodge incoming attacks effectively. Stat dump time, 2 points into dexterity, 5 into magic, and then a massive 14-point investment right into endurance. Wait, endurance, really? He justifies the choice by noting that endurance reduces fatigue from training, making it basically the ultimate step for a long-term grinding strategy. Sparks of mana begin dancing between his fingertips, confirming his choices, figuring priority 1 is complete because he's successfully building his fundamental foundation. From his perspective, endurance is genuinely the most crucial attribute for long-term growth, which is actually some pretty smart thinking. He's satisfied with his current attack skills for the moment, knowing he simply lacks the massive mana pool required for high-rank spells anyway. Now comes the truly difficult part, selecting which brand new skills to acquire using his blank skill cards. He flips a black card between his fingers, deciding that what he really needs most right now is a healing spell, knowing support classes are just completely meta. Folks, he recalls how magician classes were pretty much treated like garbage back in 2020 compared to the powerful warriors, realizing it really was a tough crowd. But he knows healers are definitely the exception to that rule, figuring they are basically the absolute royalty of the raider world. Forget dungeon crawling, healers are absolute superstars in the medical world, enjoying total red carpet treatment. They're basically the VIPs of wellness. He understood that by kicking off his journey with a healing ability, he'd instantly bypass any eye rolls, because, let's face it, respect isn't just earned, sometimes it's expertly mended. He leaned back, letting out a prolonged breath, but like finding a single, lonely sock, a fresh snag always popped up. His thoughts drifted back to a certain lady, reminding him he really had a master using his mysterious blank cards with far greater efficiency than his previous, somewhat wasteful, attempts. The main obstacle, however, was locating an individual with a transferable healing ability, a task proving about as simple as finding a unicorn casually strolling through the public gardens. He gazed thoughtfully into the distance, looking like a human supercomputer processing complex data, already meticulously crunching all the potential probabilities in his head. He was acutely aware the system wouldn't simply shower him with an endless supply of cards, so he absolutely had to ensure each individual one was maximized for optimal impact. He gazed at his inert phone, patiently willing a convenient option to magically appear on its screen. His phone suddenly began vibrating, causing him to ponder the identity of the caller, and honestly, the universe's sense of comedic timing was truly impeccable. He gingerly answered, genuinely intrigued by who might be ringing a mere middle school student at such an unconventional, practically past bedtime hour. The glowing display lit up with the identity of Kim Yujin, making his entire expression utterly void for a brief interval. His eyes suddenly ballooned in sheer astonishment, as if a poltergeist had just offered him a coupon for free coffee. A sudden memory surge transported him instantly to his formative years. They resided next door, perpetually inseparable, and she truly embodied his closest confidante. Now as adolescents, they both yearned to attend Malaise, a peculiar name more suited for a chronic discomfort than an institution. Just look at her. Yuzheng, radiating pure sunshine and flashing a peace sign, was practically his emotional anchor, a beacon of stability in an otherwise chaotic world. However, the warm fuzzy feelings were abruptly shattered by a terrifying, blood-red vision, revealing that a truly ghastly event had unfortunately befallen her in that initial, grim timeline. He gripped his skull, the agonizing memory triggering genuine physical pain, causing him to wince, yet he desperately assured himself it was all fixable now. He possessed the power to alter destiny. As he perused her incoming messages, a gentle smile gradually resurfaced on his features, confirming she was precisely the delightful individual he'd so fondly recalled. Suddenly, a realization struck him. Of course, *G* exists, and instantly, a viable strategy materialized in his mind. He scrolled through the messages, discovering that Yuzhen was enthusiastically promoting the upcoming downtown appearance of the illustrious Saintess Yu Sun-Yun, practically a celebrity meet and greet. Behold, the Saintess herself, glowing with a divine halo, dressed like a high-tier video game character. Beard. The mystical energy she possessed achieved legendary status, positioning her as a quintessential, paramount objective for any restorative abilities. In bold, dark lettering, the somewhat ominous phrase "SA sacrifice" then distinctly materialized. Clearly, that unusual title represented her distinct signature ability. Yihan quickly snatched his jacket, mentally concluding he wouldn't need to fret much with such an influential heavy hitter on his side, and promptly headed for the exit. He zipped his black hoodie, suddenly looking every bit the unassuming protagonist, primed for some low-profile heroics. He shouted to his mother that he was briefly stepping out, to which she hollered an okay in return, accompanied by the timeless maternal directive to not be overly tardy. Indeed, mothers truly are consistent. He ambled along the thoroughfare, eyes utterly fixed on his smartphone screen, already meticulously orchestrating the finer points of their imminent rendezvous, probably an emoji. He quickly messaged back that he'd be there in a flash, truly a man on a singular, fast-paced, and utterly important mission. A rather opulent Rolls-Royce was hurtling along the highway, which could only mean it was the Saintess's incredibly plush mode of conveyance. A woman wearing a maid outfit is inside the car, reciting the Saintess's impossibly full calendar, which includes a lecture, a B-rank monster hunt, and an international flight. The bodyguard, Sun Yi, watches her reflection in the rearview mirror, his face full of worry as he questions whether she can possibly continue in her current state. Sun Yi points out she looks paler than a vampire's victim, a clear sign that she's pushing herself far beyond her breaking point. Saintess Yo Sun-Yun responds with a strained, chubby smell, insisting she's perfectly fine, just slightly fatigued from a bit of hard work. Sun Yi knows this extreme routine has been going on for months and is ready to throw a fit about her relentless self-destruction. He is visibly sweating with anxiety about her condition, because he understands the grim reality lurking beneath the surface. The Saintess elegantly stares out the window, looking like a high-fashion model who hasn't slept in a week. Sun Yi thinks that this sacrificial power of hers is literally devouring her lifespan, making it a truly malicious curse. He wishes there was at least one other person with healing capabilities matching hers, so she wouldn't have to carry the entire burden alone. She immediately shuts down his concern with a polite smile, reminding him they agreed to never discuss this. Sun Yi ubber. Sun Yi clenches his hand so tightly that it trembles, thinking that at this rate, her collapse is inevitable. He's sweating bullets and looks absolutely devastated, knowing full well she's heading directly toward a catastrophic breakdown. The narrator concludes with a grim foreboding, warning that Courier's Saintess might soon crash and burn, which ends part 3 on a dramatic note. Yihan and Yuzhen finally arrive at the downtown venue, which is completely packed with people eager to catch a glimpse of the famous Saintess. Yuzhen is physically hauling him through the massive crowd, prompting Yihan to finally complain and demand she stop dragging him around like a sack of potatoes. She bounces around like a child in a toy store, while Yihan just stands there, preparing himself for the inevitable sermon from her. Yihan hits her with a straightforward question, asking her to be honest, as he knows she only brought him along because she has no sense of direction. Yuzhen gets flustered, denying all accusations while demanding he release her hand, displaying classic contradictory behavior. But then she immediately regrabs his hand anyway, leaving him wondering what exactly she wants from him. Yuzhen briefly pauses for reflection, genuinely curious how someone so skilled in every other area could be completely incapable of finding her way anywhere. She immediately reverts to fangirling, telling Yihan he should feel privileged just to witness the Saintess, displaying intense loyalty to her idol. Yihan just offers her a cynical smirk, knowing that if he successfully copies that sacrificial skill, he'll be set for life. He calculates the possibilities in his mind, with the gears turning rapidly as he plans 3 steps ahead. He realizes this is his golden opportunity to secure the most influential connection in all of South Korea, which is, no big deal. The event starts, and Yuzhen begins cheering wildly, while Yihan just sits next to her with the reserved demeanor of someone attending a board meeting. He is completely fixated on the stage, not for the inspiring message, but for the potential power he hopes to acquire. A massive banner welcomes the Yeonhwa Guild, confirming that the Saintess is essentially the most important figure in this entire world. She promotes her famous slogan, promising to save both the world and its inhabitants through powerful healing magic, right this very day. And there she is, Saintess Yo Sun-Yun herself, renowned globally for being a top-tier healer. Yuzhen is utterly mesmerized, remembering that in early times, healers were considered the ultimate heroes who protected society. Grabbing the microphone, she addresses the sea of people while Yihan tracks her every movement like a hungry raptor. She offers a warm greeting to the masses, yet Yihan ignores her fame while analyzing her from a distance. With a charming grin, she presents herself, oblivious to the fact that a time traveler is currently sizing her up. The audience erupts in chaotic cheers, and Yuzhen has clearly secured her position as the head of the fan club. Yihan has a far more ominous schedule in mind, knowing fully well that life turns upside down in 8 weeks. He recalls the grim news report about the Saintess facing a fatal dungeon incident, essentially a ticking time bomb. It turns out her own sacrifice spell will be her undoing, a truly cruel twist of cosmic irony for a healer. Only a single method exists to prevent her demise. He remains the sole person aware of this, while Yuzhen continues to scream her name like a total maniac. Yujin is acting like a megaphone, prompting annoyed Yihan to ask for silence, though she keeps blaring away. The Saintess begins her lecture by labeling this year as a time of utter calamity, refusing to sugarcoat things. Ever since the arrival of Atruzal, daily life involves monster attacks and the world is currently a burning trash fire. She notes that the emergence of awakened folks hasn't solved much, serving as a bleak reality check for the listeners. She shares the depressing news that a mere fifth of all awakened are brave enough to raid, leaving the rest sidelined. She highlights the painful truth regarding mounting casualties, while Yihan stands back and observes the drama unfold. Focusing on those emerald eyes, she seems genuinely convinced that humanity is currently hovering on the brink of extinction. She pleads for volunteers to step up, noting that while the strong stay home, innocent people are dropping like flies. Her main point is that society requires more valor, a message she underscores with a dramatic wave of her hands. She encourages all listeners to realize that bravery can shift the tides of destiny, showing off her natural charisma. Begging them to join the raiding ranks, she pours her soul into the microphone hoping to create a safer future. Her guild pledges to support any new recruits, leaving the crowd completely enchanted by her idealistic promises. The noise level is insane, proving she is a gifted artist capable of stirring the emotions of the entire room. Yujin claps so aggressively her palms are surely burning, firmly believing her idol is the greatest speaker of all. For once, Yihan finds himself nodding along because her observations about the current situation are actually quite accurate. It is undeniably true that most awakened lack the guts for frontline combat, as fighting monsters is hardly a picnic. Even Yihan recalls his pre-aggression days of wanting to flip items and slack off, a relatable urge for any normal person. Yujin continues praising her perfect role model, while Yihan just offers a dismissive look that screams whatever you say. She tells him to quit ruining the vibe and just appreciate the performance since she is having the time of her life. Yihan abruptly declares he has urgent matters to handle and leaves, making it clear she is definitely not coming along. Yujin flares up in anger, labeling him the absolute worst and questioning if he also enjoys being a classroom menace. Only text N. Yihan grins, revealing he already pinged her mother, proving he stays miles ahead of the game. Bewildered, she learns her mom is arriving, while he casually tells her to hang tight before dashing off. He drops a real Zynga, announcing his career pivot into wizardry, leaving Yujin with a melting brain. He cheekily asks her to tutor him in magical theory, clearly having a blast with his rebooted life. She chases him, shrieking for an explanation on his secrecy, but he has already vanished into thin air. Abandoned and betrayed, she stands there questioning if he really deserted her like that, and yes he did. Yihan is back on the prowl, knowing full well his targets are lurking somewhere in the vicinity. Spotting the black limo idling by the sidewalk, he realizes it is finally time to play ball. Check out that smug smirk, since he thrives on this chaotic game and loves every single minute. He strolls toward the vehicle where Sunny, the bodyguard, is occupied with a call, showing serious guts. Sunny dismisses him as a typical obsessive fan bearing unwanted gifts, having endured this farce countless times. Unfazed, Yihan states he intends to meet guild boss Yu Sunjun, sounding far more polished than a teenager. Sighing heavily, Sunny prepares to play hardball, completely exhausted by these persistent and delusional starry-eyed fans. He confronts Yihan, demanding eye contact in a desperate attempt to scare the youngster into backing down. He warns that fandom has limits, practically acting like a bounds protecting the club of elitist gatekeepers. Yihan offers a serene smile that only irritates Sunny further, calmly explaining this visit has zero fandom ties. Then he deploys a bombshell, mentioning the guild leader's secret illness, which makes Sunny's heart nearly explode. Knows the contrast, as Yihan stays cool while Sunny looks like his processor just suffered a crash. By claiming he possesses a cure for her condition, he instantly secures the bodyguard's undivided, panicked attention. Sunny suddenly looks menacing, rattled that some random kid just broadcasted classified info on a public street. He snatches Yihan by the neck, shouting for sauces while rapidly losing his composure and his cool. Howling in his face to reveal how he discovered the leader was suffering, he turns the situation intense. Yihan meets his gaze with orange eyes, telling him to pipe down because he has ice water in his veins. Passers-by begin noticing the heated argument, ruining the low profile that Sunny was desperately trying to maintain. Unexpectedly, the window descends, and the Saintess herself begins observing the entirety of the bizarre public spectacle. Ordering Sunny to desist, she turns to Yihan, challenging him to back up those bold claims with substance. Yihan never wavers, promising he can definitely fix her ailment, proving he is betting the whole farm. She mulls over the fact that a liar would inevitably be exposed within a few short heartbeats. Scanning him for any telltale signs of a bluff, she finds only a mask of unshakable, genuine confidence. He stands there chilling, making her wonder if he truly possesses the goods to back up his bravado. Only text N. She inquires if Sunny knows our deadline before the upcoming spectacle begins. Sunny remains paralyzed by disbelief, glancing at his wrist for the time. Only 2 hours remain to discover if this Kate is our messiah or a complete nutcase. She signals Yihan to enter, needing a secluded spot away from all these prying gazes. Settling into a private chamber, she gestures for him to park himself so they can talk shop. Yihan perches on the furniture, radiating coolness while offering a polite word of gratitude. She prefers a systematic approach, starting by asking how he uncovered her medical secret. Closing the distance, she scans his expression, desperate for some clarity in this mess. Yihan mimics her intensity, flatly stating that specific intel remains under wraps for now. He hints that if she insists on the truth, the feeling deal is off, which is a rather spicy ultimatum. A genuine chuckle escapes her lips, labeling the boy quite audacious, which is frankly spot on. She concedes for the moment, moving to the massive inquiry of how he intends to cure her. Yihan gathers his composure, promising to deliver nothing but the unvarnished truth. He intends to replicate her own sacrifice, causing the entire room to fall deathly still. Her jaw hits the floor, questioning his sanity because his claim sounds like absolute nonsense. Sunny smashes the desk in fury, and since it is stone, the furniture is practically begging for mercy. He reaches his limit, shouting that wasting breath on this joker is a complete fool's errand. He barks at Yihan for talking nonsense, noting that sacrifice is a guild master's exclusive ability. screaming that copying such magic is impossible. He is clearly on the verge of a total meltdown. Unique skills are rank even S tier powers, reserved strictly for hereditary lines or singular, gifted legends. Formulas for these talents do not exist, as they are guarded by powerful clans like some twisted VIP club. Ihan absorbs a grumpy lecture, keeping his mouth shut because he possesses the ultimate hidden advantage. He asks Sunny to dial back the intensity, claiming he would never show up without a solid plan. Sunny looks ready to throw hands, yet the Saint commands peace, insisting on hearing the full pitch. Chi restates the core premise, confirming he plans to fix her using that very same sacrifice, right? Ihan confirms, noting that fixing a skill penalty requires matching or exceeding that rank, proving he understands the math. Given that her condition stems from a unique skill, she has hit a massive wall, because absolutely no power in this world ranks higher than that singular ability. Lacking a way to mend herself through sacrifice, this unconventional method becomes the only viable path forward. Her power represents a literal tribute to the divine, so it sits on an elite tier. Only text N. Using your own health bar to mend your wounds is a trash strategy, like pouring water into a leaky bucket. She grins and says that if he is actually that insane, she might just be down for a little gambling. Looking like a mythical goddess while charging her energy, she dares him to show her he is not just bluffing. Sunny is still complaining like a grumpy toddler, but the boss lady has already decided to pull the trigger. A massive explosion of sparkly gold light pours out, making the whole place look like a fancy neon club. Ihan just flashes a smug little smirk, clearly pleased that his master plan is working out exactly as intended. He holds out his palm as it starts to glow, proving that he is finally ready to show his hand. Behold the blank paper, just waiting to gobble up her special move like a hungry vacuum. A system alert pops up saying a new skill is available, and the hype in the room is getting heavy. He says the word, and the registration starts. Success, the self-damage healing power is now stored on his card, which is massive news. He wears an incredibly conceited expression, as he is currently the sole individual on Earth who can perform this sorcery. He acknowledges her lingering doubts about his character, then vows to demonstrate his integrity immediately. Triggering the ability, his hand transforms into a miniature sun that would definitely blind a vampire. Both observers are catching flies with their open mouths, because they are watching Logic get absolutely wrecked. Ihan squeezes his hand shut as the brightness fades, then casually suggests they finally sit down to torque shop. He looks like a total legend standing there with all the leverage, so come back later for the next part. Check the stats. We are getting a deep dive on this sacrifice move, a rare skill that heals squads or nukes zombies with holy lasers, truly a Swiss Army knife. The funny part is that by stealing the skill with a card, he ignores the death penalty, basically using a game shark. Ihan just gives a very cool and arrogant smile, knowing he owns the room, then simply asks, so? The Saint you Sunhan, dead straight to the point and asks what exactly he wants from her powerful group. She washes him like a hork, because the fact that he fixed her terminal illness makes him worth listening to. She is still pretty doubtful though, because the kid looks like he just learned how to shade yesterday morning. She thinks to herself that this is ridiculous, wondering how a literal child is trying to negotiate like a pro. Normal folks would be trembling like wet dogs while standing face to face with a powerful leader of the best build in Korea, but Ihan is totally unbothered. He giggles a little bit, realizing how entertaining he is, and now she is definitely interested in his vibe. Ihan drops the heavy news, asking her to please be his sugar ma'am sponsor, which is a very bold move. She is shocked and asks if he wants a career mentor, checking if he is just betting for cash. Ihan does not hesitate, admitting he has big goals but needs some serious cash and clout to reach them. His ambitions are anything but modest, as he aims to secure the total resources of the young Redil for his journey. After a brief pause, she nods, deciding that anyone bold enough to make such a request might be a gamble worth taking. Holding his gaze, she silently concedes that his skills are as impressive as his rather inflated sense of self-worth. Naturally, there is a catch, since dealing with these high-level build leaders always involves a rather tiresome complication. With a piercing stare, she adds a clause to the deal, effectively inflating the cost of her patronage quite suddenly. Ihan remains poised despite the pressure, well aware that even a desperate leader remains a shark at the bargaining table. He notes her icy composure, realizing that even with her survival hanging in the balance, she remains a pro at heart. She reiterates the point to ensure he understands, confirming that a strictly enforced condition is definitely on the table. Clarifying that her health is a private matter, she creates a firm barrier between her medical issues and build policy. She emphasizes that requesting the full backing of the organization is quite a leap beyond a simple personal favor. Ihan grins, realizing that she considers giving him a free pass a rather lopsided and unprofitable business transaction. They lock eyes in a tense standoff, with him knowing full well that she has much more to lose if he departs. She cuts to the chase with a pointed query, asking if he has already set his sights on a specific guild. Totally blindsided, Ihan lets out an awkward noise, realizing this unexpected turn was absent from his mental screenplay. The realization hits him, and he muses whether she is attempting to recruit him on the spot for a rapid career boost. He questions the sincerity of her offer, to which she replies with a grin that she rarely wastes time joking about talent. She lists several persuasive arguments for his recruitment, turning this encounter into a surprisingly high-stakes sales pitch. To start, he had covered her hidden medical condition, a piece of classified intelligence that should have remained strictly confidential. His ability to dig up such dirt suggests elite investigative skills, though she remains clueless that he is a time traveler. Ihan shifts uncomfortably, knowing he cannot reveal his chronological secret in such a public and high-pressure setting. Secondly, he successfully mirrored her rare sacrifice still, displaying a level of talent that is honestly quite terrifying. She admits that seeing someone replicate a unique skill is unheard of, marking him as a truly baffling anomaly. Dreaming of future profits, she views him as a literal working fortune waiting to be added to her roster. Feeling quite smug, Ihan asks for a third reason, clearly eager to hear more praise heaped upon his head. Leaning forward, she agrees that there is indeed a third point, and it is arguably the most significant one. She observes that despite her status as career's top boss, he remains entirely unfazed and completely devoid of nervousness. While most people would be trembling, this kid holds his ground with a grit that defines a true, legendary raider. She whispers closely that his lack of fear is surprisingly attractive, proving he has successfully grabbed her full attention. Asking if these motives suffice for recruitment, she finalizes the bargain, presenting an offer that is difficult to reject. Recalling the past, Ihan knows her guild collapsed after her death in the old timeline, making this moment vital. Only text N. He contemplates the horizon, knowing joining the top guild grants instant prestige and elite gear, making the bait quite delicious. Yet he hesitates, questioning the legality of binding a minor to a guild contract, since he technically is still a baby. She offers a sly grin, clearly having plotted this maneuver several moves before he even woke up today. She mentions priority negotiation rights, which is essentially a legal cheat code designed to bypass every single red tape. Zooming into Yihan's widened pupils, he is visibly hooked, having never encountered such a cracked illegal loophole before. The guild funds his growth until adulthood, then begs exclusive rights to his skills later, which is a surprisingly fair trade. Typically this golden treatment is reserved for total prodigies, so Yihan realizes he just stumbled onto a winning lottery ticket. They share a quiet moment of stillness, with a potential agreement floating between them like an unspoken promise. She finds his earnest intensity adorable, advising him to ponder it while she mails the legal paperwork to his home. Yihan rises, eager to start his actual labor, insisting that healing takes precedence over any corporate soul binding. He acknowledges the stellar offer, yet wisely decides not to sprint into a permanent commitment today, showing some rare brain power. He makes his choice, concluding that career moves can simmer while he prioritizes curing the sick over signing contracts. He positions himself behind her to cast the spell, and she shuts her eyes, surrendering her safety to his care. Sunny hovers in the car door looking hopelessly bewildered, as the entire situation refuses to register in his confused brain. He feels utterly lost, likely undergoing a mini existential breakdown while watching a mere lad achieve the genuinely impossible. Ihan emits a brilliant golden glow from his palms, appearing as polished as a seasoned veteran of the craft. Sunny forces himself to accept reality, witnessing the magic firsthand and conceding that the kid is a real deal. He reflects on those high-profile surgeons and expensive medical experts they previously consulted to no avail. Every single one of them failed to provide even a hint of progress. It was a supposedly terminal condition, an ailment that had defied every medical genius throughout history until this point. Yet Ihan pours energy into her effortlessly, drowning the chamber in waves of radiant, shimmering golden monitor. System notification pops up, noting the sacrifice skill is active, flooding her frame with restorative magic that actually works. An intense aura envelops her frame, making it appear as though she is undergoing a total physical reconstruction process. The close shot reveals her face as she senses the illness draining away, gasping that her vitality is returning. Sunny is drenched in cold sweat, staring in complete shock while questioning if this incurable curse finally broke. He drops into a deep, humbled bow, feeling like a massive buffoon for having doubted the youth previously. He practically pleads with the lad to preserve the Lita, demonstrating that his skepticism has morphed into genuine reverence. Ihan remains composed, knowing it is fine because he would have doubted himself too, keeping his cool perfectly. Sunny promises a proper penance later, officially becoming the newest and most enthusiastic member of the Yihan fan club. System success occurs, confirming the heal was effective and bumping his emergency first aid skill to level 19 swiftly. Only text N. Exhaling deeply, he mentions the job is done and suggests she wiggle about, clearly thinking he's God's gift to doctors. Spinning gently, the lady explores the fresh power surging through her rejuvenated limbs. Transformed into a gorgeous outline against the glass, the sunbeams kiss her skin to mark a very dramatic fresh start. Her fingers stretch toward glowing bugs and rays of amber, creating a scene straight out of a cheap romance novel. Looking radiant and fit, she has finally evicted the nasty germs from her beautiful system. Checked, she admits the weird pains vanished and her internal battery is finally fully charged. While truly grateful, her expression suddenly sours as she fears the poor guy might suffer some nasty magical brain damage. The guy remains totally chill, while she assumes he traded his own vitality like a total martyr for her. Just so you know, using those empty cards means zero negative consequences, making him a total magical cheat code. Tossing a cheeky wink, he jokes she can just fix his broken buddy later, acting like a total smooth dorking flirt. Beaming with joy, she promises to assist him whenever necessary, showing the new and incredibly deep connection. Pending over a fancy card, she promises to fulfill his every desire and tells the boy to call her anytime. Begging him to reconsider the legal deal, she refuses to let a golden deuce like him fly away now. Inspecting the paper, he plots his next scheme and mentions there is a small favor he needs right this instant. She listens intently, ready to hand over the entire world to him by tomorrow morning if he just asks. Under a bright sky, the next step begins as a fancy dark car rolls slowly into the practice facility. The area welcomes a very stylish newcomer. Opening the car door, the assistant welcomes our new celebrity as trendy shoes meet the gritty ground. The kid looks ready to brawl. Exiting the vehicle with focus, he isn't sightseeing, he's here to beat up some monsters for those sweet points. The guide moves forward while describing this elite practice zone for talented hunters. Arriving at a weak monster lair run by the Yonhwa squad, tucked deep within a very mysterious forest. Whether the school is packed with overachieving nerds, he requires a secret cheat code to stay on top. Smirking like a villain, he decides it's time to farm experience points and warns us to stay tuned. Standing before the Yonhwa portal, those giant rocks bearing a sun logo look ancient and quite hungry for new victims. The manager prepped a mountain of red juice and sharp tools, realizing a warrior without snacks is just a very dead adventurer. Because our hero is a total level 1 scrub, he receives a fancy glowing stick, which represents a massive fashion and power upgrade. Grabbing the wand, he expresses gratitude while the older guy keeps hovering like a concerned and overprotective mother. Warning him that even bottom-tier caves are risky for loners, the man questions why the kid is being so incredibly stubborn. Shrugging off the concern, he fixes his back and claims he just needs a light workout, acting like it is a mere morning stroll. Sonny lets out a heavy breath while peeking at his futuristic wristwatch, realizing the bride is stubborn so he prepares a getaway strategy. Stretching out a palm, he presents a sparkly kite-shaped azure jewel, suggesting that carrying this shiny rock improves his survival odds. This magical pebble is a warp stone. Crush it to zip back to the front door, serving as a magical hall pass for those who attract trouble. He stresses that Ihan should activate it when things get spicy, since losing the bus's top pick would probably end his career. With a soft and somewhat embarrassed grin, he pleads for the boy to accept the gift, showing that the tough guy actually has a big heart by apologizing for being rude. He mentions it also doubles as a reward for patching at the bus, essentially showering the kid with every imaginable company benefit. Ihan clutches the trinket with a quick nod of gratitude, valuing the kindness even though he expects to never actually use the thing. Resting in front of the spinning azure vortex, the boy detects faint mystical traces and concludes this is merely a low-level portal. His fingers brush the humming glow of the entrance, and he honestly believes this whole mission will be easier than finding a parking spot. Sonny screams one final warning about the teleportation rock from the edge, clearly on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Tossing a confident grin back at the guy, he says he is going in now, looking much cooler than he probably feels. He marches into the brightness as the computer chirps to signal his arrival, and it is finally time to start the show. Hold on, the shift feels weird, since instead of a cave, the world becomes a messy explosion of neon violet and blood crimson. A fierce purple whirlpool swallows him whole, making him shout in confusion because this definitely is not how Baby Dungeon should behave. The computer malfunctions, declaring that the Nornir software is hijacking his flight to drop him off at a very particular destination. Crimson alerts flood his sight, revealing the coordinates are set for Helheim's domain of the deceased, which is basically a terrible vacation spot. Inside the main headquarters, Bus Sonyun sits behind her desk looking pensive, oblivious that her star pupil is currently chilling with ghosts. The Ihan fellow is still stuck in her head, mostly because the boy managed to leave a massive mark on her memory. Contemplating his survival during the raid, the lady proves that even holy figures possess certain hidden nurturing vibes. Her mind wanders back toward the odd appeal to borrow some crappy, bottom-tier portal from their organization. Specifically, the desire to venture inside completely solo is a stunt that would leave any veteran warrior feeling totally perplexed. She understands that clearing a weak level by yourself is impossible for a rookie who lacks a graduation diploma. In her side, the youth is a sparkly but rough rock, having plenty of talent but zero real combat hours. Assuming he's aware of the danger, she attempts to deduce what his secret strategy could possibly be for this mission. A tiny smile creeps onto her face, as she realizes he is truly beginning to admire the young man's sheer guts. She puzzles over his hidden agenda, feeling a real itch to witness how he manages to tackle the upcoming challenges. A sudden rapping on the wood breaks her focus, signaling the arrival of her assistant, Farkarna, for a scheduled update. Sonyun perks up and invites her inside, obviously eager to receive the particular data she had been anticipating all day. Parna walks into the room clutching a dark file, maintaining her usual icy demeanor that could probably freeze a cup of coffee. Skipping the small talk, Sonyun inquires immediately whether the woman secured those special items he had previously requested. Parna slides over the dossier on Min Yihan, proving her efficiency is honestly kind of terrifying. Sonyun begins rifling through the file, clearly braced to read a laundry list of wizardly feats. Parna studies her superior, puzzled by why this specific teenager is suddenly her entire personality. Sonyun lets her gaze wander over the documents, her face morphing from intrigue to utter bewilderment. She halts at a specific sheet, Sun defined him listed as a warrior, which completely blindsided her expectations. She looks genuinely baffled, questioning how he managed those spells when the facts simply refuse to align. She glances at Harna, who keeps her expression neutral, while the boy remains an absolute enigma to them. A close look at her pupil reveals she is currently multitasking through a mental hurricane of data. She pivots her che toward the glass, pondering how his magical stats remain sky-high despite his warrior status. She demands to know if the intel is solid, and Harna confirms it is gospel truth without hesitation. Check out these stats, 97% mage compatibility, which is basically an illegal cheat code for a fighter. Sunyun snatches up her mobile to summon Sun-Yi, currently operating at record-breaking urgency. She insists that Yihan receives a message the second he exits the ruins, leaving zero room for debate. Sun-Yi stammers over the connection, clearly losing his marbles while trying to process these frantic demands. She lingers by the ledge, mind settled, knowing she must corner this youngster the moment he surfaces. A predatory grin stretches across her lips as he vows to personally evaluate the raw power Min Yihan hides. It is glaringly obvious that she intends to draft him into her ranks regardless of the cost. Deep within the afterlife zone, Yihan finally concludes his bizarre trip amidst a sea of violet marner. He plummets into a murky void, which is definitely not the standard E-rank experience he had anticipated. He lands hard with a pathetic grunt, clearly regretting his life choices as his body protests the impact. He hauls himself upright, discovering he is stranded in a bone-chilling cemetery, which is hardly a vacation spot. The atmosphere is suffocating, forcing him into a coughing fit as his lungs fight the necrotic miasma. He struggles on the dirt, gasping for air while realizing this workout session just became a death trap. Gritting his teeth, he pushes to his feet, internally swearing as he realizes he is genuinely screwed. He glances nervously at the ghastly foliage and ancient tombstones, clueless about his current grim coordinates. Out of the fuck emerges a looming, hooded Grim Reaper, radiating a glow that is frankly quite rude. The speckle launches an immediate assault with a colossal scythe, leaving neon blue streaks in the air. Tihan narrowly rolls to safety while a massive discharge of blue magic obliterates his previous position. He slides across the dusty floor, pupils dilated from the sudden rush of pure, unadulterated terror. The shock rattles his frame as he realizes he is not fighting a common mup, but a top-tier boss. Only text N. He glanced behind himself, following the Grim Reaper's misty shuffle, probably hoping it wasn't playing an elaborate game of tag. The speckle Reaper held its position, peering every inch the actual embodiment of doom, clearly signaling an epic, game-ending showdown. A close-up revealed the Reaper's bony visage, its orbs ablaze with an icy, cerulean malevolence, probably just forgot its eye drops. Ihan noticed an odd tingling in his limb, pondering if it was a fast-acting paralyzing toxin, because, things weren't awful enough already. He swiftly engaged his fresh ability, and brilliant golden luminescence engulfed the cemetery as he employed a sacrifice to expel the venom. But alas, he found he was not by himself. A multitude of petite bony soldiers began clawing the path from the frigid ground, clearly late to the party. The atmosphere became dense with valid and obsidian mana, feeling exactly as if an actual Speckle Legion had chosen him for a group hug. Ihan surveyed his surroundings, utterly enveloped by dim, ghostly apparitions, officially qualifying him as the reluctant star of a slasher film. Then a colossal armored skeleton emerged from the haze, showcasing an enormous shield and blade, proving this was definitely an army and not just a small-scale ambush. The Reaper readied itself for yet another destructive swipe, and the sheer force of the air movement alone seemed capable of ripping the very earth asunder. Hold on, what? Ihan casually snagged the spear's tip with his bare hand, proclaiming with a stone face and disinterest that his overpowered hero vibe had clearly returned. He snapped the weapon in two with a bored flick of his hand, grumbling about the utter ridiculousness of it all, clearly ready to solo this entire realm and move on. Meanwhile, in a different post-toad, Yojin sulked dramatically on her mattress, bathed in bright sunshine, yet her internal forecast was unequivocally stormy. Her gaze was fixed on a Saint Esposta, absolutely seething, as she internally challenged Min Yihan to even consider showing his face in her vicinity. She buried her countenance in the cushion, yet her stay burned with unholy wrath, believing she would genuinely annihilate him on this occasion, quite the terrifying childhood acquaintance. She was vehemently complaining about him abandoning her, despite his full awareness that she possessed the navigational prowess of a particularly confused pebble. He essentially stranded her, allowing her to aimlessly meander through the deep, dark forest. She was physically pummeling her mattress in a furious outburst, utterly flabbergasted he possessed the audacity to manipulate her feelings in such a manner. She flopped backward, gazing at the ceiling with a profound sigh, utterly bewildered by his actions. He had transformed into a complete enigma she simply couldn't decipher. Rewind a bit, she recalled Ihan once mentioning his disdain for bustling environments, always preferring the solitary life, probably even in his dreams. Then she scanned his message, confirming his imminent arrival, utterly baffled that he'd abruptly consented to attend the lecture, a decision completely uncharacteristic of his usual self. She reminisced about the younger days on the playground swings. He consistently escorted her back to her residence once the games concluded. So why exactly had he abandoned her without explanation on this particular occasion? It truly defied all logic in her mind. And if that wasn't enough, matters were about to become significantly stranger. He was apparently transitioning into the magic user category. After dedicating ages to martial arts, Yu Young genuinely believed he had finally taken leave of his senses. The past scene depicted Yihan rigorously practicing with a wooden quarterstaff, so if he truly intended to alter his chosen path, there must be an earth-shattering explanation for it. Yu Young remained prone, desperately attempting to process this revelation, concluding there simply was no other plausible theory to account for his sudden eccentric shift. Typically, Yihan was renowned for his extreme meticulousness and precise planning, certainly not one to make decisions based on mere impulse or a sudden urge. Selecting a mere dinner menu required a full 10 minutes from him, due to his profound indecisiveness. He was truly the reigning monarch of excessive rumination. Consequently, how had he morphed into an entirely distinct individual in a single evening? She wondered, as her gaze remained fixed on her device, desperate for an explanation. Her phone suddenly vibrated, and she snatched it up faster than a kleptomaniac spotting a shiny object. It was just her internal critic again, reminding her she was now completely alone. She was still deep in the planning stages of his hypothetical funeral. Meanwhile, back in the dungeon, Ihan scanned his surroundings, senses on high alert. He could feel something terrible approaching. His eyes narrowed as a cold shiver ran down his spine. He wondered if it was a monster's, but realized it was actually a massive amount of incoming mana. He was sweating profusely, his heart hammering against his ribs. The literal shivers he was getting were not a good sign. Suddenly, 4 wraiths materialized. These eerie, floating ghosts were glowing with blue fire, clearly eager to collect some souls. Iyun gritted his teeth, realizing they were far more organized than typical monster packs. He seriously doubted he was meant to fight them all by himself, calling it a truly unfair challenge. He looked down at the staff Sunjay had given him, thinking it was better than nothing at all. He knew it was his only chance at survival. A system check revealed a load of skilled entry-level staff. It was basic equipment, but significantly better than relying on his bare fists. The orb on the staff suddenly flared to life with a brilliant blue glow. He was ready to show these ghostly entities who really own this territory. We got a bit of lore on the Line of the Dead, which is overseen by Loki's daughter Hel. It's one of the 9 legendary realms described in Norse mythology. Iyun remembered this particular dungeon contained 7 of those worlds, excluding Midgard and Asgard. This was extremely high-level content for a student. The world map showed Niflheim, Muspelheim, and Elfheim. It felt like a truly terrifying tour through mythological geography. It continued to show Svartalfheim and Valheim, each realm appearing more hazardous than the last. Then there was Helheim, the absolute coldest and darkest of the bunch. This was definitely not a map for novice adventurers. The terrors of facing enemies that refuse to die are legendary here. Without divine skills, you're basically just monster food. But Iyun had the classic main character syndrome, deciding this was actually a good thing. He was ready to test out his new magical abilities. He quickly reviewed the sacrifice skill again. It was an S-rank powerhouse that converted into Judgment of Light when used against the undead. He recalled the Saintess who originally used it. The skill was a massive area of effect attack, perfect for clearing large groups of enemies. A torrent of golden light began pouring down from the ceiling. It was the Judgment of Light, resembling nothing less than an orbital strike from the heavens. Iyun quickly struck a skeleton soldier right in the face with his staff. He wasn't just a caster, he still had those solid melee instincts. The skeleton soldier let out a roar, its empty eye sockets blazing blue. It definitely looked like it wanted to take him on in a fight. Iyun countered with a powerful overhead swing. The blow sent bone fragments scattering everywhere. He landed a heavy strike, completely crushing the creature's shield. He admitted to himself that he wouldn't rely on only one method of attack. He charged a golden 5 spell in his left hand, which flashed brightly. He was clearly embracing the multiclass lifestyle. Boom. A golden explosion decimated one of the wraiths. He defeated the creature and gained exactly 70 experience points, which felt rewarding. Standing in a whirlwind of blue and gold energy, he realized that even as a mage, his body instinctively knew how to fight physically. He moved in a sudden blur, the speed lines confirming he still had those high-level warrior reflexes. He slid across the frozen ground, tracking his next target. He looked far too cool and composed for a brand new mage. The real truth was, this guy has absolutely zero magic training, instead just winging high-level moves through sheer blind luck. Sparks of yellow static dance around his staff as he clumsily attempts to manifest a spell he barely comprehends. Shimmering golden shackles bind the ghost and drag it into oblivion, rewarding him with another fat pile of experience. Jevon hits the dirt panting, porting experience points at a pace that would make a professional gamer weep. Wearing a mischievous grin, he decides to keep pushing his luck because the dopamine hit of leveling is addictive. A bony soldier emerges from the haze, and Jevon smugly assumes he can handle this encounter with his current stats. He pivots with fluid grace, looking like a natural combatant ready to parry any incoming strike with perfect timing. He smashes the staff against the brittle skull of his foe, but a sudden sharp noise gives him pause. Fearing a sickening snap, he stares down at his splintering equipment with eyes full of utter disbelief. The interface alerts him that his budget starter gear is shattered, which is just typical of his rotten luck. Jehun wears the classic expression of someone who doofed, standing paralyzed while clutching a useless piece of firewood. He recalls that he was swinging the staff like a mace, clearly forgetting that wizards should avoid bludgeoning things. Surrounded by a dozen glowing crimson eyes in the gloom, he realizes his lack of weaponry makes him a snack. A cold chill runs down his spine as he accepts that breaking his gear confirms his amateur status as a mage. He extends his palm and decides to commit fully to his remaining techniques, thinking it is time to improvise. His expression turns steely because smashing the stick does not alter the fact that he intends to remain standing. Glowing system prompts flicker to life, announcing that a sacrificial trigger is morphing into a potent defensive maneuver. The divine verdict begins as the surroundings ignite with an overwhelming radiance of pure and holy energy. Colossal beams of light pelt the ground, turning the undead husk to ash while granting him a tidy experience reward. Another flash obliterates a ghost, securing him more points and essentially cleaning the floor of these pesky monsters. Ian hits the deck exhausted, yet the sudden shine of a level increase proves his timing remains incredibly lucky. Azure energy cloaks his frame, washing away his fatigue and providing exactly the refreshing boost he required to continue. He chuckles while brushing moisture from his forehead, masking the reality that he nearly met his unfortunate end just now. As the holy deluge continues to fall, he contemplates if every high-tier skill is this absurdly overpowered and unfair. Gazing into the distance with amber eyes, he suspects his acquisition of that rare card involved far more than chance. He concedes that his lack of arcane expertise is dangerous and he must study before he destroys another pricey wand. Rising to his feet, he traverses the misty landscape knowing the Nornir network guided him to this hidden realm. A system notification confirms he is deep within the graveyard of Helheim, which is exactly as unsettling as expected. He contemplates retreating via his warpstone, thinking he has endured quite enough mayhem for a single afternoon of work. Without warning, a chilling aura of dread washes over him, sensing a gargantuan predator lurking in the dark periphery. Only text N. Whipping around with sorcerer eyes, he puzzles over this spooky vibe, clearly sensing this baddie is no mere peon. An obsidian whirlpool of power starts churning in the glade, signaling that some unwanted guest is arriving. Crimson streaks pierce the fog, leaving Ihan paralyzed while he curses his luck at such a lousy twist. He collapses, lungs burning under triple gravity, gasping for air as if the atmosphere just went on strike. Peering through the scarlet haze with a ghostly complexion, he dreads whatever monstrous entity approaches his spot. Digging into his coat with shaky fingers, he clutches the warpstone, figuring it is high time to vamoose. Out of nowhere, the gargantuan ebony talon rips the atmosphere apart, accompanied by a truly blood-curdling shriek. Darkness swallows everything alongside jagged crimson letters, leaving just one glaringly obvious fact in the void. Clenching his jaw with his amber eye burning from sheer nerves, Ihan realizes he is well and truly cooked. Muffling his gasps with trembling hands, he stays deathly quiet, terrified that even a whisper might betray him. He scuttles away into the shadows. Although clueless about the beast nearby, he maintains total silence to avoid becoming a midnight snack. Punched low with his spine exposed, he feels a petrifying ruby ore creeping closer to his vulnerable back. An enormous winged nightmare towers above him, looking like the final supervisor directly imported from deep Helheim. Focus zooms in on that pulsing crimson heart. Ihan looks like an absolute ant next to this monstrosity, gloomily pondering if his expiration date arrived. Realizing he is hopelessly outgunned, this startled gasp and ghostly features paint a portrait of pure panic. The system spills the tea, confirming Nightshade the boss has joined the fray, presenting a lethal level gap. Red flags fly as the system demands a rapid exit, though Ihan already anticipated the need for flight. He understands fighting is suicide, which is frankly standard procedure for these ridiculous dungeon encounters. Naturally, he has about as much chance of winning here as a snowball in a furnace. Screaming for his stash, he scrambles for the warpstone, eager to ditch this death trap immediately. The Titan lets out a roar and lunges, giving our hero Bailey a split second to yelp in alarm. Staring upward in dread, he watches the beast's colossal vermilion limb sweep down to snatch him up. His fingers finally snag that sapphire warpstone, leaving him just one tick away from a clean getaway. The colossal detonation of scarlet energy pulverizes the earth, resembling a dark martyr equivalent of a nuke. The devastation is total, with the very ground beneath him being shredded into worthless jagged confetti. System sirens blare warnings as his health drops to critical, leaving him bruised and leaking everywhere. Spitting blood while Bailey holding onto consciousness, he grumbles that he might actually be toast. Nightshade emerges from the murky smoke, projecting the aura of an invincible deity of pure annihilation. Only text N. Focusing on Yihan's crimson-splattered mug, he appears thoroughly walloped and utterly hopeless. Resting inside a dusty pit rimmed by sharp crimson surges, he is unable to wiggle a single pinky. The villainous palm ignites with mounting scarlet flames, priming a final strike that screams curtains. Ian shuts his peepers, resigned to his doom, knowing escape is essentially a pipe dream now. He simply braces for the eternal void to swallow his weary soul whole. Unexpectedly, he cracks one lid open, noticing a vibe that feels totally off. The nightshade hangs suspended in its arc, its ruby optics vacantly peering into nothingness. He grasps that the beast has ceased all action, as if reality hit the pause key during a game. A pale, slim foot touches a murky earth, followed by a voice dismissing the carnage as prohibited. A radiant, alabaster entity manifests, bathing the area in brilliance while dubbing Ihan a VIP guest. She is horningly gorgeous, sporting ivory lux plus horns and omniscient gazes, leaving part 4 shrouded. Ihan gapes in awe at the enigma, perplexed that she strolled into this spectral realm so casually. Glancing between the paralyzed freak and her, he questions if she saved him or simply swapped enemies. The horned lady flashes a sarcastic grin, wondering aloud why the supposed destroyer is this pathetic wreck. In a flash, she invades his personal space, tilting his chin with a claw for a classic power trip. She sizes him up like a budget infantry, scoffing that his mana levels won't impress the actual Aesir. With a sigh of genuine letdown, she questions why Loki picked such a puny shrimp for the main event. Gasping for Aya, Ihan wonders if bloodlust is finally causing his sanity to jump ship. As her sharp talons press into his jugula, he ponders if this is a final curtain call. Yet, spotting that smirk again, his internal alarm system decides to fight back against the gloom. That nagging inquiry bounces inside his skull while he lux gazes with those frigid, alien pupils. Could this be the final curtain? He wonders, as the thought looms over her face like bad news. No way, he bites down through the gore, realizing that dying now nukes his grand ambitions. Thinking of his pups and mage career dreams, he knows biting the dust ruins his rebooted life. He absolutely must grit his teeth, refusing to toss his second chance down the incinerator just yet. Survival is mandatory, and he is certainly not prepared to check out of this reincarnation adventure. She remarks that his gaze holds promise, clearly amused by the stubborn fire flickering in his eyes. Everything fades into a dark violet hue, while her booming tone settles like a heavy boulder. She cautions that he remains pathetically frail, noting that doom is arriving much sooner than anticipated. Increasing the pressure on his throat, she forces a pain wheeze from him as claws bite deeper. Only text N. This woman delivered a scary message, screw up this mission, and everybody's worst nightmare, a literal hellscape, makes an encore performance. Her eyes blazed crimson with truly frightening evil, and she casually mentioned murdering him personally if he failed. Failure was apparently a deal breaker for her. As violet smoke began coiling around them, Ihan was internally questioning who this crazy lady was, especially when she announced he was significant to them, which clarified absolutely nothing. Her lung, pale high floated as she dissolved into the swirling fog, offering him one single opportunity to prove himself before vanishing completely. Her instructions resonated in his head, demanding that he increase his power level substantially from his current, rather pathetic state. She directed her finger toward the gigantic, mobilized nightshade creature, specifically ordering him to vanquish the monster. She flashed a final, beautiful yet utterly unsettling grin, promising that if he succeeded, she would reward him with a very unique present. Ian found himself stranded, hemorrhaging and wheezing for breath, as her voice echoed the previous warning that his time was severely limited, and a new system alert popped up. Instantly, Crimson Quest windows dominated his view, announcing the arrival of the very first primary objective, titled Hell's Trial. The goddess's silhouette lingered within the violet mist, informing him he had precisely 8 weeks to somehow vanquish the Nightshade boss. The specifics: Hell's Trial, difficulty, ridiculous, reward, Hell's Gift, penalty, D8. Essentially, no pressure at all, we'll be fine. The gigantic maelstrom of shadow energy began revolving around Yihan, forcibly extracting him from the realm of Helheim. He was trapped right inside the violent violet tempest, expelling blood while being rapidly relocated to another location. Her last piece of advice resonated clearly. Remember this: if I return and find you haven't improved, I'll personally end your life. Chosen child of the Nornir. The title dissolved into the darkness as he departed the desolate realm of the deceased. The violet energy pulsed a final time as she mentioned she would offer prayers for his triumph in the upcoming conflict. In an instant, the environment changed to a brilliant gold illumination, where a completely new goddess, radiant like a supernova, popped in to offer a quick message. The radiant deity extended her arm towards him, but the communication was becoming impossibly vague, full of heavily censored, redacted lines. Ihan regained consciousness on the floor, momentarily unable to see due to a gentle white luminescence. He quickly understood he was precisely where he had started, outside the dungeon entrance, where the forest and the rock portal appeared exactly as he remembered them. He gazed about in utter confusion, realizing he was back in the mundane world, yet his expression suggested he had just encountered a terrifying specter. He leaned against the immense stone entrance, panting heavily, and discovered that the severe injuries he sustained were completely gone. He thoroughly inspected his neck where her talons had raked him, finding not even the slightest mark, and concluded that mysterious woman must have been something far beyond human. The objective display reappeared, reconfirming the deadline for Hell's Trial, showing precisely 59 days remaining in the 2-month window. He looked down at his own hands with shocked eyes, realizing with absolute certainty that this wasn't just a hallucination, but his terrifying new reality. A new information box materialized, defining H.E.L. as a goddess of death and queen of Helheim, confirming he had just made a bargain with the actual Norse Grim Reaper. Ian's mind was spinning from the experience, trying to calculate the odds that he had just interacted with an actual divine entity while processing the sheer lunacy of the entire episode. He recalled her referring to him as the individual destined to become the adversary, a title which reverberated endlessly through his thoughts. He pondered why Loki would select an ordinary individual like himself for this role, realizing he had significantly more inquiries than solutions available. The term adversary echoed again as the camera zoomed in on his striking orange gaze, signaling the dawning realization of the true scope of this cosmic joke he was now a part of. The text message arrived. From this very second, he was officially marked as the High Aesir's mortal enemy. He'd just been served with the cosmic equivalent of a restraining order. He distinctly remembered a similar alert flashing when he initially linked to the Nornir system. It seemed this marked man status was part of the welcome package. Ian sat on the grass, his mind racing through possibilities. He was baffled by both his temporal regression and the true meaning of this new villain title. He clenched his fist tightly, digging his fingernails deep into the soil. Even through the confusion, he decided, one fact remained perfectly clear. He looked up, a fierce determination replacing his confusion. He absolutely had to get exponentially stronger. If H.E.L.'s claims were accurate, he realized he had no other option but to keep moving forward at all costs. The chilling red silhouette of H.E.L. materialized in his mind's eye. He was certain that the very moment he stopped improving, she would completely erase him. Ian stood up and brushed the bits of grass from his clothing. Defeating the Nightshade in the next 2 months seemed daunting, but he appreciated having a clearly defined objective. He started working back toward the nearest settlement, acknowledging that his current fighting capabilities were a total disaster. He was trying to be brutally honest with his prospects. He admitted that the situation wasn't exactly favorable right now. The vast chasm between his inherent potential and his actual combat skill was immense. He recalled the long years he spent operating as a warrior. He felt entirely out of place fighting as a mage, and he still hadn't managed to learn even the most rudimentary, low-level spells yet. He pulled out his phone, reasoning that a strong foundation was the most crucial factor for advancing from here. It was time for a proper training montage. He began tapping on the screen, his gaze sharply focused. He was already planning his next strategy to acquire the necessary resources. His phone buzzed immediately. A message from Representative Park Sun-yi appeared. What ridiculously perfect timing. Sun-yi stated that the guildmaster wanted to meet him tomorrow to finalize his response to the contract offer. Ian smirked at the fantastic coincidence. He sent a reply, confirming he'd be there tomorrow and expressing optimism about the potential agreement. The close-up showed his satisfied smile. He finally held the upper hand in the situation. He added one final stipulation, but only if they could fulfill one additional request for him. This young man had clearly mastered the art of negotiation in a single day. Ian arrived at the enormous, modern headquarters of the Yonvor Guild. It was quite literally a skyscraper reaching toward the heavens. He strode past the guild's elegant floral logo emblazoned on the wall, working in as if he already owned the entire establishment. Sunny met him in the main lobby, and they proceeded to work together. Ian mused that the reason he had been contacted first was likely because the guild had reviewed his new awakened profile. He knew a 97% magic aptitude score acted as a powerful magnet for all the top guilds. He figured finding this level of raw talent would require searching across the globe. He truly wasn't boasting. He was simply stating an objective fact. He winced internally for a second, realizing that the reason he became a martial arts raider, despite not being suited for it, was his chronic indecision. He recalled how society back then had glorified martial arts to ridiculous extremes, while treating mages like absolute garbage. He was just trying to fit in. The older version of Ian rubbed his scalp as the memory surfaced. He acknowledged that at the time, his decision made perfect sense. He was finally letting go of that regret. Sunny pushed open the massive double doors leading into the guildmaster's private office. The room was immense and incredibly luxurious. The close-up showed Yihan's intense orange eyes. He was fully prepared to close the deal that would define his lifetime. Guildmaster Yu Sun-yoon sat waiting for them, looking utterly magnificent with her long brown hair flowing around her. She remarked that he had finally arrived. A sly grin played across her face as he announced she'd been expecting him, like he was overdue rent. The chapter concluded on this high-stakes meeting, with the next part just around the corner. Ian encountered Representative Park Sun-yi once more, this time in an absurdly luxurious foyer. Park stood casually with hands in his pockets, completely unimpressed by the guild's intimidatingly massive corporate fortress. They skipped the pleasantries, diving immediately into the contract details with Guildmaster Yu Sun-yoon. Ian flashed a subtle smirk, acknowledging the terms were surprisingly generous. The narrator spilled the tea on the offer's perks: generous living stipends, unrestricted B-rank gear with 0 replacement costs, and a ridiculously favorable 80/20 profit share. This wasn't merely a business agreement, it was a VIP pass to Easy Street. Ian recognized these specific provisions were typically reserved for S-tier heroes. The guild's eagerness to sign him was practically vibrating in the air. Despite the alluring offer, Ian held back on signing immediately. He locked eyes with Park Sun-yi and declared he had one more prerequisite. Guildmaster Yu Sun-yoon leaned back with a composed smile, inviting him to state his terms. She was clearly keeping her cards close to her chest. The camera zoomed in on her face, revealing complete confidence and readiness for anything he might request. Ian figured she had probably memorized his entire resume already. Ian highlighted the fact that he'd only recently transitioned from a martial artist to a magic wielder, a major career change. He was upfront about his lack of experience. He confessed he was essentially a novice when it came to real spellcasting. Park Sun-yi listened intently, maintaining his scarred, motionless expression. Park Sun-yi's eyebrows rose slightly as Ian kept talking. The tension in the atmosphere was palpable as Ian readied himself to reveal his surprising demand. Ian dramatically placed a hand on his heart and unveiled his request. He wanted the guildmaster herself to be his personal magic tutor. It was an audacious ask from a low-level raider. Yu Sun-yoon tilted her head slightly, clearly amused and completely taken aback. That particular request was not on her bingo card. The narrator chimed in with Raider survival rule number 1. Deploy your most valuable asset only when its impact will be maximized. The close-up highlighted Yihan's luminous orange eyes. He understood precisely the high-stakes gamble he was making with this demand. Inside his head, Park Sun-yi was having a full-scale meltdown. He already thought Yihan was audacious, but this move took things to an entirely different dimension. The narrator clarified that Yu Sun-yoon wasn't just some middle manager. She was a world-class S-rank raider. She was basically the deity of the monster-slaying world. Possessing the sheer nerve to request one-on-one lessons from a living legend meant this young man was either completely brilliant or clinically nuts. Yihan added a bonus. Agreeing meant he would sign the priority negotiation contract with the Lotus Guild immediately. She found this entire exchange highly intriguing. With a bright, authentic smile, she agreed to his proposal, stating she would accept his request. He had successfully lured her in. She confessed she had already been quite curious about him anyway, admiring his spirit and determination. Eun let out a smug grin. He had just successfully recruited the single greatest instructor available anywhere in the world. But then she paused dramatically. Of course, when dealing with an S rank, there's always a catch, like fine print in a contract. Eun's smile vanished, replaced by a neutral expression. He knew the shoe was about to drop. She wanted to assess his abilities firsthand. She looked at him with a mischievous sparkle in her eyes. She needed concrete evidence to confirm her gut feeling about his potential was accurate. In the background, Park Sun-hee was visibly sweating, anticipating that his boss was about to pull off something incredibly dramatic. Eun requested details on the next step, indicating he was prepared for any challenge she might have cooked up. She snapped her fingers decisively, her confident grin widening. It was showtime. The gigantic, swirling vortex of brilliant blue energy began manifesting in the center of the room. This was clearly not amateur hour magic. Radiant energy twists into a massive vortex, which she playfully dubs a manicube. She stands before the tempest like royalty, ready to put our lad through his paces. The manicube is a chaotic azure mess, as she coolly demands he withstand the surge. Eun looks gobsmacked while murmuring the name, as he recalls those terrifying legends. Brenning, she claims it is a flawless trial, assuming real talent handles pressure easily. Narrators note manicubes usually test beer anchors, so using one here is like jutting a toddler on a supersonic treadmill. Since under 7% of mages survive this, Eun ponders if his Marner pool holds up. He glares back, sensing she is just trying to bull him into cracking under pressure. She giggles, offering a safety net despite his pride, promising the contract terms remain firm. Eun breaks into a cold sweat, realizing retreating is no longer an available life choice. He grinds his teeth with protagonist energy, deciding that failing forward is still progress today. Sunny asks if this is wise, but she just flashes a smile and orders preparation. Sunny frets because even elite raiders struggle here, fearing she is overworking the poor kid. Eun faces the azure swirling abyss, looking like he's about to skydive into a cyclone. She checks if Sunny sees a normal boy, convinced this gamble will pay off handsomely. Sunny nods with his eyes shut, deciding to trust her instinct despite his inner panic. He jabs a virtual interface to unleash the full capacity of the glowing cube. The Marner device erupts in a blinding sapphire glare, leaving Eun wide-eyed and stunned. He swallows hard, noting that actual magical intensity puts every textbook description to total shame. With a confident smirk, she signals the test launch and awaits a spectacular outcome. Eun edges forward until he's standing right at the swirling threshold of doom. He inhales deeply, shutting his eyes to gather focus because he needs every spare spark. As he leans forward, his physical form begins dissolving into that strange, pumming blue mist. The vortex drags him into its center, where the raw energy feels completely unhinged tonight. Sunny and Sunjun scan the rotating portal anxiously, punning for hints of a hard struggle. Sunny confesses he is still stressed for the boy, lacking his boss's reckless optimism. Sunjun remains rock solid, insisting he will succeed because her faith is absolute now. Sunny inquires about her sudden certainty, clearly wanting more than a flimsy gut feeling. She taps her temple with a sly smirk, citing her elite intuition as the answer. Dibbling with anticipation, she senses a major shift is about to rock the foundation. Only text N. With a sweeping gesture, she indicated the enigmatic cube. Within that peculiar box, Eun found himself buoyant amidst an immense, glittering indigo sea of raw energy, resembling a bewildered tourist lost inside a cosmic cloud formation. He floated aimlessly through the vast azure emptiness, a quietude so eerie it suggested he'd somehow ended up in space without his personal tour guide. An immense wave of relief washed over him upon discovering his lungs still functioned, as Marner's saturation posed a genuine peril in intensely concentrated zones, prompting only careful, shallow inhalations. Our perceptive narrator pointed out that Marner generally serves as essential lifeblood for raiders, a wholly non-negotiable, fundamental necessity. Yet, an excess of this power could swiftly halt lung function, proving lethal, so Eun found himself placed on an urgent, Kuzik deadline. He understood that any dalliance in this lookout guaranteed a fatal outcome. The ominous manifestations hadn't registered within his system yet, but he was certain their unwelcome arrival was imminent. His paramount objective immediately became locating the elusive escape route, recalling that a Marner cube, much like a cleverly designed puzzle box, invariably offers just one singular egress. He meticulously scanned the chaotic, swirling energies, knowing he absolutely must pinpoint that unique, solitary vortex, the sole portal promising a return ticket to mundane existence. He sealed his eyes, concentrating deeply, hoping to perceive the Marner's precise wavelength, akin to tuning a cosmic radio for a ghost station. He was completely engulfed by frantic, swirling tapestry of azure energy, an experience comparable to desperately searching for a clear broadcast amidst an entire galaxy of white noise. Drifting through the vibrant pink and azure nebula clouds, he was now hyper-focused, like a Kuzik detective on a critical case. Suddenly, an unsettling anomaly registered in his senses. A particular spot within the field was distinctly pulsing, breaking the usual Kuzik rhythm. He swiveled his head towards an incandescent purple aura, hitting an internal jackpot. He discovered the central core. He vigorously stroked towards the whirlpool's heart, sensing the sheer, unbridled power radiating from it was extraordinarily intense. Within the storm's churning heart, he pinpointed a dazzling, self-illuminated object, then comically pondered if it truly was a crystal. This exquisite, lacrimal-shaped gem was emitting an utterly blinding luminescence, unequivocally revealing itself as a singular origin point for all phenomena within the specific chamber. Eun found himself utterly spellbound, completely captivated. The raw magical energy gushing forth from this minuscule artifact was undeniably, spectacularly overwhelming. He perceived, with an almost unbelievable clarity, that the immense, swirling sea of Marner encompassing him somehow condensed itself entirely within that singular, glowing crystal. Meanwhile, Sunny remained stubbornly doubtful, but Sunjun simply retorted with a confident, resounding affirmation. Obviously. Sunny's gaze sharpened considerably, as he privately suspected her excessive optimism concerning a mere middle schooler was probably setting everyone up for a grand disappointment. Sunjun, Though, mentally reviewed Yihan's surprisingly adept early skills, concluding he had already proven he was no ordinary child. Sun Yi, Eva the pragmatist, inquired about the boy's anticipated duration, expressly desiring a hard, verifiable figure rather than a vague guess. She nonchalantly stated her personal best was a mere 40 minutes, the blazing fest achievement which, at the time, represented the quickest completion in the entire nation. Sun Yi opted for a quiet, contemplative wait, the silent demeanor likely betraying his firm belief that Yihan would require considerably more time than her impressive benchmark. He predicted one of two things would happen, mentally preparing himself for what he assumed would be the most terrible result. Sun Yihan's lun brown hair flowed gracefully as she utterly fixated on the cube, her concentration as sharp as a freshly sharpened pencil. Sun Yi then gravely predicted one scenario, that the boy simply wouldn't manage to escape. Eva, well, against all odds, Team Mike shattered the old record, just as the cube's shimmering blue energy began to visibly ripple and stir. Sun Han agreed, though her own intellectual input seemed temporarily paused. Oh dear, will likely be dragged out of there on a stretcher. Sun Yi offered a small nod, yet his anxiety remained palpable. Abruptly, she sucked in a sharp breath as a clear indication of failure appeared. She frantically aimed her finger at the strange cube, practically shouting for Sun Yi to look closely. Sun Yi snapped his head toward the object, his gaze widening in genuine alarm. He stood completely mesmerized, having never once witnessed anything remotely similar in all his years. Enormous white fractures began to spread like a chaotic web across the surface of the energy containment field. The cracks expanded like shattered crystal, illuminating with an intense, or energy, indicating the cube was truly falling apart. Sun Yi felt oddly baffled, questioning how such fissures could possibly form within the seemingly impenetrable martyr cube. This shouldn't even be possible. Both observers watched in stunned disbelief as the entire structure began to implode under its own internal pressure. Sun Yi gripped his data tablet tightly, his focus absolutely locked on the alarming event. He glanced at his wrist, noting only 10 minutes had passed, leaving him feeling completely disoriented. In only 10 minutes, he whispered in utter disbelief, barely audible above the noise. He choked on his breath as bolts of vibrant blue lightning started arcing across every surface. This wasn't just a new record, it was a total system meltdown. Inside the martyr cube, Yihan was more than just surviving. He was taking complete command. He stood calmly at the center of a swirling purple cyclone, assessing his escape options from this high-pressure magical trap. He spotted a pulsing light deep within the eye of the storm. The martyr from this specific crystal was significantly denser than anything else in the vicinity, confirming it must be the core holding the simulation together. Yihan cracked a knowing grin, realizing he didn't have to follow the rules of the test. He figured he could simply break the core to exit. Who needs to find the door when you can just demolish the entire room? He launched himself headlong into the chaotic, spiraling currents of magical energy. Most adventurers would be instantly crushed by the overwhelming force, but this guy moved with unwavering resolve. He clenched his fist tightly, pulling his arm back to deliver a devastating punch. He wasn't treating this as an exam anymore, he was treating it like an execution. He grabbed the glowing crystal, and immediately a web of cracks spread across its surface under his formidable grip. The structural core was genuinely disintegrating. With a deafening, thunderous impact, the crystal exploded into countless fragments. He hadn't just passed the test, he had physically destroyed it. Yun stood tall and composed as the martyr cube dissolved into shimmering particles of light. He looked utterly unfazed, as though he had simply finished a light cardio session. The system notification chimed, announcing he had successfully acquired the passive skill essence of martyr application. Talk about a massive power upgrade. On the outside, the energy containment field erupted in a powerful, violent blast. The sound of cosmic glass shattering reverberated through the entire chamber. Sun Yi and Sun Yun were left standing in a room choked with smoke and falling debris. They looked like they had just witnessed a complete glitch in the matrix. Sun Yi was sweating profusely, his jaw hanging open in disbelief, whispering to himself that he'd seen enough to know this kid was a genuine monster. The narrator interjected to mention that under normal circumstances, only 7% of magicians could ever break out of this trial, usually requiring over 3 hours of agonizing effort. The A-rank adventurers typically required 2 hours, while A-ranks generally completed the challenge in 90 minutes. Ihun, in comparison, was just standing around scratching his head like he was completely bored. Even legendary S-ranks usually needed anywhere from 30 minutes to a full hour to complete the task. The sheer scope of what had just happened was beginning to truly register. Sun Yi was trembling as he checked his timepiece again. He then recalled the previous world record holder, someone from the European conglomerate. The record belonged to Camilla, a veritable genius magician who earned a spot in the Guinness Book of Records with a time of 36 minutes. That benchmark was considered the ultimate standard, until this very day. Ihun simply ambled out of the facility as if he were leaving a local grocery store. He didn't just break the previous record, he utterly obliterated it. Sun Yi was performing quick calculations, and his brain was instantly turning to mush. Ihun had somehow managed to beat the world record by an unbelievable 26 minutes. Ihun proceeded through the smoky haze, looking completely unbothered by the dramatic scene. He had absolutely no idea he had just become a globally recognized prodigy. Sun Yi lunged forward and grabbed Ihun's hands, resembling an unhinged superfine. He screamed hysterically that this feat was incredible, having escaped in just 10 minutes. Till Mr. Sun Yun advanced slowly, her lengthy hair swaying gracefully as he approached the group. The entire atmosphere in the room changed instantly. She fixed him with a piercing gaze, her expression perfectly impassive. She asked precisely how he was able to escape from the infamous manhwa in such a short time frame. Ihan merely offered a casual shrug, stating that he found some kind of shiny crystal inside the cube and simply crushed it. He acted as if this were just routine, no big deal at all. Soonjun was absolutely floored by this revelation. She shrieked, "What, you crushed it?" completely losing her composure for the first time in front of everyone. She quickly explained that the crystal served as the source for all the ambient mana. An average awakened individual couldn't even manage to locate it, let alone possess the strength to destroy it. She stared at him intently, realizing the young man before her was a once-in-a-century anomaly. He wasn't simply talented, she thought, he was potentially hazardous. The truth became undeniably obvious. The sheer amount of mana Yihan possessed completely exceeded the power contained within the cube itself. The trap was literally too small for him. She seized his hands, her eyes burning with a new kind of focused resolve. She had clearly finalized her plans regarding Yihan. She stood tall and majestic, looking like an actual goddess among the raider population. She was preparing to gamble absolutely everything she owned on this one young man. She began by officially offering the entirety of the Yonhua guild and her personal reputation, Yosengyun, as collateral. Yihan stood transfixed, listening to the terms of her proposal. She extended a hand toward him, her cape billowing dramatically in a sudden gust of wind. She vowed to make him the single most powerful magician in existence, which sounded suspiciously like a contract to achieve divinity. She offered him a beautiful yet calculating smile and questioned if he was prepared for the commitment. The epic saga of the great adversary officially commenced at this very moment. The scene abruptly shifted back to everyday life. Yihan's mother and Yujin were waiting outside the house for his arrival. The atmosphere here was drastically less intense and chaotic. Yujin glanced at her phone with an expression of pure irritation. She muttered that he hadn't shown up yet and was surprisingly behind schedule today. While his mother looked genuinely concerned, Yujin was simply preparing for a confrontation. All at once, an enormous, jet-black Rolls-Royce glided silently to the curb, emitting a gentle mechanical purr. It was certainly a dramatic way to make an entrance. Both women were completely frozen in place. They simply stood, wide-eyed, borking at what was undoubtedly the priciest vehicle they had ever encountered in real life. The luxury vehicle achieved a perfect, almost silent hull. The gleaming tires alone appeared to be worth more than a full year of local housing costs. Sunny emerged from the front seat, promptly opening the back door for Yihan as if he were true royalty. The local gossip circuit would definitely have material for weeks from this spectacle. Yujin's mouth dropped open in complete disbelief. She frantically questioned whether that truly was a hyper-expensive vehicle and why Yihan would possibly be exiting it. Her sanity was beginning to unravel. Yihan casually offered a wave goodbye, remarking that he would see him later. He already carried himself with the ease of someone totally accustomed to this high-class lifestyle. His mother looked completely baffled, yet relieved to have him home safely. Yujin remained deeply skeptical, convinced there was simply no way Yihan hadn't gotten involved in some type of illicit activity. Later that evening, Yujin was planted firmly in Yihan's room, her arms tightly folded across her chest. She had clearly activated full interrogation protocol. She simply stated as, "Oh," gazing at him intently as if preparing to read him his Miranda rights. She demanded the full, unvarnished truth immediately. Yihan remained completely relaxed at his desk, maintaining an aura of total normalcy. He casually informed her that being a warrior didn't really seem like his style, and he had already filed the paperwork to officially change careers. He leaned back in his chair and sighed, explaining that the warrior path would be far too tedious these days. He was definitely exuding that strong sense of being there, done that from his former life's experiences. Yujin stared at him as if he had suddenly grown a second head, demanding to know if he had eaten something rotten or completely lost his mind. She absolutely wasn't falling for his nonchalant performance. Yihan lets out a soft snicker, then announces, with a wink, that a person's thoughts are as flimsy as a bendy straw, shifting with every breeze. Yujin, meanwhile, is positively seething over his riddles. She turns serious, a frown creasing her brow, and inquires if he's truly going to be okay, reminding him he only chose the warrior's path to keep his mother from financial woes. She highlights that in these current times, being a magician is a dead-end job that barely pays the bills, and she's worried he's tossing his future right out the window. A quick trip down memory lane to the era when warriors were all the rage, with mages viewed as weaklings who couldn't land decent gigs. The close-up reveals Yihan's piercing orange gaze. He's got a secret plan brewing that's far beyond her current comprehension. He abruptly cuts off the discussion, firmly stating he doesn't want to revisit old wounds, so they should just drop it. To steer the conversation elsewhere, he asks why she's popped by again and where her folks are, clearly trying to deflect from his hidden agenda. Yujin plops down on his bed and declares, with a casual shrug, that her Annie suggested she just crushed it for the night, making herself right at home. Yihan looks utterly baffled, questioning her decision to visit his humble abode when she's got a mansion back home, unable to fathom her reasoning. Our trusting narrator chimes in to reveal that Yujin hails from an incredibly wealthy family, practically living a life of pure luxury. Her parents are globe-trotting adventurers, making a killing by dismantling and selling off monster remains, essentially international monster part dealers. Since her parents are perpetually out of town, Yujin is often left to her own devices, or out a solitary existence despite the overflowing bank account. Because his mother and Yujin's parents are such good pals, she's practically a permanent fixture at the place, like an adopted sibling. Yihan seizes the opportunity of her presence, pleading with her to give him a crash course in magic theory. Knowing she's a stellar student, she responds with a dismissive scoff, asking if he expects her to spill her brains for mere words, hinting that a bribe might be in order. She inquires what he's offering, making it clear her specialized knowledge doesn't come cheap. She puts a finger to her chin, deep in thought, strategizing what valuable trinket she can extort from him in this transaction. She briefly turns away, a sly idea dancing in her eyes, while Yihan patiently awaits her grand proposal. With a wide, wicked grin, she spins back around and demands he grant her one solitary wish, clearly plotting some mischief. Judging by her overly gleeful expression, whatever she's cooking up is probably diabolical. Yihan would be wise to tread carefully. Yihan agrees to her terms but throws in his own stipulation. The wish expires in a year, voiding her claim if unused. Yujin protests the unfair condition but ultimately concedes, her wish now securely on ice. Yihan flashes a smug grin, confident she'll have forgotten all about it by the time the year is up, a potentially grave miscalculation. Yujin suddenly leaps to her feet, her face a mask of fury, remembering his abrupt departure during the speech and demanding to know if he's courting death. She charges at him with a fluffy weapon, shrieking that today he'll face his demise, ready for battle. She's laying into him with full force, the pillow-wielding whirlwind, while Yihan desperately tries to shield himself, shouting for her to cease her onslaught. It's a chaotic pillow fight showdown, them acting like overgrown children for a change. Their mother's voice from downstairs announces dinner is served, providing a timely rescue from the fray. Eva, the picture of domestic bliss, remains blissfully unaware of the epic pillow war that just transpired upstairs. Eugen, still panting and disheveled, glares at him, her battle not yet concluded. She glared at the entrance, still absolutely boiling with rage. That single wish he made was definitely going to come back and haunt his future. Ihan leaned casually against the wall, a slight, contented smile playing on his lips. This peaceful existence was exactly what he had put everything on the line to achieve. He continued to think, deciding that this new reality wasn't half bad after all. He was finally locating some much-needed serenity within this timeline. The setting sun cast a beautiful glow over the urban landscape, creating a calm, misleadingly peaceful moment before the inevitable chaos struck. Suddenly, the entire atmosphere shifted dramatically. Crows descended in a great swarm upon a dark, foreboding forest, signaling that something terrible was about to unfold. A sharp blade plunged through a monstrous creature's skull, splattering gore across the surrounding area. Clearly, someone nearby was on a very aggressive spree. It was Minsung, Ian's father, standing amidst a gruesome pile of feathers and blood, looking incredibly dangerous and deadly. The forest floor was littered with the bodies of dead monsters, and he stood triumphantly over a giant, sea snake. He wasn't just a raider. He was a pure butcher. Someone called his name from the side, and Minsung turned back with a cold, completely hollow expression. A fellow in heavy red armor praised him, noting that the raid was simple thanks to his efforts, but Jonho simply met his compliments with an icy stare. He offered a very terse, frigid acknowledgement for the words. It was abundantly clear he hadn't come here to make new friends or socialize. He expertly cleaned the blood from his massive sword in a fluid, single motion. The man was operating like a perfectly calibrated machine. The scarlet-armored individual started his sales pitch, claiming that someone with Sano's skills would be an incredible asset to the guild, effectively attempting to poach him on the spot. Sano immediately shut down the proposition, offering a swift apology while insisting he had no intentions of joining any guild in the near future. He was as welcoming as an Arctic gale. The recruiter then got pushy, grabbing Jonho's shoulder and telling him to loosen up and reconsider his offer. This was a spectacularly poor judgment call. Sano glanced back over his shoulder, his eyes now blazing with a terrifying red light. He began to radiate an overwhelming aura of pure murderous intent. The guy somehow kept talking about his Scarlet Guild and its various privileges. He genuinely had no survival instincts whatsoever. Sano smirked, the dark, twisted look contorting his features. Annoying, he thought, deciding he was completely finished with the light conversation. The Red Raider finally felt the pressure, letting out a confused, high-pitched what, and now appearing genuinely terrified of the change in atmosphere. Sano was suddenly enveloped by a thick, malevolent purple aura. He looked less like a human and more like a literal demon wearing borrowed skin. He held a pulsating orb of glowing purple energy in his hand. Whatever this strange power source was, it definitely wasn't normal human magic. He internally mused on how humans were inherently filthy and slovenly. He looked upon them with complete contempt, observing their vulgar, base-level greed. He concluded that this kind of behavior was precisely what one should expect from humans. The thoughts were dark and heavy, solidifying his status as definitely not one of the hearers. The close-up shot revealed his eyes were empty, cold, and entirely devoid of any humanity. But then, a subtle flicker suggested he might be struggling with something internally. He stood isolated in the blood-red sunset, surrounded by the horrific carnage he had personally created. He wondered if perhaps humans weren't the only ones capable of such darkness. He abruptly snapped out of his trance, looking disoriented and wondering exactly what he was doing here again, almost as if he had been momentarily possessed. Chapter 11 ended on this terrifying note, so stay tuned. Before the very first lesson officially commences, the guild master wants to evaluate Yihan's actual capabilities. In simpler terms, she plans to test his combat reflexes and instincts right away. And by evaluate, he actually meant a full-blown sparring match. Yihan stood there looking slightly caught off guard, but he certainly wasn't going to back down. Yihan let out a small laugh, questioning whether starting with a fight wasn't a little extreme. He tried to play it cool, but everyone knew he was feeling the immense pressure. She just smiled and cleverly used his own logic against him. She suggested that a kid who broke out of a high-security manicube in only 10 minutes had no business complaining about difficult starts. She casually prepares herself and waves him forward, daring him to make the first move. She acts like this whole confrontation is merely a minor inconvenience. Yihan's gaze tightens as the pieces click into place. He understands this entire scenario was orchestrated from the start, a meticulously calculated setup where she even dressed for the occasion just to prep him for this exact instance. Yihan inhales sharply, allowing the magical energy to churn around his body. The shift from novice trainee to serious fighter happens almost instantaneously. Observe that posture. He assumes a low, concentrated pose, fixing his eyes intently on his foe. He certainly doesn't look like a beginner magician. The guild leader meticulously examines him, analyzing every aspect of his body language. She's specifically seeking the lingering battle instincts from his former profession. He steps forward with his left foot, rooting himself solidly on the floor. It's a position designed entirely for stability and sudden bursts of power. He lowers himself slightly, gathering tension in his legs like a tightly wound spring. He appears primed to react instantly, either attacking or evading in a split second. He drops his shoulders to stabilize his core. The pose suggests he's gearing up for a back alley brawl rather than a sophisticated wizard's confrontation. This is a quintessential warrior setup, designed for quick evasion and agility. He might identify as a sorcerer today, but his physical instincts remain loyal to the blade. He takes off, accelerating rapidly as his hand begins to radiate power. She simply observes his approach with that identical serene expression. She's witnessed this exact scenario countless times. Yihan delivers a powerful strike, producing an intense burst of light upon contact. It appears to land perfectly, yet hold on a second. She intercepted it. She captured his fist without a hint of effort, her fingers closing around his hand with bone-crushing force. That's what you call a serious discrepancy in strength. Yihan's expression tells the entire story. Sweat beads on his brow, his eyes wide in absolute astonishment. He believed himself to be quick, but she operates on a different plane of existence entirely. She offers a faint smirk, clearly amused by his look of surprise. He actually imagined he stood a fighting chance, didn't he? With a mere twitch of her digits, she unleashes a concentrated burst of power. It's comparable to casually flicking away an annoying insect. Ihan goes flying backward, propelled by a powerful blast. He slides across the ground as though he were a limp, discarded doll. He collapses onto one knee, struggling desperately for breath. He genuinely believed he could manage a single strike, but now understands that an S-rank combatant, even a support healer, possesses this level of overwhelming strength. She advances toward him, her footwork clicking menacingly on the polished floor. She then informs him they are now on a more personal level, announcing she will simply refer to him as Ihan from this point forward. She regards him from above, her features combining curiosity and analysis, inquiring if his original class was indeed a warrior. He agrees, confirming her suspicion. She identifies the blatant error, noting he continues to sprint ahead as if clutching a blade. She then questions the logic of a spellcaster initiating combat by leaping forward in such a manner. She poses the foundational query, requesting his opinion on the primary distinction between a close combat fighter and a magic user. Ihan raises his gaze, providing the accurate response. The key difference lies in whether one engages their adversary from a distance or up close. She nods in approval, pleased that he at least understands the concepts. The challenge now is translating that knowledge into actual execution. She clarifies that sorcerers typically wear down their foes from a safe distance before delivering the finishing strike. Their role isn't to engage in close-quarter slugfists. Should he continue to charge into melee range, his inadequate defenses will quickly spell disaster. She confesses he's been taking it too easy. To ensure he truly absorbs the lessons, she must ramp up the difficulty significantly. She resolves to approach the situation with greater seriousness. When an elite S-ranker makes that statement, you generally understand it's time to prepare for the end. She announces he must observe the tactics of her genuine spellcaster. Ihan, however, already appears eager for a rematch. Azure energy begins building around her as she prepares for her assault. She states she will launch an offensive, cautioning that while it won't cause permanent damage, she certainly won't be holding back. She grins, noting her healing skills mean she can just sew him back together if she accidentally mangles him, which is totally reassuring. Ihan is grinding his molars, clearly frazzled by the intense magical pressure radiating from her like a heat lamp. She senses he is holding back, nudging him to drop the act because she knows his current display is barely scratching the surface. She demands he quit holding back, since being nice is boring and she really wants to see his full arsenal in action. With mana snapping and blue crystals drifting around him, Ihan finally shifts his gears into serious combat mode. A relentless volley of magical projectiles rockets through the air, aimed with deadly precision directly at his chest. Sliding across the dusty floor like an action star, he narrowly avoids the beams, relying on his peak reflexes to survive. Turning into a human pretzel in midair, he yells that the tables are turning while he prepares a stinging rebuttal. Golden sparks of lightning dance along his skin, signaling that he is finally bringing out the heavy artillery. The system pings that his lightning chain skill is live, proving he is picking up lethal tricks with ridiculous speed. He lets the attack fly, sending a blinding golden streak of pure voltage hurtling toward the unsuspecting guild master. The thunderous discharge strikes right where she stood, leaving the floor looking like a charcoal grill after the cookout. She feels a genuine spark of respect for him, especially since he pulled off an A-rank lightning chain. Observing that he has a treasure trove of hidden talents, she admits that this combat lesson is becoming quite entertaining. Yet she prepares a swift rebuttal, summoning a swirling azure sigil of magic directly into her open palm. A high-velocity energy beam whizzes past his ear, leaving his hearing ringing and reminding him how close he came to losing it. Ihan is dripping with sweat, eyes bulging while he tries to track her blurred movements, thinking damn, that speed is illegal. A giant shockwave of freezing liquid slams into the dirt nearby, obscuring everything in a thick, chilly fog. She scolds him between his gasps, pointing out that even the flashiest moves are worthless if they never connect, which is technically true. As the misty haze dissipates, Ihan is still standing there, though he looks like he lost a fight with a lawnmower. Panting with his clothes shredded and soot-stained, he stares at his sorry state and wonders if he has finally tapped out. She is genuinely stunned, having dampened her spell to be gentle yet shocked to see him still stubbornly upright. Preparing another barrage amidst a forest of glowing patterns, she asks if he can handle another round of this intensity. Ihan leans forward, bent shielding his gaze while he wheezes like a broken bellows on the edge of collapsing. Suddenly his eyes ignite with a golden flicker and a piercing hum vibrates through the room, pinning at something massive. An ocean of blue mana explodes outward from his core, pushing his magical threshold to the absolute brink of sanity. System alerts confirm universal derivation is active, and he instantly shreds her holy arrow spell into harmless glittering dust. The guild leader stands frozen in disbelief, staring at the shattered remains of her magic like it is a magic trick gone wrong. She muses if he actually deciphered her spell's blueprint mid-flight, which suggests his brain is basically a high-speed supercomputer. A wide smile returns to her face, clearly obsessed with his potential, while she wonders what other aces he is hiding up his sleeve. Only text N. Ihan offers a cheeky, exhausted grin while drenched in perspiration, claiming ignorance as his ego visibly inflates. He launches a final, desperate crackle of thunder, proving he packs quite a punch even lacking his weapon. She remains serene, her gaze tracking the surging currents of electricity with utter indifference. With a casual wave of her hand, she swats the spark away, leaving him looking like a slow turtle. She acknowledges his speed while nursing a slight tingle, secretly admiring the raw intensity of his latent talent. It is baffling that a mere novice possesses such strength. He is essentially a boulder hiding a gem. Typically, mages are shackled to the tradition of chanting every single word before unleashing their magical potential. Naturally, top-tier casters occasionally bypass this, dialing down the spell power to avoid an unnecessary magical overload. Yet, this boy is essentially still crawling in the vast garden of magical arts. She ponders how in the world he managed to bypass the verbal requirements of spellcasting entirely. Ihan shakes like a leaf, dripping with sweat and drained of mana, viewing her as an absolute beast. She offers a gentle grin while her luck stands in the mana-infused Aya, noting his unpredictable nature. Ian struggles to keep his eyelids open, watching her through a foggy and utterly shattered mental state. Everything begins to swirl around him as he hits his literal wall of physical and mental endurance. He makes a bewildered noise as she towers above, teasing his youth before his vision turns into darkness. She poses triumphantly above his brown body, resembling a conqueror who just finished a very light workout. Ian crashes onto the floor with a conical thud, completely incapacitated and out of the game. He glares at the rafters, dazed and confused, while his brain desperately tries to reboot after the threshing. She drapes over him, teasingly asking if he truly expected a win, officially welcoming him to the major leagues. Guildmaster Sunhan stands poised, whereas Ian gasps for Aya, feeling the painful burn of his intense training. Sprawled out, Ian stares blankly upward, obsessing over the sheer speed of the final, devastating blow. Watching the replay, he realizes he was airborne before his brain even processed that he had been hit. He stands, eyes glowing with grit, finally grasping the immense gulf between regular raiders and S-rank monsters. Sunhan keeps a watchful eye, her face a mask of focus as she mentally maps out their future. A montage displays his chaotic hybrid style, blending warrior instincts with rapid sorcery in a bizarrely effective dance. Zooming into her eyes, she muses that if anyone could achieve the impossible, this chaotic brat is the one. She mentions having an epiphany during this spar, leaving Ian curious about her professional take on his mess. With a sly smirk, she describes a legendary fighting style that nobody has ever managed to perfect until now. Leaning in, she probes his interest, watching as Ian suddenly sees his entire reality completely shift gears. The personalized combat method meant just for him, the gravity of her claim finally hitting his dense skull. Only text N. With a mischievous smirk, she declares that her title is now teacher, officially sealing the deal. Sunhan beams with pride over her rookie, though she clearly has more chatter left in her. Congrats on joining the team, kid, because you just snagged a legendary mentor right out the gate. Time jump to Ian zoning out at his workstation, until a familiar voice breaks his trance. He jerks awake with a weird noise, clearly annoyed that someone dared to disturb his intense brooding. It is Yujun, stuffing her face and glowering at him while shouting his name across the room. Unimpressed, Ian tells her to swallow her lunch before scrapping, channeling peak sibling rivalry vibes. He eyes the ramen, regretting the expensive bribe he paid for her magical tutoring services today. After she downs her fourth bowl, Ian asks in pure disbelief if she ever actually gets full. Wiping her chops, she claims to be satisfied yet eager to dive back into the textbooks. Ian is sketching spell types like buffs and healing in his notebook, actually acting like a scholar. Yujin highlights the core principles, and Ian realizes he is surprisingly gifted at sketching diagrams. A system alert chimes, showing his magic stats spiking because learning from a pro really works. Ian wonders if he is hallucinating, as the system seems to be handing out power-ups freely. He notes that the Norny system notifies him of every minor win, acting like a needy fine. It feels like the interface is his personal cheerleader, aggressively pushing him to level up fast. Yujin asks if he is really the warrior wannabe from before, since his magical progression is frightening. He mentions memorizing the formulas in 3 days, and she looks ready to weaponize her noodles. She insists on being called teacher, and Ian sighs, agreeing to the annoying title with zero enthusiasm. She begins a petty rant about her years of study, and her jealousy is genuinely funny. Waving her arms, she complains about his speed, accusing him of being a literal magic speedrunner. Ian ignores the noise, claiming magic fits his high aptitude better than swinging a sharp blade. His mind wanders to a hellish vision, reminding him that his life is on the line here. Sipping her broth, Yujin softens her tone, admitting she kept some things quiet for a while. She confesses his old warrior face shocked her, as he was clearly wasting those elite stats. Mages are notoriously broke these days, so she thought his choice to avoid magic was insane. Leaning in, she demands to know why he squandered such potential on a dull sword career. Ian looks away coldly, reminding her that she knows exactly how poorly society treats magicians lately. He grows summer discussing public prejudice, and his orange eyes reflect a deep, painful memory. Suddenly he recalls a dark dungeon where he was shackled and read, feeling utterly defeated and broken. Only text N. A shadowy figure draped in crimson magic emerges, leaving Ian to ponder if this destiny was truly his own picking. Amidst a wave of scarlet horror, the figure looms while Ian wonders if his current life is just another shekel. Brushing away those haunting echoes, he questions his free will, feeling the seeds of doubt sprouting quite rapidly. Yujin pulls his focus back, mockingly asking if he is rehearsing spells, displaying the keen perception of a hork. Ian confesses to studying under someone else, though his nonchalant attitude clearly grinds Yujin's gears. He hastily fixes his address, yet inside, his nerves are frayed by those abrupt visions leaving him utterly perplexed. A spectral glimpse of the underworld manifests, making Ian question his sanity or if he actually heard a voice. Focusing on his gaze, he shakes off the haze, knowing he lacks the luxury to indulge in a midday crisis. Pell's countdown looms large, leaving him a measly 2 months to crush the nightshade before time runs dry. Squeezing his lids shut, he insists on centering his brain, craving the robotic efficiency of a true overachiever. He taps his utensil against his cheek, scheming to concoct a strategy far more fruitful than his current nuisance. A certain gentleman lounging on the sofa comes to mind, the very keeper of a rather significant treasure. That fellow keeps yapping about a miraculous pill that would change everything, and Ian is ready to swipe it. He is dead set on securing that elixir to shatter his limitations, hunting for any edge he can scrape. This tech claims it will boost his power, though he looks more like a crook prepping a heist than a student. Shifting to the Dill Dojo, a deafening metallic crash rings out as someone gets absolutely wrecked in combat. Within the sleek training arena, Sunny struts about like a glorified boot camp commander barking at the recruits. Wearing his most intimidating expression, Sunny monitors the budding raiders with the intensity of a hork. He scolds Park Woojin for his sloppy stance during sword drills, proving that he is truly a merciless mentor. Turning his wrath to Kanjina, he critiques her slavish magic, reminding her that slow healers end up buried. Guildmaster Sun Yoon emerges from the sidelines, having quietly scrutinized the entire spectacle from the darkness. She notes the squad's progress surpassed last year's standard, yet her mind clearly wanders to distant pastures. Detecting her mental drift, Sunny teases the guildmaster, eager to learn what could possibly vex a legendary warrior. She retreats from her thwarts with a sheepish grin, while Sunny offers a smirk that says he knows everything. He hits the nail on the head by mentioning Men Yihen, catching the guildmaster in a lovely rosy blush. She concedes gracefully, admitting she cannot deceive him, since he clearly tapped into her deepest secrets. Sunny remarks on the high stakes of the skill she intends to impart upon the talented young recruit. Honestly, countless elite raiders have crashed and burned trying to master that supposedly impossible legendary technique. She counters that he witnessed the boy's gifted nature, proving why she is gambling her hopes on him. She lavishes him with praise, noting he maneuvers with the lethal grace of a veteran who wastes zero energy. Only text in. She stares through the glass at the new recruits training outside, observing that if another S-rank magician ever emerges in the future, it will undoubtedly be Yihen, which is a massive declaration coming from a legendary figure herself. She admits her direct combat capabilities are rather weak because she's purely a healer, so she absolutely requires a powerful attacker to back her up. A vision appears of Yihen surrounded by blue energy, a visualization of him arriving like a cosmic comet right now. You will essentially turn the entire magic world upside down, and she is eagerly anticipating the resulting chaos, so get ready for part 6 next. Behold the holy grail of magical artifacts, the elixir of magic reinforcement, which looks like a glowing brown orb perched precariously on a ridiculously fancy red pillow, probably worth a fortune. The narrator explains that this object permanently increases the magical power of whoever consumes it, showing a background character looking absolutely ecstatic about his recent power boost. This item is something every magic class raider would literally sell their internal organs to acquire, but back in reality, we see some disgusting purple sludge bubbling in a pot, clearly not a miracle cure. Yihen stands over the stove with a look of pure exasperation, stirring this gross purple-black smoke with a ladle, realizing things are definitely not going according to plan. He finally snaps and slams his hand down on the counter, yelling in frustration as the pot explodes with a loud sizzling noise, charring purple goop everywhere, proving once again that chemistry is just really difficult. He rubs his forehead, completely exhausted, wondering exactly how many times he's attempted this, realizing that breaking the laws of magic from his kitchen counter isn't quite as easy as it sounded. He stares into the sink, now filled with the burned remains of his latest catastrophic failure, calculating that he's just poured at least 3 sets of expensive ingredients straight down the drain. Yihen starts sweating profusely, realizing he's literally burning through all of his savings, especially since the recipe said the liquid should turn pristine white, but it looks more like something dredged from the sewer. He washes a pot bowl, feeling completely paralyzed, unable to ask anyone for assistance because, in this particular timeline, the elixir hasn't even been officially invented yet. He crouches on the kitchen floor surrounded by smoke and failure, reflecting that it's a huge step from being a legendary hero to being just a guy who makes a massive mess in his mom's house. The scene jumps ahead to November 2020, with the narrator confirming that at this precise moment in time, absolutely no one in the world knows the secret formula for this magical power juice. This particular elixir won't be officially shared with the general public for another 5 years, meaning Yihen essentially holds a futuristic cooking instruction manual that he just can't quite read properly yet. He glares at the burnt gunk on his ladle, feeling the immense pressure of being the only person on the planet who possesses this valuable secret. The kitchen is a complete disaster covered in purple splatters, and despite being the only one who knows the ingredients and method, he continues to fail spectacularly. The simple truth is inescapable, the only person with this specific knowledge right now is him, so absolutely no pressure at all. He recalls the past, remembering that before his regression, the recipe was generously publicized for free by a world-famous alchemist, as a silhouette of a man in a lab coat flashes into view. The alchemist in that memory, a guy with messy hair and glasses, genuinely hoped the elixir would help raiders everywhere, proving he truly was a noble individual. And here he is, Lai Jai-sing, who looks like a total science nerd, but he's basically the magical chemistry equivalent of Einstein. Yihen decides to abandon the do-it-yourself method, reasoning that there's no point in continuing to try, concluding that if he can't cook, he needs to hire a professional chef instead. He gives a mischievous smirk, deciding to bet on an entirely different possibility, one that involves meeting the actual inventor directly. As a person who actually created the elixir, Lai Jai-sing definitely knows the secret formula, so now Yihen just needs to track him down. Yihen looks quite pleased with himself, realizing that even if he fails to brew the potion on his own, making a connection with Lai Jai-sing is a massive strategic victory for his future. He considers this a truly beneficial plan, deciding the goal is simple, track down the genius and recruit him to the team early. He remembers that Lai Jai-sing is currently a first-year high school student attending Mills Academy, which provides him with an excellent starting point for his search. Jae-hyun beams with intense determination, concluding his travel plans internally, while mentally stuffing his suitcases for the upcoming trip. Witness the glory of Mills Academy, a gargantuan neon metropolis encased in glass under the stars, resembling a cinematic masterpiece from the future. Out of nowhere, the chime begins a frantic rhythmic assault on the ears, truly showcasing the universe's talent for poorly timed distractions. Yo-Yeon arrives, swinging the entrance wide while screaming for Jae-hyun, completely unaware she is stepping into a thick charcoal cloud. The dense violet haze chokes the culinary space, appearing less like a burnt dinner and more like a failed attempt at summoning demons. Staring at a charred utensil with a ghostly complexion, Yo-Yeon debates contacting the authorities, which seems like a perfectly logical reaction here. Scanning the residence with pure dread, she notes the lack of stolen goods, desperately attempting to apply some sanity to this chaotic mess. Arming herself with a kitchen tool, she prowls through the fog, pondering if burglars now specialize in messy cooking rather than actual theft. Listen to some lore. Since Idrisil popped up, a bottomless pit of monsters emerged, headlined by a particularly grumpy and giant winged lizard. Just a handful of top-tier warriors managed to resist the onslaught, featuring legends like Guildmaster Sunhan, who radiates pure main character energy. The premier talent was Li Yixin, known as Quick-Bladed, sporting the classic neon-eyed and pointy-haired look of a professional fantasy murderer. Without warning, he ghosted the entire world, leaving the nation's security with a crater-sized gap where the top hero used to be. It turns out Li Yixin is the baby of the family, and he is exactly the individual Yihan must find immediately. Yihan stands before a transit desk where a clerk inquires about his goal, as he prepares to depart with great urgency. He politely requests a teleportation jump to Daegu, maintaining a stoic expression despite knowing he is essentially booking a trip to hell. Daegu has become a desolate wasteland, quarantined due to an extreme surplus of monsters, making it the worst possible holiday destination imaginable. Scavenger birds circle the crumbling high-rises of the city, where survival becomes a very questionable prospect the moment you arrive. The employee gapes in disbelief, asking if he attends Mills Academy, some that a youngster would choose to visit such a graveyard. Yihan offers a serene grin and clarifies that he hasn't enrolled yet, looking like a man with a very specific hobby for danger. He mentions he is merely a candidate for admission, acting as if he is simply heading over for a standard campus tour. Releasing a heavy sigh, he finally reaches the entrance of the literal beast's belly, ready to face whatever madness lies within. He pauses at the primary entrance of the school, dwarfed by the ridiculous size of the shimmering sapphire canopy looming behind the walls. Gazing at the institution with a weighted soul, he recalls the dramatic and vivid events that defined his previous existence in this place. Discarding his sentimental thoughts, he moves forward, deciding that dwelling on the past is a luxury he cannot afford while on duty. The voiceover cautions that this neighborhood is far from cozy, as lethal threats are essentially hiding behind every single mailbox and lamppost. Filthy creatures continue to prowl the pavement, searching for snacks, proving this campus is actually just a glorified arena for bloodshed. Stepping into a sophisticated reception area filled with men in dark attire, Yihan feels like he accidentally wandered into a spy headquarters. Sporting a visitor's badge, he contemplates the whereabouts of Li Yixin, aware that finding the youngster will be like searching for a needle. Recalling Jae-sun's enrollment in the fighting division, he ignores the boy's lack of skill, focusing on the individual rather than his power level. A memory surfaces of Jae-sun receiving a thorough thrashing during practice, highlighting how much he loathes violence, which is awkward for an assassin. Jae-hun struts down the hall with enough swagger to own the building, then pivots toward the lecture hall. He spots a cluster of students and senses the distinct, spicy aroma of impending drama brewing ahead. Suddenly he freezes mid-stride and whips his head around, hearing a noise that simply isn't sitting right. Peering past a corner, he finds a mob surrounding someone, which is basically bullying in its classic, ugly form. He catches them murmuring that saving a stuttering loser is a waste of time, which basically confirms these kids are total garbage. Jae-hun's face turns into an ice sculpture once he hears the term stuttering, and he instantly connects the messy dots. Shrouded in darkness with one fiery orange eye glowing, he prepares to ruin someone's afternoon in a very permanent way. Deciding a little case is acceptable, he prepares to drop the facade and play the unexpected white knight for a bit. Jae-hun bulldozes through the ring of thugs with a blur of motion, skipping any polite requests or formal invitations. He loudly labels them spineless cowards, testing if their delicate egos can actually handle such a direct and brutal reality check. He strides right up to the ringleader, his fluid movements radiating a vibe that screams he's about to break something. A swift, heavy shoulder check sends the green-haired jerk flying with a pain wheeze, which is one way to break the ice. Before the clumsy teen hits the deck, Jae-hun snatches him by the coat, leaving the kid wide-eyed and shaking like a leaf. The poor boy just stammers a terrified apology while trembling, having clearly dealt with a mountain of grief all day long. The close-up reveals Jae-hun's piercing orange stare, which feels like it's peeling back layers of the kid's very soul to find facts. The pompous adult in a suit huffs in annoyance, demanding his identity while hilariously pretending his playground bowling is actually important work. He continues to mock the boy for his speech issues, proving once again that this guy is a truly top-tier jerk. It is honestly painful to watch the green-haired kid sobbing uncontrollably, his face soaked in tears of pure, unadulterated misery. Jae-hun watches the weeping boy for a long moment, the stony expression finally showing a fleeting hint of genuine human empathy. He has confirmed his suspicion, finally locating Lee Jae-sing, which officially concludes the mission as he waves everyone a quick goodbye. Yihan plants himself firmly between the dune and his victim, acting as a human barricade that refuses to budge an inch. Glancing back, Yihan checks on Han, who remains frozen in a state of utter shock from his sudden, unexpected nightly rescue. The confused kid can only muster a stuttering noise of bewilderment, which is fair when a random stranger starts throwing hands for you. The bull sneers at Yihan, asking if he's a stutterer's brother, clearly failing to realize that he's poking a very dangerous bear. While the jerk drones on about the lack of resemblance, Yihan offers a silent orange-eyed glare that screams he's courting disaster. The bullet claims he assumed the boy's family was Monster Chow, causing Jae-sun to stare at his feet in profound, miserable silence. With a smug grin, the bull insists they are busy torquing, while Yihan looks like he would rather be literally anywhere else on Earth. Yihan brushes the man's hand aside like a pesky insect, warning him to scram unless he wants a very painful medical emergency. The bull's jaw drops in genuine disbelief, clearly failing to process that anyone would dare dismiss him with such casual, cold indifference. Trembling in the shadows, Jae-sun watches through watery eyes, having never witnessed someone actually dare to defy this local tyrant before. Only text N. Yihan wears a plastic grin while suggesting Jae-sun hit the nurse station, desperate to move the target away from the looming disaster. He checks if the kid can navigate, but Jae-sun looks mentally toasted, sporting eyes so dizzy he is basically seeing constellations already. The antagonist grinds his molars in irritation, and you can almost spot the literal steam whistling out of his ears like a kettle. With a sudden dash, the bullet grabs Yihan by the collar, clearly done with dealing with this infuriating piece of work. He invades Yihan's personal space to ask if he has a death wish, implying that basic verbal hints are clearly beyond his intellect. Yihan remains stone-faced, peering back with shadowed features and ominous glowing pupils that suggest he might actually be a nightmare. Yihan mentally tallies this as the second offense, feeling a rising grudge against random peoples who insist on groping his laundry. Jae-sun lingers in the backdrop, looking like a lost puppy while these two giants loom, probably debating if he should just vanish. Staring down at the hand on his fabric, Yihan contemplates why his shirt collar has suddenly become the local attraction for grabs. It feels like following a recipe, so envision the target first, then run the complex math to get the numbers align. Build the incantation and release it. Much like Yajin is currently flexing her hydration skills to prove she is a master. She offers a smug smirk and checks for comprehension, clearly loving the rare opportunity to play the role of the expert. Memory lane brings back the master, so Yihan visualizes a piercing bolt of light that launches like a lethal hunting arrow. Guild leader Sunjun watches from the shadows, her figure silhouetted against the scenery as she gestures for him to strike now. Returning to reality, the notification pings to confirm the holy arrow skill is primed, so let the chaos begin immediately. With one pointed finger, Yihan detonates a blinding white projectile into the brood, delivering a masterclass in aggressive disrespect. The attacker stumbles back as his mug is bathed in magical radiance, finally grasping that he picked a terrible fight. As the bowl connects, the bull howls in agony while Jason watches the scene with his jaw practically hitting the floor. Jason is left speechless, baffled that Yihan unleashed such an advanced defensive technique without bothering to chant a single syllable. Nearby students whisper in confusion about the sudden blast, completely stunned since they never caught him reciting any magical formulas. One kid questions the logic of a holy dart snapping a warrior limb, suspecting the power scaling here is officially broken. Doubled over and dripping sweat, the bull clutches his limb, debating whether to flee or continue this suicide mission today. He bites his lip to save face, worried that his status as the school alpha is rapidly crumbling into absolute dust. Blaring with pure fury, he warns Yihan that his mysterious origins will not save him, acting like a total sore loser. The bullet charges with a pain roar, but Yihan just emits a weary sigh as if swatting away a persistent mosquito. Rushing forward in a frenzy, the bull lunges with his face contorted into a mask of desperate, unbridled, and ugly rage. Marna pulses around the bull's limb as he readies a decisive blow, dumping every ounce of energy into this final swing. Jason shrieks a panicked warning, terrified that his quiet savior is about to be flattened into a human pancake soon. The fist arcs through the air, only to crash uselessly against an invisible azure dome protecting Yihan with a dull thud. Yihan does not shift his stance, observing the failed collision with a detached, bored expression of a guy watching paint dry. Only text N. The camera focuses closely on Yihan's orange eye as it begins to intensely glow, signaling that he has finally decided to take this seriously. We cut back to a flashback where Sunyan explains the mechanics of a mana bearer. She demonstrates how to evenly distribute the energy across her entire body. The method ensures that all incoming attacks simply glance right off, and she illustrates by letting a powerful lightning strike and energy blast hit her without flinching. Returning to the present, a system notification appears. Active still mana barrier has been activated. The bowler lets out a frustrated cry, realizing that despite putting his full weight into the attack, he can't make even the slightest impact on Yihan's defense. He looks like a mosquito trying to push a battleship. Yihan holds out a brightly glowing hand, and a barrier shimmering with intricate blue geometric patterns appears around him. This is an extremely cool looking move. The aggressor lets out an angry noise as he discovers his arm is completely pinned against the invisible wall. He's been thoroughly and completely outmaneuvered. Without warning, Yihan grabs the bull's face with a huge hand. That definitely looks like a move that will leave a major bruise in the morning. The bull's pain groans are muffled as he's forcefully pinned down. He transitioned from the predator to the helpless prey in less than 3 seconds flat. Yihan looks down at him from the shadows, his face totally obscured except for his glowing eyes. He asks if the bull is finished, radiating absolute 0 degrees of temperature. Mana starts rapidly swirling in Yihan's hand again, clearly indicating he's about to deliver a point-blank finishing blow. The system announces that active skill Holy Arrow has been activated. It's time for the final round. A massive beam of incandescent white light blasts into the bull's face, instantly incinerating the very air around it. The bully is sent flying backward through the hallway, crashing heavily into the ground with a loud thud. He's probably not going to be getting up from that one anytime soon. Yihan stands over the defeated bully as the smoke dissipates, having secured a total and undeniable victory. Jae-sung is completely stunned, simply staring at the mysterious student's back. He has no idea who this powerful individual could possibly be. Yihan starts casually pulling random items out of his pockets, acting completely unbothered by the dramatic fight he just concluded. He glances over with his glowing eye, prickly checking to see if the kid he just saved is okay. The kid flinches and lets out a terrified squeak before looking away. To be fair, he did just witness a person getting vaporized by a magic arrow. Yihan simply stares at the kid blankly, probably wondering why he's so startled all of a sudden. He begins working toward Jae-sung with a slow and steady pace. The hallway remains completely silent. We get a shot of the bull lying on the ground, bruised and completely defeated. Yihan clearly didn't hold back at all. Yihan looks down at the fallen bully and thinks, well, I really got him good. He seems genuinely surprised by the power he just displayed. He looks at Jae-sung with a skeptical expression, wondering if his kid always looks this weak and pathetic. He lights a small flame in his hand and lets out a deep sigh, deciding to be helpful despite his initial reluctance. He pulls a high-grade red potion bottle from his inventory. This healing item is clearly very expensive. He looks at the potion, admitting to himself that he didn't buy it for this kind of situation, but realizes he can't just leave the kid. He's a sucker for an underdog. Jae-sung's eyes widen as he instantly recognizes the bottle. He understands exactly how rare and valuable that high-grade potion is. He removes the cork from the bottle without a moment's hesitation. The cost of the potion doesn't seem to concern him. He pours the glowing red liquid right onto Jae-sung's face. It's an aggressive, messy healing method, but it gets the job done quickly. That glowing brew touches the source, launching a rapid mending process for the lad. Jae-sung stands gasping, his pupils mirroring the tonic's enchantment, clearly never pampered like this before. The groggy antagonist stirs, puzzled by the restorative energy, while Yihan praises the brewer's top-notch craftsmanship. Yihan pivots to depart, prompting Jae-sung to inquire if it is time to vacate. He shoots a chilly glance toward the infirmary, maintaining his ruse as a benevolent academic peer. Jae-sung lingers, shaking and damp with nerves, baffled by his strange rescuer's wild, game-changing antics. The pair ascends the stairs of a pristine building, enjoying a tranquil break from the rowdy hallway caves. Yi-sang stays jittery, babbling that this path misses the medical bay, eyeing his peer like he expects an ambush. Yi-Han marches forward steadily while Yi-Sun trails behind, emitting tiny anxious whimpers under the heavy power imbalance. Yi-Han halts to survey the perimeter, claiming the coast is clear, sounding more like an undercover operative than a pupil. Yi-Sang stares wide-eyed as he feels cornered, his internal survival alarm bells ringing at full volume. He drops his gaze, masking his face in shadow as he assumes this guy identified his true origin. He blurts out the inquiry about his father, yet Yi-Han just stares back with a hollow expression. Yi-Han perceives he touched a raw nerve, realizing the boy has the wrong idea and needs a chill pill. He plays it slick, questioning how he could possibly recognize a man, acting with a legendary poker face. Yi-Sang glares with intense doubt, clearly sensing that his counterpart is spewing complete nonsense. Yi-Sang demands the reason for the pursuit, desperate to decipher what this overpowered rookie desires. Yi-Han gets straight to the point, requesting a small task, leaving poor Yi-Sun stammering in shock. Yi-Han offers a charming grin, asking him to whip up a potion, causing the lad to nearly faint from panic. The boy frantically waves his arms, swearing he lacks the skills to craft such things as his vision blurs. Yi-Han scoffs at the act, exposing the ruse by noting his natural talent for the alchemical arts. He reveals the luminescent vial as the ultimate bombshell, questioning if he sold it on the dark web. Yi-Sun looks completely cored, covering his shocked mouth while wheezing out a desperate query of how. His mind races in total turmoil, wondering how on earth someone could trace his shadow market activities so easily. Yi-Han smirks, fully aware that the boy considers his illicit trade history to be utterly untraceable. Yi-Sang drips with cold sweat, mentally confirming that the system is supposedly foolproof and totally baffled. A fancy interface displays the black market, the platform marketed as a secure, impenetrable sanctuary for anonymous sellers. Everything flows via the ASA network, boasting godly defenses that were perfect until a regressor intervened. Yi-Han gazes toward the periphery, drifting into a moment of deep, contemplative thought. He recalls a crimson-haired stranger, musing that he only auctioned that eye due to the supposed safety of the trade. Casting away his regrets, he decides that dwelling on the past is for losers and keeps his eyes glued to the clock. Poor Yi-Sang stands there wishing the floorboards would just swallow him whole, utterly at the mercy of Yi-Han's whims. Yi-Han feels relieved that the Nornir network and shady market are running smoothly, playing a board game others cannot fathom. Eyeing the elixir, he knows perfection requires sacrifice, proving he is the type who considers chaos a perfectly acceptable shortcut. The data checks out, revealing that things would have been a total disaster without this magical liquid acting as his lubricant. He grins at Yi-Sang, asking if he agrees, a query so disarmingly pleasant it practically screams a death threat in disguise. Yi-Sang attempts to feign ignorance, but he is a miserable actor who stutters through a denial that fails to fool anyone. Yi-Han cuts through the nonsense immediately, making it clear he sees right through the kid's pathetic charade of innocence. Time is a luxury he lacks, as saving the world in 2 months leaves zero room for playing silly little nursery games. A glimpse into the cluttered lab shows stacks of dusty tomes and vials, the chaotic birthplace of his bubbling, blowing concoctions. Flashback mode shows Yi-Sang listing goods on the black market, appearing significantly more competent surrounded by his glassware. He regrets peddling that specific potion now, realizing hindsight is a jerk when you are stuck dealing with a time traveler. Sighing heavily, he realizes his quest for quick cash backfired spectacularly, officially dragging him into the messy main plot. Gazing out the window with the spirit of a wilted vegetable, he knows his peaceful days as an underground chemist are toast. Squeezing his eyes shut, he fears the wrath of his father, whose family drama could probably fuel a decade of soaps. He pivots to full-on beggar mode, pleading for mercy and offering anything to keep his secret life tucked under the rug. Bowing his head in shame, he begs Yi-Hun to stay silent, clearly suffering from a bad case of impending social doom. Yi-Hun places a comforting hand on his shoulder and offers a brief reassurance that he certainly did no such thing. He clarifies that he is not here to pull a blackmail stunt, despite his resting villain face suggesting otherwise to the world. Returning the radiant flask, he watches Yi-Sang gape in disbelief, stunned that he actually gets to keep his precious loot. Yi-Hun clarifies his intent, noting that he is currently scouting for a talented alchemist to join his motley superhero squad. He desperately requires someone capable of brewing top-tier elixirs for the dangerous trials lurking on his long road ahead. Yi-Sang contemplates the praise, realizing someone finally recognizes his alchemical genius instead of just his family name for once. Searching Yi-Hun's expression for deception, he breathes a sigh of relief upon realizing the guy might actually be sincere. He finally gathers the courage to ask the burning question, staring intently into Yi-Hun's eyes for a shred of honesty. He demands to know the identity of the mysterious individual who just rescued both his hide and his hidden operation. Yi-Hun flashes a dashing grin, introducing himself as an aspiring student at Miller Academy, which is arguably a very modest flex. After stating his name as Men Yi-Hun, Yi-Sang whispers the syllables back as if they were a sacred holy mantra. Clutching the bottle to his chest like a teddy bear, Yi-Sang feels he has finally found an ally worth keeping. He tentatively gestures for Yi-Hun to follow him, offering an invitation into his private domain like a nervous puppy dog. Only text N. Glancing back, he agrees to hear him out, making the shaky partnership officially a done deal. Working into a workspace that screams organized chaos, it feels more like a nerdy sanctuary than a lab. Yi-Hun offers a sincere compliment on the atmosphere, leaving Yi-Sang blushing while fumbling over his gratitude. Perched on a bed and a stool, they settle into Torque Shop, which feels surprisingly cozy for strangers. Yi-Sun leans in, clearly jittery while waiting to hear the sheer lunacy behind Yi-Hun's sudden proposal. He drops the $1,000,000 inquiry, wanting to know exactly what kind of concoction he is after. Sporting a crafty grin, Yi-Hun realizes he is about to flip this young man's entire world upside down. Peering about the magic reinforcement elixir, Yi-Hun eyes widen, stunned by this legendary brew that boosts space mana. Jumping up in sheer disbelief, he demands to know if permanent growth is even remotely feasible in reality. Staring straight at him, Yi-Hun confirms it is possible, relying on his own peculiar history as proof. Recalling his older self, he muses that this tonic was his own creation, proving time travel is utterly bizarre. The narrative underscores that obtaining this permanent mana boost remains the single most vital objective. Ihan dives deep into calculation mode, eagerly querying what rare components might be required for such magic, listing ingredients like Jod and Hama Spring Wardo. His personality shifts entirely as he dives into his craft, rejecting those options as insufficient. He focuses hard while Ihan watches his gears spinning with pure admiration. Ihan observes a sudden shift in aura, as the previous stuttering wreck transforms into a brilliant genius. Simply by grasping the required outcome, Jisun deduces the secret formula, proving he's a total powerhouse. The devious smirk plays on Yihan's lips, certain that he must recruit this talented youth at any price. Jisun catches his breath as the magnitude of this request sinks in, barely managing to stammer a reply. He suggests finding a more experienced alchemist, still entirely oblivious to his own legendary level of skill. Grabbing the lad by the shoulders, Yihan insists he's the only choice, promising to provide every resource. Deep down he realizes other pros might manage the brew, but he has no interest in anybody else. He knows Li Jisung is the only soul capable of shattering alchemical limits. Placing his faith in the man, zeroing in on his eyes, he decides this investment is sound because he is playing a lun game. Offering a gentle base, he asks for a commitment, leaving the stunned Jisung nutting in silent agreement. Despite the kid's fear of failure, Yihan waves off the concern, claiming it truly does not matter. Floored by this sudden trust, Jisung wonders if he is ready to risk losing everything on a failure. Rubbing his neck with a sigh, Yihan admits that successful investments are tough, acting like a battle-won executive. Focus shifts to Jisung's wardering eyes, as he is clearly unused to receiving such genuine, life-changing support. With a warm smile, Yihan hands over the mission, effectively betting on the future world-renowned alchemy master. Only text N. Our pal Jisun finally burst into a joyous waterfall of tears, declaring this was an unprecedented moment of trust, quite the achievement indeed. Yihan offered a tiny, deeply pleased smirk while gazing from the window, convinced he had forged a most precious alliance, signaling a brilliant tomorrow. Golden rays from the nascent sun gently painted the interior of a hushed chamber, a serene prologue before our hero unleashed his monumental plan. Perched precariously on the mattress rim, Jisun seemed utterly adrift in contemplation, clearly battered by recent trials, carrying the weight of the world. A tight shop revealed Jisun's distant gaze, his mind evidently replaying a montage of past events, like a private, unskippable movie. Yihan's confident declaration echoed, about investing in Jisun's potential, a declaration that for a young man utterly lacking in self-worth, felt less like a compliment and more like a cruel, unexpected dose of psychological strychnine. Yihan offered his effortlessly cool, no strings attached grin, casually imparting the wisdom that financial ventures often hit a snag, and occasional flops are just part of the grand scheme. Jisun pondered silently, grappling with the profound question of whether such unwavering faith had ever graced his existence, a truly devastating insight for a perennial one-shot. With a subtle hind gesture, Yihan expressed his eagerness for the collaboration, already elevating Jisun to the esteemed rank of a colleague, rather than a mere pawn. Jisun remained utterly dumbfounded by the sudden, unexpected affirmation, his mind apparently short-circuiting at the novel concept of being genuinely appreciated. His memory conjured the sharp thud of a practiced sword against his forearm, a harsh echo of countless instances where his best simply fell short. A sudden mental rewind revealed a diminutive, weeping Jisun, the boy who blossomed into the conviction that he was utterly spineless and skill deficient next to his stellar siblings. His father's imposing silhouette perpetually haunted his thoughts, a constant monument to the affirmation he perpetually missed, particularly after feeling utterly abandoned following his mother's passing. But then, the soothing cadence returned, affirming that missteps were permissible, Jaehoon being the inaugural individual to suggest that imperfection didn't equate to worthlessness. He conceived of this moment as his initial true acceptance, the sheer emotional enormity of such uncomplicated faith proving quite literally overwhelming for his fragile composure. Jae-sun, utterly immersed in his own tearful deluge, was at last unburdening himself of years of suppressed anguish, truly commencing his journey toward restoration. The hourglass of existence continued its relentless trickle, the Hell's Trial quest clock chiming frantically as suns rose and set with alarming speed. With just 10 days, 23 hours, and 59 minutes left on the clock, the critical moment of his ultimate challenge loomed, practically whispering threats in his ear. A gargantuan sapphire energy column ripped violently through the practice arena, a clear indicator that someone had been logging serious hours at the magical weight room. Jaehoon appeared impeccably formidable, his ember orbs radiating light as he meticulously readied his subsequent incantation, no longer a greenhorn, but a bona fide warrior. Guildmaster Sun Yoon gracefully navigated the eye of a magical tempest, her bearing utterly majestic, proving that engaging an S-rank master was the ultimate shortcut to rapid improvement. These two moved with such incredible velocity they became mere streaks of color, mystical energies colliding in every available nook, truly a spectacle of hypersonic sorcery. A veritable deluge of azure magical projectiles sliced through the atmosphere, resembling a spectacularly lethal pyrotechnic display. Jaehoon's protective magical shield absorbed the full-on impact with a resounding fracture, his jaw clenched tight, registering the full, unadulterated force of the assault. A system notification chimed, announcing the activation of his holy arrow technique, as Jaehoon strained beyond his breaking point, hell-bent on narrowing the formidable distance. Sun Yoon successfully parried his barrages, yet her demeanor now radiated an undeniable ferocity, clearly indicating the playful skirmish had ended. A serrated fissure materialized squarely in the core of her magical defense, a quintessential this cannot be happening kind of revelation. The tight shut caught Sun Yoon's wide, incredulous eyes, contemplating the shield's fissure, certainly never anticipating a mere pupil could breach her impregnable fortifications. Jaehoon, utterly winded and completely spent, had nevertheless triumphed, compelling even his master to concede his power had escalated at an absolutely mind-bubbling velocity. The pair of spellcasters surveyed the smoldering debris of the practice chamber, which now strikingly resembled a post-apocalyptic battleground. They trade a quiet nod of deep reverence amidst the drifting fog as a pupil emerges. Jaehoon stands engulfed by fading sparks of gold, looking prepared to demolish the entire facility. Sun Yoon poses amid dissipating magical essence, her tresses flowing like a battle-hardened deity. The collision of pure kinetic power caused the surrounding atmosphere to shudder with intensity. Sunny intervenes, shouting that the training session has concluded before they wreck the whole place. Glancing sideways at the wreckage, Sunny clearly contemplates whether his current job is worth the stress. The arena walls, forged from theoretically unbreakable arc metal, are now marred by deep, jagged scars. Sunny realizes that preventing further destruction likely saved the Academy a massive, budget-breaking repair invoice. Sunhan beams with pride, applauding Yihan for his absurd power and embracing her status as his biggest fan. He inquires about his academic progress, and Yihan mentions a friend, keeping Yechin firmly in the friend zone. Sunhan exhales in relief, confessing she always struggled with the tedious textbook side of arcane arts. When she asks about his clever tutor, Yihan offers a wry shrug, recalling his chaotic study sessions. A flashback reveals Yejing acting typical, proving that while she's a genius, her personality is exhausting. Sunny questions if he intends to assault another dungeon immediately, marveling at his relentless drive. Yihan confirms with a nod, eager to gauge the true utility of his training in combat. Sunhan cheers him on, assuming that a low E-rank mission will be a total cakewalk. Yihan suspects the system is luring him toward a death trap, wishing a simple rank actually existed. He fights to keep his composure, though internal shadows of self-doubt continue to creep in. He pictures Nightshade, a C-rank car he could never have grazed during his previous life. He contemplates the daunting prospect of facing such a terrifying monstrosity without any backup. The heavy weight of his adversary's status begins to press down on his weary shoulders. Forget that, he's ready. So Yihan slaps his face to focus and prepares for combat. His ember gaze ignites with fresh determination, convincing himself that success is within his reach. He greets the other guy, who looks like he has been hiding in a laboratory dungeon forever. Yihan nervously presents a tiny container, representing the culmination of his grueling alchemical efforts. Sure thing, Yun, Yihan remarks, and the guy grins, clearly thrilled by the finished gift. A system prompt identifies the Marner enhancement pill, a potent booster crafted by a master alchemist. Yihan asks if he should swallow it immediately, and NJ-san hesitantly gives a shaky nod. The notification confirms consumption, and Yihan gasps as raw energy floods his entire circulatory system. With a 15-point magic spike, Yihan stares in disbelief, chucked by such a drastic improvement. Only text N. He calls the outcome mind-blowing, essentially upgrading his base stats before he even steps inside the dungeon. Yihan offers a humble apology for the flavor, but is told the magnificent results make the bitterness taste sweet. The narrator observes that alchemy is truly an incredibly complex and demanding field of study. Despite using identical components, quality rests on the brewer, and Yihan is basically the Einstein of potions. Yihan reflects that no other alchemist would grant such a massive boost, knowing he chose the perfect partner. He flashes a proud grin, calling the kid gifted, and realizes his mentorship is finally starting to stick. Yihan feels deeply moved, explaining it was only through his mentor's faith that he could succeed today. Yihan insists that gratitude belongs to him, then notes the poor lad looks like he desperately needs a nap. Rubbing his drowsy eyes, the eater assistant vows to keep helping, truly earning his keep as a loyal sidekick. Watching him leave, Yihan wears a look of grim determination, knowing he is finally prepared for this task. Standing solo within the dim corridor, he feels the impending future, acknowledging that tomorrow has finally arrived. A bold vow flashes across the dark screen. Tomorrow, the Nightshade shall be defeated by my own hand. The quest alert chimes again, showing 9 days, 22 hours, and 47 minutes remain before his fated showdown. A nightmarish demonic claw extends slowly from the suffocating gloom of the shadows. Pell lurks in the darkness with her wicked horns, cackling about a fun guest arriving to star in her show. Time is hemorrhaging as Yihan has precisely 9 days, 22 hours, and 47 minutes to survive Hell's brutal challenge. He faces the colossal dungeon gates, an intrepid warrior preparing to breach a fortress guarded by the highest elite. Checking his inventory, he sports a C-rank Valkyrie set, essential bling for avoiding an early grave in this wasteland. Completing the set with earrings triggers a Marner extortion still, essentially granting our hero a magical cheat code. Adjusting his jewelry, he feels perfectly prepared to handle the grind, banking on his gear to balance the scales. He casts one last look at Sunny, who hovers like a nervous dad, before preparing to take his leap. Sunny offers a silent nod of encouragement, having finished his training regimen and leaving the rest to Yihan. Yihan vanishes into the dungeon portal's brilliant flare, trading his reality for a nightmare realm of hungry ghosts. Mono currents howl like a gale force wind, dragging him through a swirling blue vortex toward his uncertain fate. Unexpectedly, the system throws a crimson error, as Nornir hijacks his path toward an unlisted and dangerous location. Arrival confirmed at the frozen field of the dead, the charmingly horrific destination for a teenage dungeon crawler. Yihan tumbles through a violent void of purple and black, plummeting into the underworld with no way home. Landing with expert grace, his boots crunch against the frozen earth as he surveys the heavy, oppressive atmosphere. Standing alone in a misty graveyard, he exhales, finding the profound silence far more unsettling than any monster. A close look at his intense orange eye reveals he finally grasps the terrifying scope of this graveyard mission. Only text N. Spooky plum-colored vapor oozes through floor gaps and jagged branches, signaling this whole region is choking on a nightshade ore. Our protagonist imagines that 6 beep a nightshade freak, realizing that clubbering this boss is his only way to resolve his confusion. Thoughts regarding the skeletal queen hell relaxing amidst crimson fog haunt him, rendering this brawl his elite pass for a godly reunion. Grumbling about that tricks to Loki wearing golden horns, our hero realizes this prank king is definitely pulling every annoying string. Out of nowhere, the bony marksman cranks a neon string that shrieks, proving that the local undead have zero hospitality skills. Recalling those Nornir ladies weaving destiny who gifted him another life, the guy understands he is merely one piece within a stellar match. Sharp projectiles thud against his glowing energy bubble, yet his magical shield remains surprisingly resistant to the incoming junk. Our warrior remains steadfast against the peril, intending to interrogate those deities once he outlasts this lethal evaluation. Lifting ahead with blazing citrus orbs, he decides the training phase is over and it is finally time to fight. This guy fires a gigantic sapphire beam deleting groups of freaks, an act serving as a very flashy opening brawl. A mental replay appears where his teacher explains that thumping foes while weaving sorcery isn't only for backline wimps. This mentor labels this role a melee sorcerer mix, which feels like one ideal setup until nasty drawbacks appear. Most folks trying this fancy footwork usually end up being mediocre at everything and legendary at absolutely nothing at all. Since zero successful experts exist, she is basically telling him that his career choice has a 100% failure rate. Long-distance combat is mediocre compared to actual sorcerers, as shown by him throwing pathetic glowing pebbles that barely tickle. Our hero attempts blending blades with sorcery, though awkward shifting makes our guy resemble a total beaming novice. Up close, he is equally terrible compared to real martial artists, especially since he reacts slower than a sloth on a Sunday. After absorbing a strike which launches him skyward, the man discovers that mixing roles usually creates a shortcut toward catastrophe. Watching the monster swarm, he sees that his current style is effectively useless at every range, leaving him in a mess. Yet this teacher jabs his ribs while grinning, mentioning a specific bodily asset destined to flip his entire world. Flashing a smirk suggesting the lady knows his secrets, the mentor claims he is unique after spotting talent others missed. Giant pillars of holy gold light crash down, acting like a divine delete button for every monster standing in the area. Experience points flood in as he deletes zombies and ghosts, looking like a pro gamer bullying low-level mobs for loot. Scenes swap towards a remote thicket hosting a quaint cabin, which appears far too tranquil for an area containing ghouls. This frantic fellow waits beside some timber while clutching a cell, resembling a lonely teen whose crush never texted back. This fellow hammers out text seeking his superior, appearing like some frantic ball of stress ready to pop. Without warning, the fighter freezes while eyeing the shrubbery, sensing an odd vibe as his combat reflexes eventually start working. The lens focuses on those squinting eyes, noting that official documents claim this off-limits zone should be totally vacant. Sneaky party crashers. Clutching a swirled turquoise energy, the man refuses to risk his safety when dealing with an unwelcome party crasher. A neon orange vehicle shreds through the woodland trail, kicking up a massive dust cloud, clearly belonging to someone with an obnoxious amount of flair. The blue-haired driver rolls down her window, casually mentioning that the spot is quite isolated, behaving far too relaxed for someone trespassing on Guild property. She exits the ride looking sharp in a suit, leaning against the frame while complaining about the effort required to track his location down. Sunny instantly identifies Yeonju, who offers a chilly wave and remarks on how much time has slipped away since they last spoke. He remains unimpressed, demanding to know why she is loitering here instead of fulfilling her actual contractual obligations back at her guild. Yeonju checks her phone with zero urgency, claiming she is working, though her shift apparently consists solely of intrusive social calls. She eyes him sideways and confesses she traveled all this distance to stalk him because he missed his check-in, which is frankly quite unsettling. Sunj isn't buying this sudden friendly act, knowing full well she vanished completely from his life the moment they tossed their graduation caps. He assumes she possesses a hidden agenda, as he isn't the type to go on casual countryside road trips just to visit him. When he asks if she is overseeing this dungeon, she dismisses him by stating it is none of his business, mirroring his own toxic sarcasm perfectly. Yeonju mucks his current job managing dungeons, wondering if he suffered a career demotion, which is a surprisingly brutal jab even for her. Her demeanor turns serious as he addresses him as Sunbi, signaling that the pleasantries are over and the real interrogation is about to commence. She brings up the gossip regarding Yasingun being ill, clearly fishing for confirmation on the guild leader's most guarded medical secrets. Sunj turns pale as a sheet, and even though he stays silent, his panicked reaction serves as a blatant confirmation for her. He attempts to wave it off as mere hearsay, yet his sweating brow betrays him while he demands to know the source of these rumors. Yeonju flashes a smug gesture, implying she has informers everywhere and letting him know her curated guild is monitoring his every move. Sunj is boiling internally, realizing she is openly admitting to planting spies around them, a blatant act of professional disrespect. He sighs and thanks her for the information, already calculating how much overtime he will need to plug the holes in his security. Just as he attempts to wrap things up, Yeonju insists on one last topic, proving she is as stubborn as a barnacle on a boat. She displays a photo of Yehoon and Sunjun on her screen, wondering if he happens to know anything about the rookie named Yehoon. Sunj feels his pulse spike, completely blindsided by the fact that she has managed to secure physical evidence of the hidden asset. She points out the boy's frequent visits to the Lotus Guild, proving she has done extensive investigative research on their private affairs. By questioning the purpose of their meetings, she reveals her suspicion that the kid might be the secret remedy for the master's condition. Sunny shuts the conversation down, insisting that her curiosity is irrelevant, remaining as unyielding as a fortress wall regarding guild matters. Yeonju lets out an exasperated breath, clearly irritated that her former senior remains such a stubborn and moralistic killjoy. She turns away, admitting she never expected a straight answer anyway, implying this was just a low-effort fishing expedition. As she climbs back into the driver's seat, she calls him a stuck-up nerd, ensuring she maintains the final word in their argument. Sunny watches her depart, lamenting his need to keep up the appearance of productivity for a paycheck in this exhausting corporate world. Yeonju glances back through the glass one final time, bidding him a breezy farewell and promising they will cross paths again soon. The orange sports car speeds away, leaving Sunny in the quiet forest, well aware that her visit was a thinly veiled threat. Only text N. Sunny massages his throbbing temples, feeling completely drained, since he owes the representative a status report regarding those pesky spies causing major trouble. Back in Helheim, Ihan chills atop a jagged mountain of skulls, looking every bit the brooding monarch lounging upon his grim lunar throne. Feeling a monster sword drawing near, he smirks because he knows the long-awaited showdown has finally arrived on his doorstep. An alarming crimson alert flashes across the interface, signaling that Nightshade, the dungeon's main attraction, has decided to crash the party. A blinding surge of azure energy erupts ahead, seemingly shredding the very fabric of reality as the beast makes its grand entrance. Ihan remains motionless, observing the flashy display with a bored expression, merely noting that it has been quite an eternity. The Nightshade towers above him, its countless crimson eyes pulsing with raw hatred, peering far more nightmare-inducing than before. Perched on his bold throne amidst shimmering martyr shards, Ihan offers a chilly, steely glare, convinced this rematch will end differently. The boss throws a complete tantrum, howling as a volatile red mist erupts from its hide, turning the situation from bad to utter chaos. As the beast swipes its giant claws, Yihyun zips away, barely grazing past the crimson death beam in a dangerously narrow escape. Yihyun is busy crunching numbers while conjuring an intricate hexagonal barrier to protect his flank as he zeroes in on the target. A screech escapes the creature when a relentless volley of Marna blasts pummels its torso, proving our guy is finally inflicting serious pain. Impact causes the terrain to crack under the magical force, launching a massive blizzard of frost and rubble into the frozen air. The monstrosity still lingers, hunched over and wheezing while its many eyes glare with pure venom, wounded yet stubbornly refusing to quit. Charging up more red energy that makes the earth quiver, the boss readies a massive attack, meaning Yihyun must scramble immediately. A savage shockwave of vermilion force tears through the vicinity as the monster desperately tries to pulverize everything to catch its breath. A sharp focus settles into Yihyun's glowing amber irises, as he meticulously anticipates every twitch of the beast like a seasoned master. He mentally dictates his own maneuvers, sidestepping red slashes with such superhuman reflexes that he makes it look like a casual stroll. The boss appears completely baffled, eyes darting everywhere while struggling to pin down a human who is making this look far too effortless. Shifting rhythmically 2 steps to the right, he performs a graceful combat dance, leaving the hulking brute to swing at nothing but shatters. Another clumsy swipe misses entirely, as Yihyun vanishes again, leaving the frustrated monster swinging wildly and totally out of its depth. Maintaining the pressure, he ducks a heavy overhead blow, effortlessly turning this high-rank boss into a total punching bag for the session. He moves with mucking precision, tilting his head just an inch and stepping lightly to avoid attacks, wasting zero energy on unnecessary movement. Fuming, the nightshade emits a shrill, piercing wail, fully aware that it is being mocked and absolutely despising every agonizing moment of it. Yihyun flashes a frosty grin, igniting golden electricity in his palm, sarcastically asking if the monster is embarrassed by the current turn. But the system chimes signaling that his lightning chain is live. Our hero prepares to demonstrate exactly who is the boss here. Unleashing a radiant golden projectile of pure voltage at the creature, he demonstrates speed that is honestly far too fast for the eye. A shimmering trail cuts the darkness as electric shackles erupt from the bolt, pinning the boss inside a restricted prison of pure current. Those glowing chains dig deep into the shadowy hide, leaving the trapped beast absolutely no chance of making a desperate getaway. Yihyun clenches his fist in midair, channeling his inner reserves to snap the restraints shut and seal the creature's grim fate. Only text N. Like a storm deity yanking a beast, he watches the chains sizzle with current as the nightshade threshes, finding that every defined twitch only delivers a sharper, more painful electric kiss. An absolute supernova of amber radiance erupts, leaving the creature completely buried under a relentless barrage of elemental punishment. The monster bellows in torment as its body begins to fray into glowing mist, while Yihyun watches the settling haze with a gaze as cold as a frozen tombstone. He mutters that his effort remains insufficient, well aware that this tanky monstrosity possesses more hidden health than a legendary cockroach. Cascades of ivory and teal energy descend from the clouds, resembling orbital bombardments dropped by a very angry celestial deity. He denies the foe a moment to catch its breath, slamming bolts into its multiple peepers with a kind of accuracy that feels like bowling at a professional level. The boss emits a final, pathetic wail while being pummeled from every angle, and a crimson glow indicates its life bar is flirting with zero. The titan staggers through thick clouds of soot, yet Yihyun remains perfectly poised, looking like he just finished a light afternoon stroll. Zoom in on his expression, which reveals he is far too smart to start partying quite yet. He anticipates the dreaded second phase, and sure enough, the creature gets draped in a glitchy, pulsating aura of sinister blood red. With the very game engine appearing to implode, Yihyun prepares his next strike as a tactical crosshail locks onto the beast's pulsing center. Aiming for the grand finale, he sees system alerts flooding his view, warning that the nightshade has officially activated its frantic berserker mode. Seeing a massive stat spike, he watches the interface glitch into a mosaic of distorted red boxes, proving someone is rewriting the dungeon manual. Yihyun goggles at the bizarre malfunction message, realizing his trusty guide but completely neglected to mention the specific brand of digital disaster. The display turns into a jumbled mess of runes, yet one ominous term stands out, Sigor of Death, a cursed debuff he has never encountered. The system notifies him of a Winrod requirement regarding the soul-eating condition, which is a fairly straightforward, but slightly lethal, way to play. Pondering the penalty for sudden expiration, he realizes that even with his looping memories, he has finally wandered into completely uncharted territory. He attempts to use universal derivation to override the glitch, but the interface responds only with flickering purple smoke and broken text strings. For the first time, he looks genuinely rattled, shouting at the air because his reliable skills are behaving like a budget smartphone in the rain. As alerts overlap into a static mess, the active penalty continues to tick, piling the pressure on him like a collapsing ceiling. A shadowy figure emerges from the background wearing a wicked smirk, clearly the one behind this malicious tampering with his reality. Yihyun bellows her name into the void, fuming over her interference and realizing he is merely a plaything in her cosmic sandbox. A countdown timer manifests right before his eyes, signaling exactly 9 minutes and 28 seconds until his inevitable, abrupt exit. As the boss lunges with violet claws, sensing victory, he decides to abandon caution and go full throttle, hoping speed kills before he does. The nightshade darts forward like a streak of lightning, but instead of striking, it pivots to execute a tactical retreat. Yihyun stands frozen, wondering if the boss is actually fleeing to run out the clock, which is honestly a top-tier cowardly maneuver. The beast lobs a few parting shots to maintain a gap, clearly banking on its ability to play keep away until his time expires. With 8 minutes and 32 seconds remaining, every second the creature wastes in the distance brings him closer to a permanent game over. The boss is practically cackling while it retreats, essentially acting like a giant, toxic troll masquerading as a high-level monster. Beads of sweat form as Yihyun's face twists into pure, unfiltered irritation, silently cursing the arrogant creature for its infuriating displays of mockery. Only text N. He recognized the creature's tactic immediately, realizing it planned to achieve victory by simply dragging the battle out. It was a rather cunning move by the monster, but he planned on turning it into a very poor decision. He quickly decided on utilizing an expansive barrier skill that the beast couldn't possibly dodge, as golden light began to gather around him, making him look like some kind of demigod. The boss abruptly ceased its movement and spun around, sensing the immense magical power rapidly accumulating. It somehow knew that something truly terrible was about to occur. Suddenly, sharp fragments of golden light began to shower the entire location, trapping Ihan in the middle of a preset ambush he had completely failed to notice. A system alert chimed, announcing that resistance had failed and he had acquired a temporary fear debuff. For heaven's sake, he grumbled internally. Ihan was frozen solid, cold sweat pouring down his face, letting out a confused little sound because he couldn't even manage to move a single finger. The monster took full advantage of the opening, slamming directly into him. Blood sprayed across the dark snow as he absorbed the devastating blow. He was coughing up blood from the impact, but a system message confirmed the debuff had finally worn off. He was severely injured, yet at least he could move around again. The boss immediately followed up with a massive surge of red mana, looking like it intended to absolutely finish the fight right where they stood. Ihan slid backward across the snow, spitting out grit and looking pretty battered while the battle timer continued to run. With 7 minutes and 11 seconds remaining, he observed the creature closely, analyzing its attack patterns, and wondering if it couldn't continuously use crowd control abilities. He needed to figure out if the fear still had a significant cooldown period, as identifying a gap in its defenses was essential for his next move. He realized that the instant he prepared to activate Light's Judgment, the monster would likely interrupt him again, meaning his powerful finishing ability was simply too sluggish to use safely. The screen zoomed in on his face as he entered a state of deep concentration, forced to formulate a new strategy. He was a tactician at heart, and he was already pinpointing the solution. He stared intently at the nightshade's numerous glowing red eyes piercing through the surrounding darkness. He thought to himself, now that I'm focusing on it, as a completely new plan began to take shape within his mind. He remembered striking its eye during an earlier attack. Its range of vision must be considerably narrower than before, and he realized he had finally located the perfect blind spot. The active skill wind boost was successfully deployed. Swirling green energy surrounded him as he maximized his velocity to an unbelievable degree. His dexterity stat temporarily increased, making him feel almost weightless and completely prepared for the critical sprint. He moved with impossible speed, a simple blur of motion. The monster swung wildly at empty air as Ihan disappeared from its limited line of sight. He darted rapidly across the entire battlefield, completely avoiding the creature's narrowing field of vision. Suddenly, he reappeared directly behind the monster, mockingly asking if it actually thought he would charge straight forward. He raised a glowing hand, a wide grin stretching across his face, mentally calling the creature gullible. He had maneuvered it exactly where he wanted it. A system alert chimed, active still flash bomb activated. Things were about to get incredibly bright, as a blinding white light filled the entire screen in an instant. The creature's silhouette was frozen solid as it experienced complete blindness. The monster shrieked in pain, instinctively covering its eyes with its hands. Now entirely defenseless, Ihan stood within the center of the light, holding up a massive golden orb of raw energy. This, he declared, was the actual finishing move. Convinced he had secured the victory, he wore an expression of calm triumph as he made preparations for the definitive final strike. He slammed the energy orb straight into the boss's head, cursing the bastard creature, showing no mercy for the cowardly shadow monster as the impact proved absolutely devastating. The ground itself exploded in every direction as the immense tower completely shredded the nightshade, with exactly 4 minutes and 11 seconds left on the clock. He's running ahead of the timer, but the battle itself hasn't officially ended yet. He glances at the smoking remains of the boss, observing that even in defeat, the thing just won't quit twitching. He sees it trying one last rally, giving a smirk and thinking it still has the energy to follow him, but it's far too late. Active skill sacrifice has been activated, as the system detects undead monsters across the field, including the boss. The skill changes to an attack mode, unleashing the legendary sacrifice technique. He copied this move from the Saint S, so columns of dazzling golden light rained down from the sky, incinerating everything instantly in a display that is equal parts beautiful and terrifying. The countdown timer rapidly approaches 0, sending the tension level straight through the roof. The numbers continue to plummet, but Ihan just stands calmly, letting the light particles drift around him like glitter at a very aggressive party. The countdown hits 6, revealing a wide shot of utter destruction. The nightshade is nothing but scraps, and then the clock drops to 5. Ihan manages a small, exhausted smile, internally congratulating himself for actually pulling it off. He has officially conquered the first trial as the numbers flash 4, then 3, signaling the boss is finally and completely gone. The nightmare is finally over. The system pings with a notification, you have successfully defeated the dungeon boss Nightshade. Hell yeah, high fives all around. He just earned a new title, one who overcame the first trial. That title is definitely going on his resume. Pell reappears looking genuinely impressed, thinking there must have been a reason for his choice after all, and invites him to visit her temple. The screen goes completely black, flashing a final, chilling message, I invite you in, concluding chapter 19 with our hero stepping straight into the house of death. Stay tuned. The system is absolutely blowing up with notifications. Ihan has officially downed the Nightshade boss and the death curse branding is finally removed, netting him 500 stat points. The rewards just keep pouring in. He just snapped the shadow armor, and his level immediately shot up by 3 points. All that hard grinding finally paid off in spades. The screen glows with a golden hue as he earns the title, one who overcame the first trial, making him look like a tiny silhouette against a massive wave of divine energy. The system performs a deep scan, checking all the user's credentials, while Ihan simply stands there, completely overwhelmed by the brilliant light. The credentials check finishes up right away. The summons is official. Hell's Temple is calling for him, and he finds himself being pulled into a massive, shimmering purple vortex. Look at the sheer scale of this place. Ihan appears like an ant standing in the middle of a colossal, frozen cathedral, clearly indicating this is Hell's territory. Ihan glances around, whispering that this place is Hell's Temple. It's spooky, quiet, and absolutely not where you want to spend your vacation. Suddenly, his eyes go wide as he lets out a gasp, sensing something massive and dangerous approaching quickly from the shadows. A gigantic skeletal beast with glowing red eyes lunges out of the shadows with a mighty roar. It looks like a literal nightmare designed in the body of a very large dark. Ian dives backward, shouting an expletive as the monster's massive skull face gets way too close to his personal space. This is definitely not the welcome to the neighborhood party he was expecting. The monster looms over him, radiating heat and pure malice, cornering him against the temple walls like a terrified mouse. The boss's name is revealed as Garma, and a close-up on that glowing red eye confirms this thing is the official guard dog of the underworld. It looks incredibly hungry. A calm voice echoes through the massive hall, instructing the beast to escort the guest inside. Farmer stands down, but the path ahead is quite literally filled with flames. Farmer stands guard at the massive entrance, surrounded by fire and crackling yellow lightning, making it easily the most intensely intimidating front door I have ever encountered. Ian saunters past the titan, maintaining a facade of composure while eyeing the throne and pretending he did not almost soil his trousers. He fixes his gaze ahead as electric arcs dance across the tiles, knowing he is merely a heartbeat away from meeting a deity. He strides through floating debris with his silhouette stretched across the floor, where the air is stale enough to require a gas mask. Radiant beams filter through colorful blasts to spotlight the central seat, clearly signaling that a visitor is expected for this appointment. Ian drops all pretense and bellows that he has arrived to face her, proving he possesses either immense courage or a death wish. A colossal talon looms in the foreground, serving as a reminder that the architecture here was definitely not designed for short mortals. Belle reclines on her bony furniture-looking board, smirking that she never expected the little mortal to actually survive the journey. Rising with a tempest of white energy spiraling around her, she manages to appear both drop-dead gorgeous and lethal at once. She purrs a greeting to the future world ender, finally admitting he managed to conquer her little survival obstacle course without dying. Ian is finished with these annoying word puzzles, so he locks eyes with her to demand the reasoning behind all this. He insists on clarity regarding the Nornir system and why he was forced to play a deadly game of hide and seek. Our hero stands firm because he is not here for petty diversions, desiring only the raw facts behind his recent temporal rewind. Hell sports a sinister grin that suggests she finds his mounting irritation quite entertaining, almost as if she were watching reality TV. Extending a sharpened hand, she drops the bombshell about molding him into a cosmic menace, which sounds stressful for his weekend. Ihan echoes the title of ultimate villain back at her, struggling to grasp the concept of being trained for a celestial brawl. He glares upward, questioning why the fickle deity selected him specifically out of everyone else to handle the dirty laundry. Hell casually blames his inescapable destiny, because deities always love shifting the accountability onto the stars instead of their own whims. His gaze tightens at the mention of fate, since he clearly detests the idea that his biography was written before he was born. She defines his new career as a rival to the Aesir, tasked specifically with terminating Odin, which is quite the ambitious workload. She mentions that Loki and his divine peers are craving this exact outcome, turning him into a magical assassin for the elite. The shadows lengthen with foreboding words about what they expect from him, cranking up the tension to an unbearable level. Ihan remains utterly confused by the suggestion that he should off the Allfather, which is quite a hefty chore for a weekday. Pell grows chilly and dismissive, noting that his comprehension is irrelevant to her goals as he stops playing the polite host. Ihan boils over with rage, sick of functioning as a mere instrument in the elaborate board game played by these immortal jerks. She gently presses a digit to his mouth to hush him, murmuring that his distress is palpable as she stares right through him. Moving closer to taunt his bewilderment, she mocks his inability to fathom why a mortal must be a disposable chess piece. She drifts away through the sanctum, pausing to remind him that she is not finished with her ominous little lecture yet. Glancing back with a piercing intensity, she clarifies that this tale extends far beyond the drama of mere half-breed deities. She brushes his cheek for a final moment while starting her grand declaration, as the arcane energy begins to vibrate loudly. Violet mist envelopes Ihan as he starts vanishing, leaving him with a chilling warning that the world is marching toward ruin. Only text N. Her eyes light up with immense power, and she declares that Odin desires to control everything beneath his boot, making Ihan their only hope to stop him. Ihan reaches out in desperation as he is pulled away, screaming for her to pause because he still has a critical question to ask. Too late for that, buddy. She nonchalantly waves him off, instructing him to grow strong, and promises he will be counting down the minutes until they finally meet again. Ihan completely disappears within the swirling purple teleportation magic, yet another forced and abrupt exit courtesy of the goddess. Belle's eyes shine in the darkness, and she addresses an invisible entity, challenging them by asking if they intend to simply stand back and watch everything unfold. A mysterious, glowing orb floats nearby, suggesting that yet another ancient, meddling entity is lurking nearby in the shadows. The light responds in a deep, reverberating voice, pointing out that it doesn't recall inviting her to this meeting. Someone clearly woke up on the wrong side of the realm today. Back in the normal world, the brilliant sun shines through the gaps in the farce canopy. Welcome back to Earth, Did. Ihan wakes up on the grass, looking utterly annoyed, thinking to himself, great, the situation again. This progress thing is really exhausting. He covers his face in frustration, realizing that she ultimately answered zero of his questions. Typical divine behavior, wouldn't you say? A notification chimes as he collects himself. At least he received something to compensate for all his trouble. The system announces that Hell's present has finally materialized. I guess better late than never for a gift from the goddess of death. He just acquired a skill called Hell's Blessing, which completely nullifies abnormal status effects. Ihan gasps in stunned confusion, realizing that this is truly a literal lifesaver. Back in the temple, the glowing light orb speaks, saying, please excuse this old man's lack of manners, but I simply couldn't wait any longer. The light is actually Mimir, hovering close to Hell and Garma, excited that she finally had a face-to-face meeting with Ihan. Garma growls menacingly at the new visitor, but Mimir simply laughs it off, referring to him as a faithful companion. This glowing orb certainly possesses a great personality. Mimir quickly gets right to the point anyway, asking Hell how it went when she saw Ihan in person, clearly dying to get all the gossip. Hell looks contemplative, explaining that it is far too premature to judge, since the great enemy has only just taken his initial steps on this path. She casts a skeptical sidelong glance at the floating light, questioning if that is truly the case. She is definitely keeping her true thoughts concealed. Mimir's silhouette takes shape, revealing an old man with a long beard. He teases her, suggesting that it really looked like she might have taken a liking to him. Hell looks up toward the ceiling, letting out a soft sound as she considers the implications of the recent encounter. She finally admits it with a bright, genuine smile, saying that the great enemy's growth surpassed her expectations. Ian is officially making serious waves. She recalls him firmly holding his ground, noting that he actually overcame the obstacles she put in place just to reach her temple. A close-up on her face reveals her admission. I'm glad I misjudged him. High praise coming from the goddess of death. Mimir lights up with pure joy, proclaiming that this is a huge relief, easing his mind to know that the boy is progressing well. He is clearly in Nihan's corner. Hell narrows her eyes at Mimir, asking him if that truly was all he wanted, and stating that he must have something else he wants to discuss. Mimir attempts to play innocent, claiming he has absolutely no idea what she is implying. For a giant of wisdom, he is a remarkably poor liar. Hell calls him a devious old man, noting that his deceptive look strongly reminds her of her second brother. Of the shed. She points out that Ihan's causality lores were definitely skewed, indicating she suspects he is actually from the future. She laughs at the title Giant of Wisdom, declaring it outdated and a truly regrettable thing to say aloud. She claims Ihan lost his left eye to Odin's pool of wisdom, and honestly, this mythology is getting way too intense. Mimir's glowing orb hovers in the hall, while Hell aggressively demands to know the secret plot he and Loki are hatching. With a stare that could slice through granite, she is clearly determined to make the old guy sweat for his answers. Glowing with a golden hue, Mimir offers a sincere apology to Hell, sounding surprisingly regretful for once. He claims he wants to spill the beans, but it is just not time yet, because he loves playing the mysterious puppet master. Hell sighs and looks away, since she is a patient deity who has plenty of eternity to kill while waiting for things. Mimir acknowledges that Hell has a solid plan forming, even if they both realize a massive conflict is brewing on the horizon. Amidst drifting light, Hell notes that Ihan is still a rookie who will surely trip over many hurdles quite soon. She conjures a swirling sphere of violet magic, deciding that the poor boy is going to need a supernatural Sherpa. The final, brilliant spark appears to guide his way, marking the end of chapter 20 with a very mystical flashlight. With Mills Academy opening in a week, we are browsing a fancy mall where the rich kids buy their overpriced school supplies. Ihan releases a weary breath as the dawning reality of his role as an adversary starts to weigh him down. Park Harna catches him drifting into space, asking if his reflection is just too handsome or if something is actually wrong. She possesses an intuitive, clinical stare, proving she can spot a nervous student from a mile away without any effort. He brushes it off with a casual denial, so she simply shrugs and tells him to follow her to grab the remaining gear. Wandering alone, he is frustrated that his meeting with the goddess left him with zero answers despite all the drama. Glancing at his feet, he reflects on his chat with Hell and realizes he actually walked away with a decent prize. That prize is a broken EX rank buff called Hell's Blessing, which basically makes him immune to every annoying status effect. He browses his holographic menu while working, struggling to process how his stats managed to inflate so drastically. This collection of EX skills like Supreme God's Eye basically means he is cheating at life in the most dramatic fashion. He suspects these ranks are totally unheard of for most players, proving he is competing in a completely different league. Since these abilities defy the standard game mechanics, he is basically wielding powers that the developers never intended to exist. He assumes that if his lesser skills are this broken, then his Supreme God's Eye must be worth a king's ransom. While Hana leads away, he wonders why these Harfisir deities are going to such lengths to recruit an adversary. Remembering Hell's terrifying mission to assassinate Odin, he realizes this is less of a quest and more of a divine head job. He clenches his fist in determination, deciding it is time to stop overthinking everything and start putting in the actual effort. The store clerk gapes at the massive order, clearly having never witnessed such a ridiculous shopping spree in his life. The price tag of $299 million is enough zeros to make a normal person weep for their empty bank account. Ian swipes his card without flinching, leaving the crowd stunned that someone would spend millions on a temporary monosword. He glances at his smartphone, scrolling through a shopping list that seems to be infinite in its length and requirements. Only text and that guy looks completely zapped, as if hunting for supplies is somehow more draining than battling bone-chilling spectral reapers. Parna reviews the inventory list with him, questioning if that massive mountain of items is truly necessary, because it definitely seems endless. She acts as the ultimate guild navigator, cheerfully introducing herself as Parkarna representing the prestigious Lotus Guild. She mentions the representative wants to hand over a gift, seeing as his grand debut at Miller is approaching fast. Ihan is already eyeing the next boutique, wondering if she has spare time, since she refuses to squander a single moment. Skip ahead to him drowning in shopping bags, since he expected a simple miracle tonic or a pair of artifacts rather than this haul. He gazes at the opulent Megamal, bewildered by this display and questioning if the Lotus Guild basically owns this entire playground. Parner is charging ahead, urging him toward the armor section, but Ihan halts her with a sudden, desperate request for a pause. He checks his digital inventory and clarifies that he has no need for armor, as he is currently well equipped. He is still sporting that shadow armor from the Nightshade boss, a B-rank treasure that grants the conceal skill, which is legendary loot. He figures he will not stumble upon any superior gear in a generic boutique, even one this incredibly fancy and expensive. His gaze fixates on the concealed skill details, finally grasping that his current loadout is genuinely one of a kind. Parner is visibly stunned, noting that finding armor paired with such an elusive skill is practically impossible in this day and age. She suggests whether he might require an additional artifact with stealth properties to complement the set he already owns. She muses on the rarity of such items, but Ihan brushes off the idea, claiming he has absolutely no interest. He waves his hands dismissively, pretending he was merely rambling, and wonders aloud if anyone actually bothers to learn that skill anyway. He adds that obtaining such power requires pure dungeon luck, carefully shielding his own secrets from her curious gaze. Parna nods in total agreement, confirming that her own brother remains the sole raider and courier to possess the conceal ability. Ihan freezes in his tracks, questioning her about her sibling as the pieces of this puzzle finally snap into place. She stares at him like he's a total hermit, asking if he missed the news that Manager Park Soon-yi is her brother. Ihan conjures the image of the terrifying, scarred face, and suddenly everything about the representative makes perfect sense. Parna resumes her brisk pace, steering him toward the weapons instead, leaving him alone to process this sudden family bombshell. He asks if it is legitimately true, feeling rather bewildered since the family resemblance is clearly non-existent between them. He observes her moving away, thinking how wildly different she is from her menacing brother, as their auras are complete opposites. Unexpectedly, the system chimes again, confirming someone agrees with the user while green wisps begin swirling around his head. A sudden and stabbing migraine strikes him like a freight train, indicating that something nearby is reacting to his presence. His eye begins to glow with that haunting amber hue, and he realizes this radiance is definitely not part of the game. Parna notices something is amiss and whirls around, shouting his name and telling him to stay exactly where he is. A brilliant, golden flash of energy suddenly explodes right in the center of the crowded shopping mall walkway. Ihan gets swept up in a massive data spike, with a blinding radiance shielding him from the view of everyone else. Only text and the system notifications were stacking up like unread emails, announcing that Supreme Goods I had just acquired a spanking new, low-level ability, detection. It was EX rank detection, letting him calculate an item's value and see through illusions, making him essentially a working, human-sized X-ray machine. He stared blankly at the glowing display, completely baffled by the situation, as the Nornir system decided to activate the ability all on its own, without his input. Meanwhile, in another part of town, a vicious skirmish was concluding, with one contestant getting violently introduced to the training room floor. The defeated party gnashed his teeth in utter frustration, muttering under his breath that he had absolutely zero chance of winning this match. A dark shadow fell across the loser's face, belonging to Arnhoyen, who seemed completely disconnected from the brutal victory he had just achieved. He stood triumphantly over his vanquished enemy, enveloped in swirling white mana, looking so calm that he hadn't even managed to work up a light perspiration. The announcer made the official declaration, confirming that the duel was over and Arnhoyen had secured the predictable victory. From the spectator stands, a man in glasses observed with a cold, self-satisfied smirk, readily acknowledging that the victory had been almost trivially simple for the winner. Hoyen departed, leaving behind a crowd still buzzing with gossip, as the sheer gulf in ability between him and his opponent was undeniable, cementing his reputation as a future S-rank raider. He kept his gaze fixed on the floor, peering entirely bored and emotionally vacant, almost as if winning brought him absolutely zero satisfaction or pleasure. As he passed an older gentleman, a simple good job was offered, to which Hoyen replied with a completely hollow thank you, Fada. His father, however, wasn't satisfied, instructing him not to get too excited, since it was a match he was expected to win effortlessly anyway. The parenting here was certainly tough. Hoyen simply kept his eyes on the ground, his face obscured by his hair, muttering that he understood the situation perfectly. His father then ordered him to prepare for the next task on his schedule, mentioning he needed to run errands and that Hoyen should join him after showering. The pressure was truly relentless for the poor kid. His entire existence could be summed up in a single, depressing word, as he found himself completely trapped in a role he had never once chosen for himself. He stood beneath the showerhead, allowing the hot water to stream over him, yet it did nothing to cleanse the overwhelming sensation of being someone else's puppet. Leaning back against the tile wall with his eyes squeezed shut, he internally lamented being sick of this mechanical existence where his own will was irrelevant. He gazed up through the rising steam, peering completely shattered, knowing deep inside that this was not at all the type of raider he had ever wanted to become. The question haunted him, demanding to know where everything had been run. All at once, the system displayed a legendary artifact called the Misty Eel Tin, a growing branch containing mysterious magic power, granting the ability to detect magic itself. This A-rank passive still dramatically increased Marna's sensitivity to an extraordinary level, proving to be a truly game-changing artifact for anyone lucky enough to find it. Ihan halted immediately as soon as he read the name Misty Eel Tin, instantly recognizing just how incredibly significant this discovery was. A mental image of a golden branch embedded firmly in a piece of stone flashed through his mind, indicating exactly where the system was guiding him. He peeked around the nearest corner, detecting a distinct presence, and wondered if this, too, was simply another one of the system's silly little games. He spotted the future top raider himself, Arn Hoyon, working right by, looking as if he were carrying the entire weight of the world upon his young shoulders. We begin inside the enormous Miller's Mall, which was currently massive, but about to transform into an actual war zone in a very short amount of time. Inside the mall, Arn Hoyon was browsing equipment with his father, peasantly questioning if they really required so much, while his dad just kept pointing at increasingly costly items. His father, wearing stern-looking glasses, declared that all these purchases were solely for his benefit, clearly projecting some substantial, predefined expectations onto the poor boy. When Hoyen attempted to mention his mother's hospital bills, his father abruptly interrupted him with a sharp enough, revealing a truly toxic family dynamic. The geezer insists the costs are his personal headache, ordering Hoyen to pipe down and obsess over his drills. Defeated, Hoyen mutters a compliant yes father, resembling a captive inmate rather than a top-tier warrior in training. Peering under his cap, Hoyen reveals eyes that have completely checked out, acting like a robot on autopilot. Standing amidst a gossiping throng calling him a martial arts prodigy, he wonders why he is even standing there. He yanks his hoodie down, feeling like a caged zoo exhibit and questioning if this miserable path was his choice. A flashback reveals a younger, brighter Hoyen when he first unlocked his powers, wreathed in shimmering blue Marner. With his mother beaming and patting his head, the boy once genuinely cherished the idea of becoming a hero. While his family withered in shadows, he was a glimmer of light, standing in stark contrast to his icy father. Sadly that light became his father's favorite hardware, turning his childhood fantasies into a soul-crushing corporate dig. Hoyen feels like a discarded kitchen appliance now, just following orders while his inner fire has long since vanished. He stares into the abyss, doubting his ability to survive 3 years at Mills, feeling like a total failure. Abruptly the shopping center intercom starts popping and hissing, signaling that disaster is definitely on the menu. A loud broadcast echoes throughout the halls, announcing a dungeon collapse nearby, forcing everyone to freeze in place. Poyen looks around bewildered, knowing that having demons terrorize the city violates his memory of the original timeline. Panic-stricken staff urge everyone toward exits, and while pros are supposedly incoming, the situation is absolute anarchy. His father is already bolting for the door, shouting back to see if his son is following his selfish lead. The old man reminds him that he is a national treasure, showing he only cares about his expensive investment. He warns Hwayan that injuries could ruin his entrance exam odds, urging him to ignore the cottage entirely. Watching the panicked herd bolt for safety, Poyen stands frozen in a moment of intense moral tug-of-war. He knows the pros will arrive soon, but meanwhile, monsters are shredding the building and innocent people are falling. Under his cap, Poyen shows newfound resolve, realizing this moment could finally end his days as a puppet. He dashes forward with a heady thud, finally deciding to follow the heart of a true hero instead. His dad bellows for Poyen to stop immediately, but the kid doesn't even glance back at the Norse. He sees this as a golden opportunity to prove his autonomy, finally shouting his independence from the rooftops. He bolts through the abandoned mall, a solitary silver-haired figure sprinting against a backdrop of complete ruin. He just wants to see if the current version of himself could actually make his mother feel proud. Picturing his mother in her hospital bed provides all the fuel he needs to chase true or power. Abruptly he halts his pace, having detected a sinister presence lurking within the nearby dark corners. The puny goblin-like creature lunges from the gloom, looking absolutely famished and ready for a nasty brawl. He is not fighting a solo opponent, as a massive swarm of monsters closes in from every direction. Only text N. Poyen experienced a complete system freeze, his personal operating system crashing, as genuine fear finally registered, leaving him drenched in a cascade of cold sweat. His limbs stubbornly refused to respond, a bizarre rebellion, as the sheer overwhelming tension caused his very pupils to quiver like a poorly set jello mold, right there amid a monstrous demonic convention. The screeching fiends lunged straight for him, a human-shaped buffet, leaving him utterly unprotected and prompting a defeated, exasperated curse word to tumble from his mouth. Poyen, utterly ensnared by his own terror, could only stare at his shaking hand, futilely commanding it to respond. A massive, blowing text box practically shouted his blunder, condescendingly pointing out that he had precisely landed himself in the very epicenter of impending peril. The ravenous demonic swarm was just seconds from reducing him to a pile of expensive spare parts, signaling the rather abrupt curtain call for our resident prodigy. The demonic assailant executed a mid-air lunge, a rusty knife blending, with its target unmistakably Hwayan's Windep, clearly not a fan of conversation. A commanding voice sliced through the cacophony, sardonically inquiring why he was quaking in his boots over a paltry, bottom-tier demon, considering his lifelong aspirations of becoming a renowned, fearless raider. That assertive voice was practically at his back, and Hwayan, thoroughly disoriented, slowly lifted his head, peering completely out of sorts. A single, bone-jarring kick sent the demon airborne, resembling an ugly, unguided projectile, as a new arrival dramatically saved the moment. The shockwave sent Hwayan's hair flying, giving him a dramatic, wind-blown look, as he stared, utterly spellbound, at his impressive, sudden savior. Yoon stood his ground, radiating an almost offensive level of composure amidst the unfolding bloodbath, a veritable human barricade positioned flawlessly between Hwayan and the drooling monstrosities. The tight shot captured Yoon's stoic expression as he calmly gazed at the trembling young man below, who was barely managing to whisper his name through chattering teeth. Hwayan stayed, pupils dilated to dinner plate size, gulping down air as if he'd just run a marathon, absolutely unable to fathom a peer wielding such unbelievable, depth-tier abilities. Recognizing that distinct silver mop, Yoon asked if he was speaking to Hwayan. Previously, in a blast from the past, Yoon was spotted acquiring a peculiar lump of stone, whimsically named mistletoe, from the obscure item booth for an eye-watering 50 million won, officially cementing his status as a certified big spender. In the background, Park Har-nar was absolutely spiraling, loudly demanding to know why on earth he was browsing the notoriously dubious unknown item corner, all while yelling his name. Yoon cast a sly, knowing smirk at the seemingly ordinary stone, internally pondering if the uninitiated truly perceived it as nothing more than a mundane pebble, while he, with privileged insight, knew he'd stumbled upon actual, honest-to-goodness buried riches. He quickly stashed the precious lump, assuring Har-nar it was inconsequential, while already mentally sketching out his imminent, powerful upgrade. He swiftly decided against purchasing any mundane, off-the-rack weaponry, clearly preferring to execute his own distinct, but conventional battle strategies. Har-nar's face tightened with concern as the speakers coughed back to life with an ominous crackle. The ominous declaration of a dungeon breach permeated the entire area, yet Yoon, being the wonderfully unconventional type, shooed the stampede towards the emergency exits and instead sprinted directly into the fray. An intense orange glow ignited Yoon's eye, his mind instantly fixating on the demons, officially engaging his prime battle programming. He shot forward like a hypercharged rocket, leaving Har-nar's frantic calls echoing uselessly in his swirling, dusty trail. Ignoring conventional entry points, he dramatically burst through a colossal blast window, sending glittering fragments flying as he fearlessly plunged into the thick of the combat. His descent concluded flawlessly within a dramatic puff of settling debris, a landing so impeccably executed that it practically reeked of protagonist-level flair and undeniable narrative significance. He calmly took in the street, noting it was absolutely teeming with an ugly unwelcome, monstrous gathering of demonic fiends. Activating a colossal Marna circle beneath his boots, its roar power made the very ground visibly groan and dramatically spiderweb under the immense, arcane strain. A colossal magical explosion detonated, utterly obliterating the core of the demon horde, leaving only flying debris and thick, acrid smoke to choke the surrounding air. Yoon, totally unfazed, worked right through the smoldering crater, calmly noting to himself that there were significantly more enemies than initially predicted. Zooming in on that intense orange iris, he realizes clearing the zone quickly is vital to avoid unnecessary casualties. Unleashing another humongous bolt of yellow electricity, he obliterates 2 more demonic squads in a single flash. He bounces across debris and rooftops with the graceful agility of a seasoned circus performer. With a gravity-defying dive, he crushes a monster skull beneath his boot, proving his savage combat prowess. He halts to scan the vicinity, feeling a familiar vibe that hints at a previous acquaintance. There sits Hoyan looking like a sad puppy who misplaced his favorite accessory rather than his hat. Hoyan's shaking and mumbling about his missing cap like it was his only source of inner peace. Ihan ponders running into the famously brilliant Hoyan here, well aware of the lad's legendary destiny. Hoyan gazes up in a daze, leading Ihan to realize they are both students at the Miles Academy. The notification verifies the truth, confirming that he indeed attends the same elite school. Ihan saunters past him, declaring he needs assistance and refusing to accept any excuses today. Hoyan shrieks for him to watch out as a demon attempts a sneak attack from the rear. Ihan manifests a gargantuan golden fireball without even glancing back, totally claiming he was aware. Focusing on Hoyan's petrified expression, Ihan clarifies that keeping civilians safe from these fiends is mandatory. Casting a frigid glare over his shoulder, he asks if the boy plans to decorate the floor forever. He demands that the lad pull himself together and grab his gear, providing the perfect kick in the pants. Finding his inner spine at last, Hoyan stands up and confirms his readiness to join the fray. He reflects internally on the strange sensation that washed over him after those words were spoken. Clenching his fists and staring at his boots, the uncontrollable tremors finally vanish from his limbs. The paralyzing dread that kept him hostage is dissipated, signaling the end of his mental stagnation. Observing Ihan stride toward the beasts, Hoyan decides he has finally discovered a proper hero to emulate. Ihan glances back with a smoky grin, contemplating the difficult tasks that lie ahead for them now. Drawing his blade with newfound clarity, Hoyan vows to protect others as his ambitions reignite for the sequel. A panoramic view shows the Malin ruins, with the Jew strutting through the haze as if they merely joked. Ihan demands to know if he understands the aggravate skill, telling him to stop daydreaming and start toning mups. He notes the goblins infesting the area and instructs the kid to round them up like a professional commander. Hoyan replaces his anxiety with pure grit, letting azure sparks swirl around him while shedding his former hesitance. With a swift flick of his steel, Hoyan prepares for action, fully embracing his role in this chaotic battle. Taking a steadying breath to calm his racing heart, the supposed genius prepares to make his glorious debut. The system alerts that he has deployed the cry of aggravation, a tanking maneuver far too advanced for any rookie. Only text N. Hoyan detonated a colossal magical burst, sending ripples across the landscape. The interface helpfully confirmed every fiend within a 50-yard circumference was now blaring at him, declaring full-scale hostility instantly triggered. Those dim-witted little monsters instantly perked up, their heads swiveling abruptly toward the racket. The ability pulsed with a mesmerizing sapphire glow, pulling them closer like clueless bugs to a captivating porch light. An additional horde of those grotesque green creatures emitted a synchronized wail. The aggravation war cry was clearly succeeding flawlessly, transforming Hoyan into an absolute, undeniable fiend attractor. The fiend's pupils burned a mincing crimson as they initiated an all-out assault. Their entire attention was now laser-focused squarely on Hoyan, completely disregarding all other distractions around them. Ihan observed the entire pandemonium unfold from his vantage point, sporting a rather shrewd expression. He mentally acknowledged that Hoyan possessed an elevated status, sufficient to expertly execute such an intricate ability. His thoughts drifted to the initial course of events, prior to his backward journey through time. Hoyan's pinnacle achievement in standing had only ever attained a B-tier classification. He recalled how, despite the massive buzz, Hoyan swiftly crumbled beneath the weight of expectation. That unfortunate demise was precisely why everyone dubbed him the mastermind of calamitous luck. Ihan's ember gaze radiated an icy keenness. Who gives a darn? He mused internally, peering utterly unmoved by the young man's prime steps or impending downfalls. Stark white lettering against a dark canvas emphatically stated the crucial lesson. An abysmal starting point is absolutely repairable, embodying the foundational tenet of Ihan's entire worldview. He recognized Hoyan's burgeoning capabilities as an exceptionally handy asset for achieving his personal ambitions. Clearly, he was currently enlisting this individual for his upcoming elite unit. Hoyan found himself right in the epicenter of the mayhem, encompassed by crackling electricity and gyrating magical energy. He roared out a resounding affirmative, finally engaging in combat purely for his own sake. The gigantic golden magical attack instantly disintegrated a goblin with just one impact. The sheer energetic force unleashed by someone his youthful years was utterly mind-boggling. Hoyan then executed a deadly, sweeping cut, his weapon slicing through the atmosphere accompanied by an acute noise. The green creatures were literally plummeting everywhere around him, as if gravity had a personal vendetta. The conflict concluded almost as swiftly as it had erupted. Ihan and Hoyan remained upright and composed, surrounded by the smoldering mounds of fiendish remains. From the dissipating fumes emerged a fellow in a beige duster, sporting a thoroughly confused expression as he queried, "What in the heavens is this?" While working at the scene of brutal destruction, both young men pivoted to confront the fresher rifle. Hoyan appeared utterly spent, whereas Ihan remained perfectly composed, displaying his usual unflappable demeanor. The camera zoomed onto the civil servant, Park Kyung-hoon. His appearance suggested a fatigued corporate employee who had inadvertently stepped straight into a genuine, terrifying crisis. Kyung-hoon presented himself as an administrator for the country's Raider Guild hierarchy. He then posed the monumental inquiry, inquiring whether these two individuals had single-handedly eliminated every one of those green pests. Hoyan nervously fumbled out a rapid affirmative, whereas Ihan simply offered the bureaucrat a nonchalant, unblinking gaze. Kyung-hoon conducted an internal identity confirmation. He pinpointed Hoyan's unique ashen coiffure and eye color, pondering whether this young man actually represented the mythical intellect. He massaged his nape, confessing utter cluelessness regarding how to justify the situation to his superiors. The pair of adolescent students single-handedly conquering a small monster swarm presented an absolute administrative catastrophe for him. The on-screen words underscored his astonishment. The second individual also appeared to be approximately the same vintage. Nevertheless, this duo independently managed to dispatch every single one of the fiends. Ihan's gaze, icy and penetrating, pierced the hush as he remarked his prior intention to address that very subject. Command over the burgeoning circumstances swiftly transitioned into his hands. Ihan proffered a plan for obfuscation, conveyed to the superiors that the guild eliminated the entities. He shrewdly observed that 0 people would possibly credit the participation. Kang Hoon's expression turned doubtful, highlighting that Ihan's proposition verged on illegality. This man was someone who valued pristine administrative records above all. Ihan replied instantaneously. Moreover, he quipped, not a single individual is currently observing our antics. He further emphasized the sheer dearth of operational monitoring cameras across this ravaged locale. Johan ultimately offered a small, consenting gesture. His logic dictated that since public recognition held no appeal for them, he might just streamline his personal affairs. Ihan's eyes found Hoyan's, informing the youth he would nonetheless receive recompense for the mission. This demonstrated his careful guardianship of his freshest acquisition. He instructs the suit to hand his pay up to Hoyan and zip his lip about his involvement, leaving Hoyan totally stunned. Ihan finds petty cash trivial when he has the Lotus Guild's black card, as he is aiming for a massive payday. Cultivating a debt from someone like Arn Hoyan is a much smarter move, since he prefers playing the line game. Johan mentions the task is doable, but Hoyan finally regains his speech and shrieks for him to halt. Bewildered and fuming, Hoyan questions why he would forfeit the glory after crushing every single opponent so effortlessly. Ihan flashes a cryptic grin, aiming to stay under the radar until his enrollment at Mills Academy begins. He brushes off further prying by claiming he has his reasons, leaving poor Hoyan staring in complete disbelief. Ihan reminisces about his past self, back when he lacked any real power and was just a mediocre D-rank nobody. Clenching his fist, he fixates on vengeance, knowing his path to retribution must remain strictly stealthy and subtle. A vision of his younger self emerges, reminding him he must cultivate strength far from his father's influence. Crimson streaks flash across the frame, highlighting his burning desire to finish his target when the timing is right. Hoyan wrestles with his conscience, unsure how to handle a reward for an achievement he could never manage alone. Watching Ihan stroll away, he feels deep down that claiming credit for another warrior's success is just wrong. However, thoughts of his ailing mother surface, and he realizes this windfall could finally cover her medical expenses. He longed to be an honorable raider, but his empty bank account proves to be a far more brutal master. A grim realization takes hold, imagining his mother fading away while he clings to pride instead of paying bills. Could he live with the regret, as he battles a grueling choice between his moral code and his family? Noticing the shift in the air, Ihan realizes Hoyan's intense glaive suggests this issue runs deeper than simple vanity. He concludes that the kid needs a slight psychological shove, deciding it is time to steer him toward the right answer. He pivots to suggest that Hoyan should look at the situation with a cooler, more logical perspective. He notes that Hoyan's bravery saved lives, implying that any hesitation could have led to a bloody catastrophe. He insists that he earned the loot, proving Ihan is quite skilled at absolving people of their heavy burdens. Hoyan gazes at the floor as his guard crumbles, finally whispering that he understands the gravity of the choice. A stark message pops up, declaring that his unnecessary hesitation was a foolish mistake he should have avoided. Hoyan concedes that losing loved ones would render his goals empty, so he vows to eventually repay this kindness. Observing from the periphery, Johan quietly marvels at how adeptly Ihan manipulates the emotions of his peers. The official complies with the request, privately labeling the mysterious donor as a truly remarkable individual. Ihan departs with a wave, knowing he has better ways to spend his day than acting as a nanny. Hoyan cries out in desperation, begging for a name and contact info because he refuses to lose this connection. Only text N. Ihan tosses a Johnny wave back with a grin, telling Hoyan to skip the formalities since they are birthday twins. Given the shared path to the academy, they will be practically inseparable, and he is already mapping out their high school antics. Poor Hoyan stands frozen in disbelief, struggling to process how another teenager could possess such an aura of sheer dominance. The narrative arc concludes, and my rigorous training for Miles has reached its final stage of completion. Fast forward to the bustling Miles Academy opening day, where the auditorium is vibrating with the restless energy of loud freshmen. Whispers spread like wildfire as classmates point out the martial arts prodigy Arn Hoyan, acknowledging that he is built quite differently. A mystery girl with raven hair glides past, prompting everyone to pause and admire her striking and elegant appearance. The camera pans to the newcomer who radiates such an icy, blue vibe that she makes the other rookies look like total amateurs. Her identity is revealed in a dramatic splash text as the one and only Cona. Ihan observes the scene with Yujing, noting that in his rightfully hogging the spotlight as a future powerhouse raider, he contemplates recruiting her into his inner circle eventually, though he senses she is an entirely unique breed of student. No need to stress, he figures, since his squad consisting of Saiyan, Poyan, and Yi Soon is already rock solid. Yujin catches his wondering gaze and jokes that gorking so intensely at pretty girls is honestly a bit of a weird look. A focus shot highlights Cona, clearly signaling that she is destined to become a central pillar of this chaotic tale. The event kicks off as a booming voice echoes through the hall to offer the students a warm, official greeting. A man with a smile wide enough to be suspicious steps forward, introducing himself as their esteemed chairman, Dron. Ian's expression sours instantly, as the sight of Dron drags up haunting memories from his previous timeline. The jagged, brutal vision of a bloody Kim Yujin flashes by, reminding him of the grim fate he is desperate to overwrite. Shifting his focus to the living, breathing Yujin beside him, he vows to rewrite her tragic ending no matter what. He urges her to stay vigilant, reminding her that a place like Mills is basically a playground for disaster. Yujin chuckles at his sudden concern, promising that she is tough enough to handle whatever the academy throws her way. Remembering she was once a legendary top mage, he stiffens his resolve to ensure she survives this dangerous gauntlet. Chairman Du continues his monologue, announcing that the time for the formal entrance ceremony has finally arrived. He flashes a wicked smirk, remarking that a standard procedure would be far too tedious for such gifted students. He starts to hint at the truth, reaching out a hand as the ambient energy in the room shifts drastically. With a sinister, toothy grin, he reveals that a special surprise has been cooked up for the opening ceremony. The game is simple, as every student must scavenge for name tags within a confined, high-stakes combat zone. The hunt for the new arrivals begins now, officially turning this gathering into a complete and utter battle royale. A colossal magic sigil flares to life beneath their feet, signaling that the entire student body is being forcibly relocated. Confusion reigns as someone spots the magic circle, and a blinding flash of white light whisks them all away. Only text N. Yujin lets out a frantic shriek while the glowing radiance devours her, sporting a face of pure, unadulterated terror. The floor decides to quit its job, causing her to stumble right into the clutches of a mysterious, bottomless void. Yihun bellows her name and launches himself forward, mentioning that taking a tumble here would be a total health hazard. He snatches her palm with a fleshy smack at the final second, refusing to let her visit Nanya without a proper chaperone. He yanks her into a bone-crushing embrace while sparkly energy spins, basically turning himself into a fleshy piece of armor. The transport finishes with a dazzling burst of sapphire radiance. Shift focus to Park Sun-yi, who points out that our hero is officially starting his first shift at the school. So Yoon-doon stands nearby feeling salty, lamenting the fact that she whiffed on sending a simple, supportive text message. Sun-yi wonders if this year's freshman hazing still lasts for 72 grueling hours of pure misery. Sun-gun appears stressed, mentioning they are basically ghosting him since phones won't work for the next 3 days straight. Sun-yi admits he handled the texting duties yesterday, prompting her to pry into what exactly he typed behind her back. Wearing a cheeky grin, Sun-yi whips out his mobile device to spill the beans on his secret correspondence. Returning to the arena, our duo has touched down in a vibrant woodland paradise under a perfectly cloudless canopy. Yuyun looks ready to donate her lunch to the grass, while Yihun stares blankly and asks if she is surviving. Out of nowhere, the dark silhouette pops up behind some bark, proving that creepy stalkers are already on the clock. Zoom in on that neon tangerine eyeball, as Yihun identifies the lurker and wonders why that brat is here. Behold Coinar, lurking in the darkness while radiating her usual aura of icy, high-fashion lethality and quiet intimidation. Yihun recalls her destiny, knowing she is slated to be the next S-rank monster hunter following in Songgun's footsteps. He remembers her numbers, specifically that 92 magic score, labeling her the prodigy meant to flip the wizarding world sideways. Inside the workspace, Songgun checks the boy's message, which basically tells her to stop being such a nervous wreck. Focus on the girl's features, meaning this little hunt just became way more interesting. The scene shifts to the Miller Academy hub, a futuristic bunker built specifically for instructors to monitor every single student action. Several teachers stomp through the corridor, guided by grumpy-looking guys who clearly haven't laughed since the turn of the century. The faculty gossips about the new blood, noting that Arnhoyen is such a stud that global syndicates are already thirsty. Regarding the magicians, they mention that Aina, Yuyun, and Suhyek all hit 90+ scores, marking them as a current elite crop. Kim Seok-D points out that a few kids swapped majors, though the paperwork is still a mess, showing his inner perfectionist. Du Janes lumps in his seat with a bored expression, arguing that fickle students who switch roles like sucks are trash. The narrator explains that despite the high average, some standouts exist, while the regular nobody's training are just generic fodder. Arnhoyen appears once more, acting all aloof, representing the peak performance that every other aspiring fighter tries to reach. Du Jane flashes a creepy grin, labeling mediocre kids as mere bricks for true elites, proving he won't be collecting any best educator trophies. Waving that tiny remote around, he pitches a second shot at Awakening, sounding more like a creepy cult leader than a principal. We catch a grim glimpse of raiders drowning in crimson, as Jane assumes sacrificing 100 C ranks to forge 1 A rank is a total bargain. He considers the losers as lacking basic merit, which is a pretty savage way to look at human life. This guy literally treats his students like cheap, disposable AA batteries meant for the trash. Watching over his turf, the chairman figures his job is cherry-picking rare gems for some mysterious entity, leaving us wondering who pulls his strings. Twisting a ring on his finger, he mumbles that time is running short for his shady little operation. The hunt occurs within an artificial pocket dimension conjured by high-level sorcery, resembling a miniature galaxy shoved into a glass ball. Mastery over time and space makes this place the ultimate deadly classroom, while Yuyun eyes a fake sun, feeling the ominous vibes. It is serious business, as about 5% of the recruits wash out during this yearly gauntlet. Flunking this challenge means your promising career as a raider gets deep six before the ink even dries. Puddled in the bushes, Yejing and Yihan look exhausted, realizing this test exists solely to expose their glaring weaknesses. Yihan scouts the perimeter, urging Yejing to stay alert because these ruthless seniors would sell their own mothers for points. Out of nowhere, Ina struts into the clearing with her flowing dark mane, looking every bit like a hunter stalking a snack. She is a massive headache for Yihan, who knows from his past life that she is a wild card he simply cannot handle. Yarn is back with that unsettling smile, ready to drop the hammer on the official competition guidelines. His mug pops up on floating holographic screens everywhere, announcing he will now break down the terms of the freshman slaughter. First up, players are capped at C-rank abilities, which really throws a massive wrench into our hero's combat strategy. The objective is elementary, snatch name badges from rivals to stack up credits for the upcoming term. The scoring is totally rigged, offering 10,000 for a senior win but 100 grand for an underdog upset, which is pure bait. Yihan squints, calculating how this restrictive ranking system effectively neuters his entire combat kit. He realizes his lightning chain is off the table, forcing him to innovate quickly if he wants to survive this nonsense. However, he spots a sneaky loophole, since the boss never explicitly banned unique skills, giving him a hidden ace up his sleeve. The chairman signs off with a chirpy wish for a pleasant time, which coming from him sounds like a malicious prank. He also notes that skill output is nerfed to 10% for safety, which is just fancy torque for dreading out the suffering. Gazing toward the heavens, Yihan mutters a curse, totally unimpressed by the chairman's pathetic attempt at feigning kindness. Ina radiates icy indifference, while Yihan understands the chairman is just calling the herd to extract the most lethal specimens. The narrative clarifies the boss's wicked agenda, which is basically weeding out the trash to keep only the elite. With talent being the only currency that matters, Gajin looks visibly rattled, finally grasping that the academy is just a shark tank. Ihan signals Yejin to move, insisting they secure a bunker right away since they are stuck in this hellhole for 72 hours. The story notes that this pocket realm is littered with various survival gear hidden away for the lucky ones. Only text N. Between the nasty debuff traps, life-giving pools, and a spooky forest, this hellhole is basically a deranged carnival. You must secure food and a sturdy base first, since nobody plots a tactical victory while shivering or dying of hunger. Securing shelter was a top priority, and Ihan is definitely channeling his inner grizzly bear survival expert right now. Yejin spots Sioana loitering nearby, questioning if recruiting such a lone wolf might actually increase their odds. She reckons An is just another magic student, and having extra meat shields is always smart in this brutal game. Ihan is hesitant because while the girl is a literal human nuke, he is terrified of her erratic personality. Remembering a past vision of an cloaked in chaotic white energy, he knows she is a complete wildcard. He recalls a broadcast from his previous life where this elite raider eventually hit a very messy downward spiral. Apparently, she just snapped, losing her grip on sanity and her temper simultaneously. Her breakdown caused a massive catastrophe for everyone around her, making her a working liability. He warns Yejin that trusting her is risky, questioning if she can guarantee this wild card won't stab them. He gestures toward An, whose suspicious glare makes it obvious that she finds them about as trustworthy as snakes. The tension between Ihan and An is so thick you could carve it, vibrating with pure mutual distrust. Yejin interjects, claiming An reminds her of a younger, moodier, and much lonelier version of Ihan. Before he can protest, Yejin sprints toward her, leaving a flabbergasted Ihan screaming for her to halt. Yejin chirps an invitation, suggesting that since they are all fellow mages, perhaps they should just team up, and appears at them with a sharp golden gaze, scanning for any hidden daggers or shady ulterior motives. Ihan concedes that solo mage life is a death sentence, so forming a squad is the only logical path. And it just stares blankly, clearly bewildered by this random display of unprompted, sunshine-filled hospitality. Out of nowhere, the breeze shifts and a giant vortex of sand begins howling around their heads. Two shadows crash into the dirt with excessive force, signaling that the bullying seniors have finally arrived. Chin Junsung and Kwon Soil seem to be enjoying this way too much, with Junsung laughing about their easy haul. Blonde senior Soil looks bewildered, claiming she only picked up the energy of two targets nearby. She gestures at the little trio, her expression morphing from smug confidence to total, wide-eyed disbelief. Junsung gorks at Ihan, suddenly turning ghostly pale as he realizes the kid is radiating absolutely nothing. Ihan holds his ground with icy resolve, recognizing that these two are clearly brawlers rather than spellcasters. Yejin begins to lose her mind, babbling about whether they should bowl since those muscle-bound seniors are lethal. Ihan stays planted like a rock, insisting that fleeing is pointless because those hunters will just track them down. He recalls Soil possessing a terrifying tracking ability that spans hundreds of kilometers, making escape a total fantasy. Soil's eyes ignite with a glowing aura as her target-locking skill engages, marking them for an inevitable beatdown. Only text N. Ihan realizes that if they don't flatten these two now, more seniors will eventually swarm them like a pack of starving wolves. Junsung acts all tough and tells Soil to stay sharp, though he admits that haughty over there gives off a weird vibe. Laughing, he charges with a giant blade, bragging that as a freshman, they have definitely mastered this event long ago. He bellows for everyone to watch as he prepares to flatten them, then brings his weapon down with a heady thud. Ihan gives him a sly sideways glance, already cooking up a nasty surprise for this arrogant senior who peaked in high school. Blocking the strike with his bare arm, Ihan doesn't even blink despite the bone-shaking force of the impact. Junsung stands there with his jaw dragging on the floor, stunned that some magic nerd just parried his steel with skin. Soil snarks from the side, telling the fat loser that she warned him there was something deeply off about that guy. Looking utterly bored, Ihan remarks that it has been ages since he dealt with such a mediocre, student-level sword swing. Soil tells Junsung to wake up because her gut says this freshman is absolutely not a normal student at all. Junsung grinds his teeth and insists it was just a lucky block, desperately clinging to his bruised and fragile ego. He shrieks that he would surely recognize any freshman that's skilled, then proceeds to unleash a frantic, messy flurry of slashes. Panting like a marathon runner, Junsung loses his marbles and screams in frustration while Ihan effortlessly avoids every single swing. Ihan glides around like a nimble shadow, treating the frantic blade strikes as if he were dancing with a clumsy toddler. He closes in to grab Junsung's arm, dryly asking how he managed to survive this line with such a pathetic physique. Ihan lands a punch that shatters the senior's guard, sending him face first into the dirt with an unceremonious thud. Sioana watches in stunned silence, having never seen a mage fight like a seasoned brawler from the streets. Ihan looms over his victim, coldly offering 3 seconds to drop the name tag or suffer the consequences of his arrogance. With orange eyes glowing, Ihan orders him to drop the lewd and vanish, proving the real boss has finally joined the academy. Shaking with terror on the ground, Junsung is just happy to be alive as Marna shards dance around his frantic face. He experiences a total mental breakdown, unable to fathom why a magic freshman is currently using him as a floor mat. Ihan looms like a dark phantom with burning eyes, making Junsung wonder if this kid is actually planning to commit murder. Ihan delivers his coldest remark yet, proving he is a complete menace who truly loves a good dramatic exit line. A massive punch levels the senior, leaving him with a headache that will likely last well into the next century. Kwon Soyeon watches her partner get deleted, realizing the mission has shifted from hunting to a desperate sprint for survival. The blue pillar of light signals the end for Junsung, confirming that the first prey has officially been removed from play. Instructors in the control room go ballistic, shocked to see a freshman playing the game with such savage, aggressive energy. The leaderboard explodes as Men Yihan racks up points, basically treating the semester like a speedrun challenge on day 1. Instructor Jang Yisu stares at the display in shock, struggling to accept that some nobody named Yihan is dominating. She asks who he is to deafening silence, realizing the academy just got a massive wake-up call from an unknown talent. Only text N. The instructors were scrambling around like headless chickens trying to verify the data. Instructor Jang Yisu insisted the results were flawless, yet they kept rechecking the system, fully convinced that a freshman couldn't possibly do this without triggering an alarm. Instructor Kim Jae-yeon gave her official thumbs up, certifying everything on her side was totally legit. The mystery surrounding this overpowered new kid was making the academy staff question the life choices. Chairman Do Jiren just sat there, wearing that infuriating, smug grin that could launch 1,000 ships. He wasn't surprised at all, which, in a room full of panicked instructors, was far more unsettling than a freshman breaking the system. Up close, the chairman looked like a proud parent who had just watched his child win the lottery, or perhaps a particularly high-stakes chess match. He clearly had big, slightly nefarious plans in store for our main character, Ihan. Back on the field, Kwon Seol was absolutely fuming, screaming at nothing in particular as he processed her partner's humiliating defeat. She was completely unhinged by the realization that her plans were unraveling. Ihan, ever efficient, was already lining up his next target. He yelled at Yu-young to get ready for action and accept his party invite, leaving Yu-young struggling to keep her head above water amidst the pandemonium. Yu-young glanced at her system notifications, confirming the party request. She watched Ihan's back and wondered if he'd always been this terrifying this run, feeling like she was getting a front row seat to a superhero origin story. Seoin remained hidden in the background, staff at the ready, watching the chaos unfold like a spectator at a particularly strange tense match. She was silently analyzing the potential of her new teammate with intense scrutiny. Seoil ground her teeth together, mentally cursing her partner for being utterly useless. The situation had just escalated from bad to catastrophic. She knew that facing a 3-on-1 fight was a guaranteed death sentence. The camera pulled back to show the trio of Yihan, Yejun, and Ina looking like a well-oiled machine ready for a high-level boss raid. Soyeon finally realized that even if she ignored the other two freshmen, this fight was far too dangerous for her. Soyeon tightened her grip on her twin daggers, her eyes narrowing like a cat preparing to pounce. Her plan was to take out just one of them and get away as fast as possible, choosing the path of least resistance over certain doom. Soyeon vanished in a sudden, high-speed blur. She was moving so quickly she looked less like a person and more like a barely perceptible smudge against the bright white snow. She materialized right in front of Yejun in the blink of an eye, causing Yejun to let out a small yelp of surprise. Yejun had been completely caught flat-footed by the senior's sudden, overwhelming speed. Yejun, however, didn't panic for a second. Instead, she immediately began channeling a defensive order spell, swirling blue mana around her staff to prepare a powerful counterblast. Yihan watched the entire exchange with a smug smirk, mentally noting that her choice of action wasn't entirely foolish. He was dissecting Soyeon's desperate move with almost clinical precision. Soyeon's strategy was brutally simple: rush in, force case with a quick attack, spot an opportunity, and make a run for it. It was the most logical plan available when faced with a rapidly deteriorating situation. Before Soyeon could connect, a massive wall of blue mana erupted between them, blocking her path. The resulting power level was undeniably higher than anyone expected from a student, let alone a freshman. Soyeon was completely stunned, trying to figure out how Yu-young had managed to react to her overwhelming speed. She certainly hadn't anticipated the childhood friend having reflexes that were superior to most seniors. Yejun's eyes lit up with an intense orange glow. The narrator quickly chimed in, noting that Soyeon's entire plan hinged on Yejun being a basic, average individual, which, as we all know, was absolutely not the case. Yejun shouted a magical incantation, causing powerful water chains to lash out and ensnare the senior. Soyeon barely managed to leap back just in time, letting out a frustrated groan as he avoided capture. Soyeon clenched her daggers tightly, her breathing becoming noticeably heavy. The fact that she was being pushed into a corner by a couple of freshmen was severely wounding her pride and probably her ego. Soyeon was suddenly hit with a massive barrage of mana projectiles. She took multiple hits all over her body as the freshmen continued to exert relentless pressure on her. Yejun commanded the battlefield entirely, her staff glowing as he pitted magic against Soyeon's raw speed. She looked like a completely different individual, as if her battle mode persona had taken over entirely. Ihan watched the duel unfold, his arm crackling with latent energy. He mused that he should probably step in, concerned that even with her newfound power, the senior might still be too much for Yejun to tackle solo. All of a sudden, a new and powerful chant started up, Holy Light of Volfheim. A Bitpour's button icon materialized in the air, signifying the use of a high-tier ultimate skill. Seoina stepped forward to finish the lengthy incantation, form a radiant holy sword. Her eyes shone with a terrifying, unnerving calmness as the spell came to fruition. The colossal, brilliant pillar of divine light plummeted from the sky. Fraction of Volfheim. The attack looked less like a student spell and more like a high-end S-rank ultimate ability from a video game. Ihan was completely stunned into silence. He was witnessing firsthand the terrifying power of the genius he remembered from his future timeline. As the holy sword began to fully solidify, the radiant blade effortlessly pierced right through Kwon's soul, as if she were made of tissue paper. The speed and strength involved were clearly operating on a different plane of existence. Soul collapsed face first into the snow, coughing up a small cloud of mourner. She let out a frustrated groan, realizing her hunting expedition had just concluded with total, absolute humiliation. She labels the trio absolute freaks, and the system confirms it by announcing player Kwon's soul has been kicked to the curb. Rewards are rolling out, and Kim Yo-eun bags 50,000 points for her hard work, panting like she just finished a marathon. Sayelina grabs 50,000 points too, acting totally oblivious while wondering if she just interrupted a moment, proving she has zero chill. Yo-eun beams with joy, insisting she only triumphed because of her, already acting like Ina is her new soul sister. Ian stares at Ina, calculating her hidden potential and betting to know if her earlier offer still holds for a deal. He observes she is quiet, suspicious, yet undeniably talented, deciding she is clearly worth keeping around for the squad. Ina glances at him with a subtle side-eye, finally choosing to drop her icy defenses and let the group in. A system notification chimes that a new party is official, boasting the dream team of Leaderman Yihan plus members Yo-yeon and Sayelina. Over in the nightmare forest, the glowing blue shelter sits amidst purple trees like a cozy oasis, provided you ignore the murderous beasts. The senior spots a massive footprint, noting signs that others have passed by and are tracking those newbies like hungry hunting dogs. Two seniors plot in the woods, fuming about the freshmen who swiped the ginseng and soil, itching to serve up some payback. The boss orders everyone to halt the search and simply stand guard, setting up a stakeout to watch for their target. They lurk in the shadows watching the dome, reminded that this hunt is a long game with 3 full days to catch them. The seniors chuckle, assuming those little punks cannot hide forever, and they are about to get a painful reality check. Crouched in the foliage, they wait for any sign of movement while the forest fills with thick, eerie purple mist. Suddenly, the senior whirls around as a blue energy bolt whizzes past his ear, making it clear that someone is firing back. Play Kim Sung-hoon bites the dust, vaporized into pixels before he could even blink, which certainly counts as a rough warning. The leader loses his mind, pointing frantically into the dark timber and yelling that the attacker is hiding over there. Yujin sprints through the dense brush, staff in hand, perfectly playing her role as a group's high-speed bait. The senior shrieks for his crew to grab her, charging blindly into the woods and falling for the oldest trap imaginable. Yujin glances back with a cocky grin, tallying the 5 pursuers to ensure the whole squad is chasing her tail. She exhales deeply, feeling pleased that everything is proceeding precisely as designed while she leads them toward the trap. She taunts them while running, mocking the pack-like behavior and asking if they feel any shame in swarming her like pets. The leader turns crimson with rage, bellowing at her to halt, totally losing his dignity just as he had anticipated. Yujin keeps on racing away, chuckling at their utter simplicity as she draws them closer to the map's end. Hidden away in the dark, Ihan waits with nerves of steel, acting as the anvil to Yujin's masterful hammer. The strategy session proved they could not just hide in the shelter, since they desperately needed supplies and points. He insists that gathering points is a main priority, showing a tactical brilliance that puts typical students to shame. Yujin and Einer wash him in ore, realizing he is planning something far more daring than mere survival, asking what is next. Does he mean it? And Ihan reveals a cold, wicked grin, confirming the time for being the prey is officially over. Only text N. We're launching a senior safari, as the title card for the counterattack is officially dropped. It's finally time for the freshmen to stage their rebellion. Yujin hit the brakes in a fresh clearing, having successfully reached the exact coordinates for the planned ambush. The seniors, in hot pursuit, charged blindly into a field of strange, glowing yellow mushrooms, completely clueless about the trap they were running into. A red system warning flared up, W.I. Yarning detected, a class 1 organism that bestows death. This area was effectively a lethal minefield. Yujin glanced back with a triumphant smirk, confirming she had found the perfect spot. Her eyes glowed brightly as she prepared her swift escape. Wind boost activated, launching her forward at rocket speed, leaving a shimmering blue monitrail. She left the rest of the operation to Yihan, trusting him completely. The upperclassmen were left standing dumbfounded in the middle of the mushroom patch. A system text box warned them that failure would mean certain death. The final notification confirmed the trap. They had entered the paralyzing spore mushroom habitat. It was officially game over for the seniors. Better luck in the next round.